That's the thing. That's why I kind of wanted you guys to have this, because you know we can swap
call
out.
from New Haven, Connecticut. Hello.
Hello, Mr. Connor.
Who's this?
Hey, this is George with U.S. Auto Insurance.
Oh no, my auto insurance is out of date. What am I gonna do?
Get a quote.
Get a quote. Okay, all right. Quote. Give me a quote on a 1987 Jeep Wrangler YJ. It has 300,000 miles on it, though.
Shit, it still runs?
Yeah, man,
Fucking
straight
sweat.
6.
This guy's fucking the shit, bro.
Dude, it's a straight 6. Of course it still runs.
Damn. What y'all smoking on?
What am I smoking on?
Smoking on that PCP.
Homie thought I needed to be high to talk like that.
Why'd you hang up?
He hung up on me.
You could have gone for another fucking. That guy should have been on the show, man.
Yeah.
That's fucking hilarious.
Well, don't worry. I did get it on camera. The GoPro's going right now.
It's so fucking funny. Poor guy. Good. I'm happy with that.
Yeah.
Third person here?
Yeah, right in the middle. Or I can move over and they can be here, wherever.
Yeah, that works.
Yeah.
It works really well.
Yeah.
We have our computer here. That way we can just literally be looking up like articles and shit while we go.
We could.
This passes around.
Yeah, Bluetooth keyboard, always useful.
That way if you want to just grab something real fast, it's easy.
Joe Mola.
That's it.
Oh. Advertisement. Alright, well we don't need that in our lives.
Yep.
Alright.
That's it, man.
Yeah, this is my friend Bill. I think I sent you the link to the music video him and I made.
I watched
that was all the construction
with the
paper.
shit like that. That was dope. That was really dope.
Yup. Alright, so I think in terms of things we can't talk about on YouTube, it's that thing I told you that got my video taken down.
We're not going to talk about that shit. Last thing I want to do is political.
We also can't have any, like, we can't have the fuck word in the first 15 seconds of the video.
Why?
Otherwise it gets completely taken out of the algorithm.
I'm just going to say fuck over
that's the new rule we have to run with, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But I think we're past the 15-second mark, so it's okay.
Oh, we probably are.
Yes. What's that property on the corner of
which one?
Nod and Whipstick? That huge, giant, like mountainous field with all the stone walls. That looked really nice.
With all the stone walls?
Yeah.
All the stone walls at Whipstick.
Yeah.
I know there's a huge place that's like down the road towards New Canaan that was like selling for $11 million.
Oh.
It's all stone castle. It's like the ultimate, you know, I'm rich, you're poor kind of place. I don't even know why somebody would buy something like that, but you know, the taxes
actually,
no,
they loaned to get in there because there's no one who has $11 million to outright buy a house
in this part of the country.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? People buy
celebrities,
$10-20 million houses in Greenwich all the time, flat out.
They're not buying them. They're taking loans on them. They have to.
Why?
They can't afford that.
Why can't? Of course they can. The George Clooney's and Brad Pitts of the world can absolutely afford to drop $20 million on a piece of property.
I think I have it on good authority to say that. What's his name?
Which one?
Not Ryan Gosling.
Who's my doppelganger, apparently.
Oh, okay. No, I'm trying to think of his name. He has Mint Mobile. He owns Mint Mobile.
No, it's Ryan Reynolds.
Ryan Reynolds.
I don't think he's an owner. I think that.
Okay, I have it on good authority that Ryan Reynolds took a mortgage out on the property he owns in Pound Ridge, New York. I have no reason to believe he actually outright bought that house.
So yeah, so I've heard that he's in that area. My brother, who used to do the We Park thing, he was doing that for a bunch of people. He met Chevy Chase. I think he either saw or ran into Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah.
There. We were just having this discussion recently, and people were talking about how there's, you know, so many celebrities that go to like the Pound Ridge area, and it's just so incredibly affluent. So, you know, those guys that are moving their cars are, you know, they're having a great time. They're getting to drive Ferraris and Porsches and simultaneously getting to meet these who's who's. So,
well, even in my line of work, we get big names in. Like Harvey Fierstein is one of the guys who comes by.
Harvey Fierstein?
Yeah.
Who's that? He
is a big producer for Broadway, and he's also done acting roles, but he's more known for his...
oh, he's an American actor.
He would
Oh, I know this guy. He was in Independence Day.
He was?
Yeah, he played a small role in Independence Day. I think he played a gay guy.
He was also Heat Miser in the Christmas that like who stole Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
Oh yeah. Yeah, this guy was awesome. I mean, I only ever saw him in Independence Day, which, you know, that's one of my favorite films. But he was hilarious in that. He's got to be getting up there, man. A lot of these actors from the '90s that did these incredible films are getting up there. He's 70 years old. He's from Brooklyn.
He doesn't act like it.
I don't know. I haven't seen him in anything since Independence Day.
I'm not really sure if he's from Brooklyn. I think he's from Richfield.
Oh, he's born in Brooklyn, New York.
Okay.
Educated at the Pratt Institute. Actor, playwright, screenwriter. But you said he's prominent in... What, in Broadway?
Broadway, yeah.
Oh.
He would rather be known for his Broadway work.
Tony Award for Best Actor in a Musical, Hairspray, Newsies, that's my all-time favorite movie. One of Christian Bale's first, if I'm not mistaken. And then I ended up seeing it off Broadway with a friend, and it was just fantastic.
How far do you have to go for it to no longer count as off Broadway?
I don't know, 10 feet? 10 or 20 feet? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. That's a great question. How far do you have to go? I think 25 feet is sufficiently far from Broadway.
Okay.
For it to technically be labeled off Broadway.
No, but like how far do you have to go from that for it to no longer be called off Broadway, for where it's just a play?
You know, you're asking these really philosophical questions, and I just don't have the answer to them. My God. It's also because Chevy Chase was also in Pound Ridge. He's got to be also up there. Him and Bill Murray are about the same age, right? He's 79. He's almost 80 years old. He's born in 43.
He still has a young-looking face.
Yeah, I think so. He probably has an incredible sense of humor still. He was driving a Prius.
He drives a Prius?
Well, he was apparently. You know, I'm getting this from my brother when he was working We Park, but apparently he showed up in a Prius. I have to confirm that with Dan.
He seems like the kind of guy who drives a Prius.
Yeah, everybody's saving the planet, one Prius and one Tesla at a time.
Well, you wouldn't expect a celebrity to be driving a Prius.
No, exactly.
So you get slipped by.
No, I know. Well, you know that Warren Buffett still drives an old, early 2000s Cadillac.
Well, that's because he can. He has the money for it.
Yeah, but he doesn't really have extravagant things.
Well, I also know he didn't really make his money until his 40s and 50s.
He does almost exclusively his business is investment, but he owns a big stock in Berkshire Hathaway.
Okay.
Which is real estate holding company.
I'm sure they do a lot.
They do quite a bit. If you see any of those Berkshire Hathaway signs up, he either has a big stake in that company or he owns it outright. Yeah, they're traded. It's a huge company. It's a holding company for real estate, which is nuts. But yeah, the owner is Warren Buffett, and it was founded by somebody by the name of Oliver Chase, who I have no idea.
Not Chevy Chase?
No, definitely not Chevy Chase. Total assets, dude, they're getting close to almost $1 trillion, $958.8 billion as of 2021.
Yeah, but
that's a huge.
But did they have a representative go to the Davos meeting in Switzerland? Because BlackRock did, and BlackRock's a big, multi-billion-dollar investment conglomerate.
They're an investment conglomerate.
Yeah, in real estate, stock.
I didn't know that. So is McDonald's.
I don't know how much McDonald's owns in other companies' stocks.
A substantial. Well, I'm not talking about stock. I'm talking about real estate holdings.
Well, because
one of the largest.
That's
real estate
their model.
Is
they franchise by buying the real estate and then selling the rights to build a restaurant to, I guess, whoever they decide deserves it.
You saw that film, The Founder?
Of course, I saw The Founder.
So they kind of touched on that in the film. And I thought that it was at least worth looking up. So there was a transition away from it being a restaurant to the premise to the what happens is the McDonald's Corporation purchases a piece of land, You know, they set up all the things with franchising fees and stuff like that, build the place, and then it's the responsibility of the proprietor to pay rent. And if they don't meet the standards, McDonald's can come and shut around. But McDonald's owns the land.
Yeah.
You know, it's huge.
Yeah.
They feed something like 2 to 5% of the population on a daily
99
basis.
billion served.
Well, yeah. I don't know how much longer that sign's going to be up. I've been waiting.
Yeah,
for
when
them
are they
to
going to
click
meet
over.
1 trillion?
I don't know. I've been waiting for them to click over, and they never seem to. I don't know. Maybe they're just maybe it stopped being a hamburger at some point. Now it's just.
Well, yeah. Like, how do you explain the
disgusting.
McRib?
Which
Well,
they
you
only
explain
do-
the McRib, which is every time pork futures are low, that's when the McRib comes back in the area.
That's probably right. I mean, that's probably exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's funny. Yeah. Well, they only do it once a year, right?
No, they do it all year round at random locations. Well, maybe not random. It might be
Have you had
directly.
one?
No, I've never had a McRib.
I did once. It was disgusting. I don't know what. I think it's the prestige of the McRib that people are.
My friend Mike really likes them, and I think last month or the month before it came to Danbury, so he really made sure him and I went to McDonald's, and I got myself a Big Mac, but he had his McRib.
It was a Bridgeport. It was at Bridgeport once. Then I got it while I was on duty one day. And I opened this thing up, and it's just literally barbecue sauce on this fat thing between 2 buns.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really gross.
Yeah, I'm sure
it's like
it is.
insanely sweet. The meat is fatty. It's just, I was like, why do people enjoy this?
Their chicken is gross too.
The chicken? You
Yeah,
mean the
chicken.
nuggets.
Just any of the chicken at McDonald's is gross.
Yeah, I've heard that they use the nuggets that they get are from like.
Are all the chicken byproducts
Well,
ground up into a mash.
that too, and
Yeah.
it's like they usually come from chickens that have like massively oversized breast tissue.
Well, that's this. Well, okay, so the chicken you're talking about, it's a very common chicken with a 6-week growing cycle. At 6 weeks, they start having heart attacks
They
and
do.
dying.
That's
But that's
right.
actually a good sign, according to most farmers.
Why?
And pretty much every chicken you buy at the grocery store that's for its meat, or at a fast food restaurant or any restaurant, it's that kind of chicken. So it's not like McDonald's is buying a particularly bad one. They're actually buying the industry standard.
And in addition to that, they've been known to collapse under their own weight.
Well, they do.
They can't get up and walk.
After like 4 weeks, they lose the ability to walk further than a few steps to get food and water. And then at 6
That's
weeks,
so
they start
sad.
having heart attacks.
The death rate because obviously they have a lot of those particular birds.
I wouldn't doubt as
same
many as a
place.
third die before they even begin to process them into food.
And you compare that, historically to chickens at then versus now, with the advent of antibiotics and growth hormone and all these things, it's something like, modern.
They actually don't use growth hormones in those kind of chickens.
Why?
They don't need them. They've bred them to the
Oh,
point
because
where
they're
within...
genetically able to grow so quickly.
Right, so the
Yeah.
only thing they put in the chickens are actually vaccines. And most people don't really have an issue with giving vaccines to animals and themselves.
Yeah, it's only themselves that they're concerned with.
Growth hormones at this point are a moot point in most of the agricultural industry. They don't really need them.
Oh.
Because we've bred all the animals to grow the way we want them to.
Even we were having this discussion a few days ago. When was the last time we had? We ended up having like a 2.5 hour discussion.
It was last week.
It was last week.
Yeah.
We ended a discussion about how cows are probably the smartest domesticated animal.
Well, yeah, the Highland cow,
Right.
The Scottish Highland cow.
Right,
is
from
so
an
cool.
evolution perspective, they figured out a way to,
Well,
to
I would make the argument that the cats are.
cats.
Because cats actually domesticated us, as far as I'm concerned.
I can understand how there's conjecture about how dogs came to have a beneficial relationship with human beings and how eventually we bred them to be domesticated. I don't understand how cats could do that. I mean, people do have exotic cats.
Well,
They-
what is one of the best prey animals for a cat? Mice and rats. Where do mice
Yeah.
and rats congregate? Where humans congregate.
Right, yeah.
So I think it's natural that cats were attracted to where we are, and then we said, well,
I'll just
they
take that and
they
stick it in my
repel the
house.
mice anyways, so
Yeah.
I might as well feed it once in a while when there aren't enough mice around.
There's, it's so
Actually,
fun.
just the scent of cats repels mice and rats.
Does it?
Yeah, just the scent of cats.
Well, then just spray cat scent all over the place. But I have while I've had cats before in the past, I just have an aversion to them. I don't understand them. Dogs, I get.
That's the
they're-
thing about cats is you don't have to understand them; they just are.
Well, they're highly independent animals. Like when I
Yeah.
come home, I enjoy it when my dog comes up to me. You know, he's got to go to the bathroom.
Well, cats
Cries.
aren't as independent as you think. So last weekend we went down to Jersey to visit family. We come back after 24 hours.
Right.
And my cat's waiting there at the front door for us, excited to see us.
Yeah, so your cat is more like a dog. 'Cause
No,
most
I would
cats
say
don't
my
give a shit whether you come home
I would
or
say
not.
my cat is a cat and it likes us. So it was happy to see us.
Well, people are constantly doing that. Today I was at a customer's house, and she made a comment like, my cat's mostly a dog. Or people will say my dog is like a cat. Like now we just cross between the two.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I think for me it's going to be dogs all day long.
Well, dogs you can train to be whatever you want them to be.
You can train a cat.
It's not the same.
No,
yes,
it's really,
you can, but it's just not the same.
people have trained cats to do tricks and do stuff like that. I've seen it, like on America's Got Talent. Somebody inevitably has a cat every single year that does something.
Or lives the longest.
Actually, I'm curious now. What is the longest living cat?
I think it's 23.
Let's see. Who's got the longest living cat?
We have a cat that comes into the animal hospital that is 3 years and 1 month younger than me. So it's going to be 20 this year.
Yeah, but that's at your vet's office,
Yeah.
right? That's not. It could be that there's a much older cat.
Yeah, it's like probably 23, right?
Oh no, 38.
38.
So
Holy
his
crap.
name, the cat's name is Cream Puff. He
Wow.
was born August 3rd, 1967. Died August 6th, 2005. Domestic cat owned by somebody in Austin, Texas. Oldest cat recorded. Died when she was 38 years old. That's an old cat. I can't
Yeah.
imagine that cat didn't have at least a few.
Well, okay,
serious
this is
health-
saying 27. That's the same photo there. So that's obviously not the 38-year-old cat.
Wait a minute. Yeah, hold on. No, but this is a different cat. This is Flossie.
Right, but I'm just saying that this photo is associated with that. So this is why
Yeah,
you
it's
can't trust
pulling-
Google
it's
and their
pulling it off of-
auto-generated
Well, hold
results.
on. It's on Wikipedia, so you
There
know
we
it's got to
go.
be true. Yeah, well, it's 38 years and 3 days.
You ever heard of the theory about the intelligence of a crowd?
No.
So if you
give it
ask
to me.
100 people to look at a picture of a cow and guess how much it weighs, the average answer will probably be reasonably close to the real answer.
So that's
So
interesting.
that's what you're dealing with Wikipedia
Yeah.
here. You're dealing with the mass telling
Right.
you what's real.
Except that it's not entirely easy to post things on Wikipedia or
Not
modify
anymore.
things on Wikipedia that are actually factually the case. I rely on Wikipedia for a lot of nitty gritty dirt. I need to understand something about a medication or whatever the case might be. I can get it there. I can get it on Wikipedia, but you have to take it all with a grain of salt,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's not peer reviewed, even though it's cited. So, there's always stuff on there that could be bad. But it's interesting you say that about the crowd.
Yeah.
Because there's another instance that I learned about where I think I learned about it in stat, where if you take a container of gumballs, right, you start asking people how many do you think are in
In
the
it,
thing,
yeah.
you're gonna get wild answers in the beginning, like 50, 100, but over enough people, it averages out.
Yeah.
And so you take those numbers, add them together, divide by the total number of people in the pool, and you actually get an answer that's remarkably close.
Yeah.
It's really, really cool how the mean of something can get you really, really close. So, yeah, I found that's really, really interesting. Why? How much does a cow weigh?
I guess maybe 1,000
Well, we only have 2 people. So we average it out.
Okay, so if I say 1,000 pounds, what are you going to say?
I think they can get upwards of like 15.
1,500 pounds?
Yeah, so do 15, so that's 2,500.
Yeah.
Divided by 2. I wasn't good at math, so you have to
So
figure
I think,
that one out.
what is that, 1,250?
Yeah, something like that. So let's see what an actual cow weighs.
It's probably going to be 220.
We're going to be really fucking close.
Oh, wow.
Well, I was way closer than you.
You were, at least for a female adult cow.
At least for
But a male
God,
is
male
2,400,
bull is
yeah.
over a metric ton.
Yes.
I can't believe they're that heavy.
So on the farm my friend works
Wow.
on, they have cows, and he was telling me stories about how, they'll be acting calm one moment, and then the next moment when you see this 2,400-pound animal jump over a 5-foot tall fence. Imagine how
Oh, yeah,
majestic that is to
no,
see
but-
something that large moving
Yeah,
that
it's just
fast.
like a giant whale jumping over something.
Yeah.
It's not exactly, the most graceful of things. But then again, they're not, they're not prized horses, jumping horses.
They're not aerodynamic, I
No,
understand.
they're really, really not. And they're skittish, but they're cute. I
They're
love
really
to pet them.
curious, too.
Yeah,
If you
they
start
are.
doing something strange or making noise, they'll come over and investigate it.
They definitely. Have you seen that video of some guy that's playing trumpet?
Yeah, and all the cows.
And he's driving, and they're all kind of like congregating near the fence.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. That guy is definitely an animal whisperer in my book. Wow, that is so cool. I don't know where the hell Linda is. Leaving to see you soon. Yeah, she's coming.
All right.
Yeah. And then we're gonna get some really nasty emergency room stories. Actually, I think she had somebody come in recently with a shattered ankle. Yeah. It's like this person works on their feet. Like he's really screwed. She has 2 jobs. She works
Yeah.
Danbury Emergency Department, and she's also at an orthopedic office in Fairfield. So she's getting the relaxing side of doing, you know, straightforward surgeries, but she's getting the fun side of doing like crazy traumas and medicals at Danbury Hospital. So yeah, it's fun. Plus, I'm actually going back into EMS. I made the decision and I'm done.
Or where are you
Swinging
gonna
a
try to
hammer.
do it out of?
So right now I'm in the process of talking with Brookfield. It's a fire-based EMS service, which is substantially better than commercial-based services for a lot of reasons. Commercial-based services are kind of, you know,
Well,
they-
you're associated with the state, so it's always going to be there.
yeah, and I mean it's a fire department-based job, so it's you know, it has the benefit of like insurance and town benefits and stuff like that.
Well, yeah,
But-
because the budget of the fire department goes into your insurance and equipment, not into your pay.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why fire departments a lot of times will show up on scene. It's because it counts as a go out, so to speak. So
Yeah.
they might not be doing anything that's aggressively medical, but it goes into ultimate budget requests at the end of the year. So, you know, I'm excited about it. Commercial EMS is exciting, because especially because commercial companies tend to aggregate in busy cities where there's lots of, you know, where there's crime and a lot of medicals and trauma and stuff like that. But municipal-based EMS services don't have to worry about the nonsense that's associated with commercial EMS. Commercial EMS, you do 911s, but you also do transfers, like interfacility transfers, hospital to
Yeah.
hospital, home hospital stuff.
Yes.
And that can get exceedingly monotonous over time. So, you know, getting away from that and doing more emergency-based calls is something that I've been looking forward to for a long time. Plus, it affords me the benefit of being able to do other things like continuing to go to school and working on my master's. So, because that's something I got to do.
You have to do it.
Oh, it's academic inflation. If you want to get anywhere, even though there are a lot of people that say that you don't have to get higher education.
But it depends on what you're looking for in life. If you're looking to just be financially secure, a lot of people would argue that higher education isn't the way forward.
Yeah, but you'd agree that, especially in the United States, we're a society where the more you have in terms of certificates and degrees, the more you advance typically in like certain companies. Right, I mean, you can't get a job working on, I mean, I guess there are isolated examples, but it's difficult getting a job doing something like stock trading or, you know, data analytics or IT or computer engineering without those types of degrees.
Well, that's why I'd have the conversation of, does the education towards earning the degree actually benefit you in the workplace? Because
That's a good question.
I would say for most people it doesn't, and it is just a piece of paper.
I wonder how much.
So is it a fulfilling thing to do, or is it a necessity?
I'd be curious to see how much it's the case that on-job training, what the split is between people that have traditional academic backgrounds and on-the-job training. Because I know for me, especially when I was becoming a medic, it was kind of split. Like a lot of the didactic stuff prepped you for stuff, but then it was actually working in the field that got you to apply what you actually knew. And you also end up learning so much more, which is why physicians and physicians assistants and nurses end up doing a lot of clinical rotations.
Yes.
Because they're having to put what they've learned into practice, and they're also learning the ins and outs of what you don't learn in school.
Right.
And there's a lot that you end up not learning in school, especially there's this assumption that when you get out of medical school, or you get out of nursing school, or get out of medical school, or PA school, or whatever it is, you know everything. Right?
Well,
and that's just not
yeah.
the case.
Yeah.
You know, you're
But some people would like to ascribe that you do, especially a lot of people who don't know anything about the education that goes into it. They
Right.
see the certificate and put a lot of faith into it.
Right. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And this was something that we learned a lot about in sociology, is that different societies have different standards by which people are held in higher esteem, in which they can advance. And, stratification systems, especially in the United States, in order to climb different levels of stratification, it typically involves having better paying jobs, and better paying jobs are typically one. So it's like the college system is something that churns out people that are able to rise up in the economic strata really quickly. You'd hope, right?
I'd hope, but I think something that probably the hippies of the 60s and 70s would ask is, like, how much of it is actually worth it towards your soul and well-being?
What else are you going to do?
We live in such an advanced state of society. There are plenty of people who can just live and that be their thing. But
with the advent
there's
of the
also
internet,
there's
right?
also so many people. Like, okay, the more people there are, the more niches that are going to get filled,
Yeah.
because that's how human beings are.
Yeah, no, I agree.
We're already approaching 8 billion people. If we were past 8 billion and we just didn't know it, I can accept that. So, I mean, how many people really do have to work? Can we have an idiocracy situation where essentially everyone can be
Are you referring to the film?
Yeah.
That
that's what I
was
said.
such a good movie.
Yeah. Well,
Was it Luke Wilson?
no, Mike Judge is the... well, that might be the actor.
He was the actor,
But Mike
man.
Judge is the writer and director of it.
I couldn't help but notice that film really hit on some issues that were just so relevant to now, right?
Right.
The
Mike Judge
consequence-
said, I wanted it to be a comedy and not, a foreboding future.
They're watering their crops with Mountain Dew.
Great Gatorade.
Or Gatorade, that's
Yeah.
right. I mean, it's such a funny thing. But it goes to, there's also another point in there that I found particularly interesting, which is that, people that don't have higher education, they tend to produce more children than people that do have higher education. Because people that are seeking to get master's degrees and doctorates, they typically put off having families, or they don't have a lot of kids.
Or at all.
Or at all. So
Yeah.
what happens to intellectuality as it keeps getting diluted down the line? Because you need people, you need scientists, you need people in STEM to keep the world running.
Well, the idea is that
You know?
someone in a family that, let's say, they have like eight siblings, and their parents are a janitor and a waitress.
The hope is
one
that,
of them
right?
will be like, well, I should do more with myself than just exist like everyone else is doing in my family.
I don't know why, for me, I've always felt the compulsion to always get higher education. And it wasn't pressure that my family put on me or anything
I didn't.
like that.
I think my demoralization towards it came from the public schooling, because I realized how little of it.
Where did you go to public school?
Weston.
Oh, you went to Weston. You
Yeah.
didn't feel like the push, especially in Wilton, the push to go to college was so heavy.
That's why I was demoralized by it, was the push to go to higher education. I was like, well, what was the point of this, state mandated, well, not state mandated, but like state funded organization that's supposed to educate me? If you're going to say, well, we're just going to pass the buck to an organization you actually owe money to, what was the point of any of it?
I think the purpose, especially the purpose of high school, is to prepare you for the collegiate experience.
I thought the purpose of high school was to prepare you to be a productive member of society.
Look, it can be both. I mean, when our parents,
I don't think it is both
But when our
anymore.
parents were coming up, you can get a job with a high school diploma.
I know plenty
For
of
the
people
most
who
part,
do get
anyway.
jobs with high school diplomas. It's just not, you're not going to be doing finance for a multi-billion-dollar company.
Yeah, no, I mean there are entrepreneurs like who's that guy out of Silicon Valley? Peter Thiel. He has an annual program where he pays people $100,000 a year to drop out of college. He pays young people $100,000 to drop out of college and
No.
start their own businesses.
Unfortunately, that $100,000 probably isn't going to pay off the debt they already accrued.
I mean, if he's getting them early, like,
Yes, in their freshman year.
or even before. I mean, I'm pretty sure people can apply to these programs whenever they want. I don't know how success. I'd love to see the data on how successful those kids are at starting their own companies and becoming successful, as opposed to their, students that are equal in terms of demographics and intellectual capacity who decide to go the college route, the traditional college route, and get out and get a job in their field.
Yeah, but the question you have to ask yourself is, what is your definition of successful? Because it should be
Yeah.
down to the individual and not what your perspective or idea is for someone else to achieve.
I mean, what is the definition of successful?
I think
What's
evolution.
yours?
I think
I mean,
first there's the evolutionary standard of successful, at least for mammals, which is just you reproduce.
okay.
At least for me, it's,
Right.
I don't know, probably not being in debt and being not necessarily self-sufficient, but independent from other people's help.
Yeah, maybe at
And
some
that-
level, it's about success is about achieving what you want to achieve.
Right.
It's a very subjective thing.
Right, and at least for men, and this is coming from me as a man, to be able to at least provide some sort of stability, not just for myself, but for somebody else, would be success. But to put it in the framework of you have to go through the ranks of education and
Right.
through your office, might not be the happiest way of going about it for most people. And you could be happy at a job. A lot of people could be happy at their job. They just have to choose to be.
I think for me, my personal definition of success is academic achievement. I really couldn't care less if I made.
Right, but with the
buck
advent of the
loads.
internet, do you need to go to an organization that will
Well,
tell you you're smart?
I'll tell you this: you can't become a physician or a PA or a nurse or a medic by just purely, studying off of the internet. You have to go through the ranks and get your diplomas in order to be a board certified surgeon or a physician's assistant or a nurse. You can't just fake that. If you want to do something else, like if you want to become a marketing expert, or a business expert,
Education probably is a hindrance to you.
I'd say that the internet is a tool that you can use in conjunction with traditional education to just make it so much easier. I mean, a lot of what I took anatomy and
Through the
physiology and
internet,
chem classes.
people have access to a chat bot called GPT or something like
What is that?
They basically get this chat bot to write their college essays for them. So people
So
aren't
I've
even
heard
doing
of
the
this.
work anymore.
Yeah, so I've heard of this, and I think that's
I-
a detriment to especially the student,
Well, it's a detriment to the whole system.
right? Because then the standard of essays becomes really.
I
really
watched a lot of
high.
cheating in the course of getting my bachelor's degree. I don't know what it was like for you, but I saw a lot of very flagrant cheating,
I don't think I
even
don't
in
think
front
I
of the
saw a
professor
lot
in the
of that.
classroom.
How would people do that?
With their phones, not only would they be searching things for themselves, like when the teacher wasn't looking, they'd be passing around the phones with answers on it. And I saw it during finals and other things.
I don't know, but I think that matters. That becomes more, and whether if it's a 101 survey
And
class,
especially
I'm less
when
concerned
everyone
about
went
that.
online, people were just like, if you were doing your test over whatever system the school does it over, I think we had something called Moodle. You can just open up another tab on your browser and start Googling
For
everything.
online exams.
Yeah. Online exams and essays. So
Where did you get your degree?
King's College in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, and my college wasn't the only college doing this. Colleges all across the world
I
were
haven't
doing
heard of
classes
this.
online, and you could just open up a browser tab and get all the answers for your test without actually having to study or
Can't they
anything.
see though? Can't the program see that you've opened up
No,
additional
it's
tabs?
just running in one of your browser tabs, and you can just fill in the answers.
This is why I think a lot of
This is why I think education's worthless, because I saw firsthand how it was diluted.
I never had motivation to want to cheat.
Neither did
I figured that if I took, especially like my science courses, if I took them, then taking my exams was only, to me, it was just an affirmation that I knew what I was talking about.
And
Right.
that's how it should be. But there's plenty of people who just, they don't want to put in the work. And it's not like the work's hard. For like essays, for example, I mean, yeah, you might procrastinate every once in a while, but
Are we
It's-
already at 30 minutes?
yes.
God damn, dude. We're going to be going for a while.
I know, I should set a timer on my watch. That's what I did the last few episodes I filmed. So that's what I'll do this time. A lot of people just don't want to put in the work. And when it comes to like writing an essay or something,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you might procrastinate to the last day, but you can get it done. I've written 10 pages in
I've
3
been down
hours.
to the wire.
Yeah.
I've been down to the wire where I procrastinated on when I was taking philosophy, I was starting to take like 2 and 3.
Philosophy is the best class to procrastinate on.
Well,
Well, then
I
the
mean-
best bullshit comes out right at
Well,
the end.
okay, it wasn't just because I wanted to push it off. It's like, frankly, I had more important classes that I was taking. So for those lower level classes, I'd push essays off, and then it came down to the wire and have like 3 days before a 15 or 16 page paper was due. You can crank it out.
Last
you can.
time-
The quality is going to probably suffer as a consequence of that, and that's going to be evident probably in your grade, unless you're really good
Yeah.
and making sure that the content of your essays are solid. And I think a lot of professors are looking for that. It's more about, do you have a solid what I've learned about essays is that do you have a solid thesis, and are you able to support those thesis in body paragraphs and then tie it all together without repeating yourself?
But the biggest problem college freshmen are having right now is they don't even have the grammatical skills to write a good essay.
Yeah, and that's
not just the ideas that they need to get down, but the grammar to even convey it.
I agree with you, and I think that that's an issue where education is supposed to be compound, right? It's supposed to build from a solid foundation upwards, and what's getting lost is everything in between is starting to fracture, and the foundation of what kids will learn. I mean, you're right. Grammatical structure and syntax, it's getting lost.
So
I noticed
the school I went to was a liberal arts school, and part of the education, not only was there your major, there's also the core classes they want you to take. I would go into a history course, and let's say it was a 101 class, or 101 level class. They pretty much expected you not to know anything, which I think is kind of insulting to people like me. I'm not even a history major, but I can go in there and without studying get a B+ on a quiz.
Well, you'd assume that at least high school prepped you a little bit in basic history.
I don't think, well, Weston was better than other places.
Why you think that is? I mean,
I think that is because their practicing standard is that the educators have doctorates.
Yeah, exactly. And they're more affluent.
But not every high school does that. But
you compare a place like Weston to some place like Norwalk, and the educational standards. I mean, okay, so the state sets levels and
yeah, no child left behind type.
Well,
deal.
yeah. Unfortunately, we don't have to deal with that anymore because that directly affects schools that are starting out at a disadvantage.
Yeah.
The No Child Left Behind thing, it poured money into schools that were already doing well, and schools that weren't doing well ended up getting no funding whatsoever. It's a performance-based thing, but the problem is that schools are grossly unequal when it comes to demographics and their financial situation. So, is that a good metric on whether or not you fund schools or not? Is whether or not they're able to turn out scores. It's based on standardized testing, right?
I think that's why my college didn't require an SAT submission. I think really the only standard they had to let you in was you went in for an interview. At my college, no ACT or SAT required, or essay.
It's weird. There are some medical schools now that are not requiring MCAT scores.
Do you feel like you were cheated because you had to do it?
Well, I'm in the process of studying for the MCATs now.
Okay.
And I intend to take the MCATs and apply to schools that
I
have
submitted my
MCAT
SAT
requirements.
despite them not requiring it because
it's a huge achievement.
they should just see that I did it.
It shows competency in the basic sciences.
Yeah.
So how can you
and
gauge
language and mathematics?
Exactly.
Yeah.
How can you gauge an applicant if they don't have a score for standardized tests that reflects how competent they are in the basic sciences?
Well, in my conversations with people at college, I met several people who said they didn't send in their SAT because they were worried the grade wouldn't be good enough to get in, even though it wasn't required.
And so they supplement. So they
supplemented it with having an interview at the college. I think
an interview. And you think an interview can accurately gauge whether an applicant is prepared for that?
Not at all.
I don't
Because
know.
I was a very different person from when I graduated high school to when I got to the end of my first semester of freshman year.
Mm-hmm.
Part of that was I had an oral communication class as part of my communication degree, but also a lot of students from pretty much every major got shoved into the oral communications class just because they want to break, I guess, the abused mold people were in from having to do presentations in front of their public school classes.
Right.
Because I felt very awkward being in front of a classroom lecturing when I first got there because I was used to the whole social aspect of it from high school.
Right.
When in college, that doesn't really exist anymore.
No, I agree. I think that, I took at a community college some public speaking, and public speaking was very much about the logistics of how you should communicate, but there's more to it than that. It's about being effective and not boring and original, and I don't know if a lot of people have those skills. Public speaking
A lot of people
and how you interview with people is incredibly important. What will make or break applicants that have identical test scores and identical background, histories, are probably going to be an interview.
Mm-hmm. So maybe that's why my college threw out the SAT and ACT.
Right, the amount of confidence that you can instill
Yeah.
on an interview panel is going to make a determinant, because there are a lot of applicants for lots of different programs, master degree or doctorate, that are on paper at the very least, they're very, very similar.
I think it was also the high school I went to that swung their opinion a lot of me.
Well,
I was the only.
It was Weston.
I was one of the few people from Connecticut, the only person from
Yeah.
Weston who went there, and I remember in high school people would joke that like a C in Weston is actually a B plus in Norwalk. Whether how true that is, I don't know.
I'm not shitting
But
on
I'm
Norwalk.
I'm
public
sure where I went to
education.
school really mattered.
Because there are plenty of people that come out of Norwalk High and Brian McMahon that go to college and become very successful people. But I had friends that were in the Norwalk system, and I listened to them, and they said that a lot of times that it was very different than the Wilton or Weston or New Canaan public school system. Because it probably ends up going back to the quality of the educators.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, the educators that are in less affluent places, they have a lot more to handle and are probably paid considerably less than educators that are in more affluent towns. And that has an effect on how they teach. It's not their fault. I mean, they're probably great educators, but they don't have access to resources that they need to properly.
Well, we also have some really messed up educators here in Connecticut. I had a friend who.
That's probably a hot button topic right there.
Yeah. Okay.
No, I want to hear it though. Like, I'm
So
curious.
I had a friend who was in the education system for a while. He applied to Greenwich, didn't make it.
Mm-hmm.
He actually first applied to Weston to be a substitute, and they accepted him. And then the next day, COVID happened. So they just like, okay, well, we don't need substitutes anymore because all the teachers are home. But then he worked in Danbury for a while. The reason why, and Bridgeport, and he had a hard time in Danbury and in Bridgeport. In Danbury, a female student invited him to her 18th birthday.
Yep.
And that's
That's a no-no.
that's the kind of weird no-nos you don't want to get involved in. And then in Bridgeport, he was dealing with kids who would try to stab him as young as like kindergartners.
I know.
But the reason why I bring up Greenwich specifically is like a couple months ago, I don't know if it was the superintendent or the principal, but one of the people who's in charge of hiring and managing the schools was caught on Veritas saying that he would specifically not hire like young white men or older white men because they would be more because they'd be more likely to have conservative beliefs. And he didn't want them in the school.
That's highly prejudicial.
Right. And I think
you can't do that.
Well, I think my friend should file a class action lawsuit against that guy because that's probably why he didn't get the job.
Class action. Who else would sign on to something?
All the other people who applied to Greenwich and didn't get the job off of something as simple as they're probably a white man.
Well, then he's going to be stuck in a position where he has to go back and explain why there were denials for every single one of those individuals.
Right.
You're never going to get him to admit that he didn't hire them because he had a suspicion that they were white conservatives, even though he said that.
Yeah, he said it on video.
Right? He can say it on video, but ultimately when you go back, if they point to that candidate and say, did you not hire him because he's a white conservative, he's going to be like, no, they just didn't interview well, or we had better
So
applicants.
how do you actually punish someone who acts like
Yeah,
that?
I know. You can punish him for saying the thing, but in being able to prove it is a completely different
Well, he didn't
story.
get punished. He was on like national news for doing it, and he still has
Was
his
he?
job. Yeah.
So you don't get terminated for saying something like that.
No.
But you can get terminated for a whole other litany of things.
Yes.
Which a lot of administrators probably did.
Actually, it came out in the news recently. A Ridgefield resident who works in the Greenwich Public Schools, his ISP reported him to the police for sharing CP around between himself and I don't know how many people, but
What's CP? Something porn?
yeah,
Okay, I figured it out.
yeah. So
I got it.
But so his family's now getting broken apart about it, but he's not fired from the public schools. He works for the Greenwich Public Schools, and he can't lose his job over it, apparently. So
Why, tenure or something?
I don't know, but he's apparently not going to lose his job. So they're probably going to shove him in some office in the back of the building,
Well, it's probably...
away from all the kids. But they're not going to fire somebody who was around children and was reported for sharing around things like that.
Well, I'm imagining that the union is protecting him temporarily until investigation is in
Huh,
process.
this is why I don't like unions. They do things like that.
So
they protect people who shouldn't be protected.
Yeah, okay, so that's one component of unionization, but I just wrote a paper on this for a class that I was taking and argued both sides of it, which is that, yes, unions do protect people that don't belong in positions, but at the same time, they also allow collective bargaining rights and abuses
but
from employers.
There are times where the collective bargaining doesn't actually represent people. So I know someone whose mother had cancer.
Right.
She was a public school teacher, and she got into a spat with the union because the union kept wanting to ask for raises. But she said, no, I'm fine with how much money I'm making. I need the health care.
Oh, I see.
So that's a case where the union doesn't actually represent the people within the union. And it's not like she couldn't not be in the union.
Can you elect to not be part of a union?
No.
You
When
can't.
you're a teacher, you can. You have to be a part of it, and you have to pay dues.
Yeah. Well, I know.
So there's a lot of unions. The public unions, it's very hard to not be in a public union.
You can't opt out.
If there are already union members in your establishment, in your
Right.
public school, in your police department, then everyone there is in the union. That's a part of the agreement when you're hired. You have to pretty much find a department that doesn't have a union already.
Yeah, I'm curious. I mean, so you generally would say that you're completely against unionization,
I'm against public unions first and foremost.
but private unions.
Privately, I can't do a damn about it.
you
but
couldn't give two shits about it.
I don't care much, and if I did, there's not much I could do. But
Okay, so-
publicly, I should have a say in it, because once the public unionizes in a department, nothing stops them.
No, I know.
Nothing stops them from getting what they want. Especially the police union. The police union has done more than anybody to protect people who shouldn't be protected.
Yeah, but it gets false out. I mean, but
that's
first
why-
of all, it's a very controversial topic because police are getting accused of things all the time.
Well,
There's
you know
no
what would
merit
help
to
them
it.
from not getting accused all the time? Is
Body
if
cams.
they live streamed their body cams to the internet.
There's probably some legal thing that they couldn't do with
I
that.
think they should. Because imagine if you can go on Twitch
Yeah.
and look up like San Francisco PD badge number 38 and watch what he's doing. That'd
Well,
be pretty cool.
They just nabbed a police officer in Bridgeport who was caught on camera pistol whipping a kid who had surrendered.
Yeah.
And I'd met him a few times. Great guy, but you have to remember where they are. You know, those police officers are routinely interacting with people that have guns on them and drugs.
Well, it's in the United States. A lot of people have guns on them. It's whether they have them legally or
a
not.
disproportionately large amount in a place like Bridgeport. Even when I would go on calls in Bridgeport, I'd be really nervous to walk up to a car. Because you just don't know. The levels of crime and poverty are so high in places like that. Police officers have to assume that when they're going into something that it could potentially become a violent situation. So they become jaded and scared, and stuff like that happens, you know? Now, I'm not saying that it's right, and he was fired. I saw the video, and I don't know the particulars about the case, but you know, he ultimately lost his job. The union was not able to protect him. Internal investigations probably, you know, they found that he was liable for assault and against police policy. So, what can you do? I don't know. I'm for unions in certain circumstances.
I'm just not for public unions.
Okay, so did you see that documentary on Netflix called The Factory?
Okay,
I know
it
you don't
sounds like you're going somewhere into communism.
I know you don't watch a lot of TV,
No, I don't.
right? So this company, Fuyao, it's a Chinese-based company, comes to the United States, takes over, I think it was a GE.
They bring in all their own Chinese workers.
So they did. They brought in a lot.
Yep,
right?
naturally
But
they
the message that they wanted to send is that it's an American company, and they hired a lot of the former factory workers to the job. They hired them back at half the hourly rates that they were receiving when they were working for GE.
So then why? That's what I don't
Like
understand.
$12
Is
to
if
$15
you
an
know you're
hour.
gonna get screwed like that, then why would you
What
even
else
go
are
back?
they supposed to do, Connor? There's no other work. They have to work in the factory. And they have to work for the rates that the company is offering. Otherwise, they don't have a job. They can't pay for any. There's no other work in the town or in the city. And so, of course, the big issue in that particular documentary is whether or not they're going to unionize.
Well,
And
they
you know that
well,
the company is
if
not
the
going to allow
Chinese
that to
moved
happen.
in, you know, if the Chinese moved in, they know a thing or two about unions. They should be okay with it.
Well, they're government unions. They don't
Right.
have traditional unions in China.
See, this is what
It's-
this is what I don't understand about people who say that like Hitler abolished the unions, because he didn't. He actually created the world's largest union to ever exist,
Right.
with like 34 million members.
Right.
So
That's collective mentality.
yeah.
Something the Chinese have that we don't. Right?
Well, yes, they're a hive mind over there.
Their
that
workers
reacts.
are working for the collective. In America, individuals work for themselves. Right? It's all about us, not the collective. And that's a big distinction in terms of like cultural zeitgeist.
Well, it used to be you worked for the community, but not necessarily the
Right.
country as a whole.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, these are interesting issues. But ultimately, the company decided that they were going to hire anti-union lobbyists to come in, you know, have conversations with them while they're on their lunch breaks or whatever. And sure enough, it scared a lot of the people that came in who were very young into voting down the union. And so continual hourly rates. And the company would try to do things like say, we're going to increase everybody's salary by $1 or $2. And I'm sure that, you know, to some degree it helps, but, you know, $15 an hour when you have mortgages and kids and expenses is just, it's not even on the same level.
A dollar can make a big difference. So right now, Connecticut's minimum wage is $14 an hour, and before taxes, it's around like $24,000 annually. $15.
What does the government set the poverty rate at in the United States? I think it's something really low, like less than 16.
I think it is less than 16.
I think it's less than 16. You're technically considered under the poverty line, which, first of all, $16,000 gets you nothing in this country.
No, it doesn't.
You can't afford even basic things on a
But I will say the
$16,000
difference between $14 an hour before taxes is like $24,000. $15 an hour before taxes is $31,000. So
Right.
a dollar can make a huge difference.
Yeah, I mean that's a $6,000 difference.
Yeah, it's a nearly $7,000 difference before taxes.
But then when you consider the cost of things like
Oh yeah, when I see a
apartments
carton
and
of eggs is
mortgages.
$12, I get scared.
right, and this is the other issue is that during periods of inflation, especially when hourly rates remain relatively stagnant, I mean it ultimately falls on the consumer to have to bear the brunt of inflation.
Yeah.
And so when people, again, this kind of falls back into it when they're making good arguments for, you know, unionization. I mean, I can see why they're doing it is because they have to manage huge rise in, you know, common goods. I mean, this is tracked in the CPI, which is what the Federal Reserve uses on a pretty regular basis to make decisions on whether or not they're going to gas break the economy. The CPI is the standard by which they see what products are going up and going down. And I'm sure you're aware that the Fed is raising the rate again this year. Inflation and the prices of goods, basic goods, are going to go up even more. What did we hit in gas this summer?
Okay, so I'm convinced the Shell station that's down there,
They're gouging.
them and the Mobil, first of all, they're colluding because the prices are always the same.
Over $3.30
Second of all,
Yeah.
the highest I ever saw them both get was $5.65.
during the summer.
Yeah,
Yeah, I remember paying once over $5 a gallon.
that's crazy.
Well, I remember back in 2000. You weren't driving back in 2000.
No, but I remember things. I remember how my life changed
Yeah.
in my household between 2007 and 2010.
Yeah, it changed for a lot of people, but I remember being shocked at the fact that gas was $4.10.
Yeah.
I wrote it down in a card that I gave to somebody once for their birthday. I put at the top, gas is $4.15 or $4.14.
Yeah.
And I gave it to them just as I don't know why I did it. It was just kind of a funny thing that I was doing at the time. And I thought that would be like the pinnacle of how high you could go on
No.
gas prices.
No, there are
And then this
places in
summer
Connecticut
rolled
where it got
around,
over $6.
well, California was doing something like $7 or $8 a gallon.
They're like $5 ahead of everybody else somehow. So they'll.
Yeah.
There was one video
I
I
don't know
watched
how they
from
do that.
someone in, I think, Washington. So that's not even California. His truck had a 30-gallon tank, and he was paying $10 a gallon. So he ended up paying $300 for gas.
My God.
Yeah.
And especially when an economy runs on the trucking business and stuff
Yeah.
like that. I mean, oil, obviously, and I'm not
Diesel
trying
is
to
still
be-
pushing $6 in a lot of places
Didn't
in
used to.
Connecticut.
You know, diesel used to be less expensive than
Right, but they
regular
put
gas.
they put a huge tax on it in Connecticut because they wanted to hit the people who drive through the state all the time.
That's right.
Going from New York to Boston,
and
for example.
And Connecticut was talking about for a while that BS with putting tolls back in.
Well, tolls are terrible because they're inconvenient, and I dislike them.
Well, what they would have probably done is instead of traditional tolls, like especially with what New York is doing and New Jersey is doing with their camera systems automatically sending you a bill. I mean, it's alleviated a lot of the traffic problems.
Yeah.
Right now, you can
But
just
I'm
drive
also
through the
concerned
state
about
and
all
then
those
get
people
something.
who lost their jobs because they were
Yeah,
riding the
but I
tolls.
mean, when people lose their jobs in this country, they typically would just move on to something else that's in need. I mean, a lot of why you don't think so?
No, because I'm thinking about the example of the factory you brought up earlier. If they lose their jobs, they should move on to something else.
That's an
they need.
isolated incident where that is the source of work in that city.
Yeah.
And if they want to be able to go on to something else, they have to either go outside the city bounds, which requires them to travel a long distance, or find something that's much less than what they're doing in that particular city, working at a Subway or whatever the case might be. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but that's what people are left with, you know, especially when they're destitute and they need to pay for basic things like toilet paper and water and food. And kids. Don't have kids. It's a bad idea.
Well, why is having kids a bad idea?
I mean, financially.
Financially.
I mean, biologically, it makes as much sense to spread your seed as much as possible. I'll grant you that. Kids are expensive. They cry. They shit themselves.
Yeah, but wouldn't that be a pretty selfish thing to say that, oh, this thing that can't take care of it, it's so annoying. Can't take care of itself and I have to do it.
I mean, I like it when other people have kids.
Right, but wasn't there a time...
My cousin has a kid. She's the cutest thing in the world.
But wasn't there a time where you had to be taken care of by somebody else?
Yeah, that's not my problem.
It's not your problem?
That's not my problem. They made the decision to have me, you know? And I'm sure if I had a kid, he or she'd be saying the exact same thing at 33 years old.
Yeah.
You know? So, I think... Plus, you had said this before, we're hitting close to 8 billion people on this planet. I know that people have talked about how populations tend to stabilize over time.
I think the hypothetical maximum that I agree with of people on Earth is around 11 billion.
But then we start running into issues with food shortages.
Well, we already have food shortages all the time, and half of it is man-made. It's not even like something that naturally occurs.
Yeah, when you consider that.
Why do people in Somalia suffer when they have those humanitarian crises? We send them enough food. It's just the warlords come by and steal it, and then like ransom it back to everybody else. So there is enough food in the world. A lot of it just gets wasted.
A lot of it gets wasted.
Look at a country like Australia. Now, you wouldn't think that they're actually a major food producer because they're mostly desert. But they have this one river valley on the other side of the mountains on the...
Are you talking about like northern Australia?
No, okay. So southwestern Australia on the other side of the mountain range.
Okay.
There's a giant river valley where pretty much all of their farms are. And they produce more than the country needs in food.
I had no idea. I didn't know that.
Right. So they're not a net importer of food. They're a net exporter of food.
No shit.
The United States is a net exporter of food. Probably wheat and cattle and probably not fruit, but...
What do we export?
I think we export grain. China bought a lot of grain from us. Ukraine was exporting a lot of grain.
That's really fascinating. I didn't know that. Reminds me of that book.
The UK solved their food problem. I think it was in the 80s. They said, well, we can't be importing all of our food anymore. So between the 80s and 90s, they solved their import crisis. But then they also caused like mad cow disease, like dummies. Like the dummies they are for being British.
Don't eat cows that eat other cows, basically. Yeah. Well, I mean, especially after World War II. Britain was dealing with famine problems related because they couldn't get
What do you think was the most rationed food product in World War II?
Most rationed food product?
Yeah. Well, I guess I should be more specific. Food or drink product.
Was it water?
No, it was coffee.
But coffee is water.
Well,
coffee is 95% water.
Yes, but the beans to make coffee.
Oh, the beans to make coffee.
Were the most rationed product. So the average American was only drinking 1 cup of coffee a day at the time, and that sounds like a lot.
Not compared to what I drink a day.
Exactly. Like when I go to work, well, actually, a cup of coffee is counted as 5 fluid ounces, so it's less than what most people think a cup is. A cup is 8 fluid ounces.
A cup is 8 fluid ounces.
Right. So a cup of coffee is 5 fluid ounces. I drink what my Mr. Coffee says is 6 cups of coffee. And
yeah, I have a cup in the morning, and then I have a cup about 20 minutes after, and then I usually have a cup at the end of the night.
Yeah.
So I'm drinking a lot of coffee.
So for the average American, at least in the mainland, to be drinking 1 cup of coffee a day was pretty dramatic.
Really?
It was all being sent to the front. In Germany,
I didn't
coffee was saved for the aristocrats, and the soldiers who were supposed to get it were getting coffee Erstat, they called it, which is not even freeze-dried coffee. It's just mimic coffee.
It's mimic coffee.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the German army was massive, too. Like, they had a lot. Their standing army was huge.
Right. One thing that surprised me about the German army is they didn't have... Well, they had MREs, but it was not how they fed their army. While most other expeditionary forces, like the British and the American and the French, all survived off of MREs in the field, the German army didn't. They had
What
one.
did they subsist on?
They had one type of MRE, and they only gave it out when the commanding officer of the unit signed off on it, and that was very rare.
So how did the German military eat?
They scavenged or purchased their food or stole it.
Way to go, Hitler.
Yeah, so they
It's a
pillaged.
basic tenet of the military that you're able to feed the people that
Well,
are
the thing
fighting.
is, they were able to feed themselves for the most part. It wasn't until like they got out into the boondocks of the Soviet Union and
which was a catastrophe.
Vichy France fell,
Right.
and that somewhat neutral way of trading was taken away.
That people have made, that I've listened to, have made compelling arguments that part of the reason that the Third Reich fell was overexpansion, especially Eastern. Because Stalin and Hitler had made a pact about
Yeah,
they
they
would never go to war.
Yeah, Hitler was buying a
quickly
bunch
broke
of
that.
Yeah, Hitler was buying a bunch of material
Right.
from the Soviet Union and fuel.
What he didn't anticipate is that when they crossed over into the Eastern Front, that the German army was ill prepared for the cold and
Well,
ill prepared for the winter.
You have to think about it this way. The further east the Germans went, the further their supply lines had to stretch. But the further east the Soviets went, the shorter their supply lines had to reach.
That's right. That's completely right.
So after a
Yeah.
certain point, the Soviets were fine. They just had, I guess, the...
Hold on, let me just get this real quick.
Yes.
Yes, honey. Baby girl. Hello? We gotta go grab her. And it's high res.
Yes.
Where should I sit? Right here?
Wherever you like.
Hit it. Tell me all about. Are we going?
Yeah.
Tell me all about work. Cheers.
Cheers.
I missed you.
Cheers.
Oh, hold on, I gotta open it. There we go.
I missed you too.
Connor's being insanely responsible today.
Well, because I have to drive back, and if my parents found out I had anything, then I'd get in trouble.
Well, me too. I have to be responsible.
Your father scares me. I love your parents to death, but your father, the Marine, is the one that
He's not a Marine.
he was in the Marine Corps.
No, he was in the Navy.
Oh, he's in the Navy.
Yes.
Same.
He actually did something similar to what I do. He was operating the cameras on an aircraft carrier.
Oh,
that's
you're
so
kidding.
Cool.
Yeah, he would record the flights coming in and out, and he would maintain the security cameras and whatnot.
So me offering you a shot is going to get me nowhere, correct?
No,
What a shame. Connor, there's going to be
if
a
we
night.
were in a different setting, if
Connor,
we
there's
were
gonna
doing
be a
this at my
night.
house, or if I was going to sleep somewhere, then yeah.
Oh,
But because I have to drive home, no.
You're like literally the most
yeah, but you
responsible
could just
person
hang
I
until
know.
you're sober, like I'm gonna do.
That's not how it
I'm just
works with
gonna
my
stay
parents.
here.
This is not the ultimate peer pressure. I don't know what it
I
is.
know, don't
I
peer
want to get him
pressure
drunk because I want to see what Connor's like when he's drunk.
I'm the same
You've never
person.
seen him drunk before?
We've had a
Oh.
couple drinks together. I was starting to get a little bit.
I don't change very much whether I'm getting high or
No,
drunk.
he does. He really doesn't.
No?
To what I
No.
can remember, because we did.
The only
s'mores
thing
night
that
at
gives
your
away that I'm
house.
high is that my eyes turn like crimson. Not even just bloodshot, just
I
crimson.
couldn't tell though because
Yeah.
it was dark when we did the fire pit at his house. Are you cold?
No, I'm good.
It was dark when we did the fire pit at your house.
What? I told the camera to go. Why did you decide not to?
Let me hit that for a second.
Oh yeah, of course.
Right now it's
Everything
going.
down. So,
What are we talking about?
well, we're just shooting the shit right now.
We were talking about
Alright.
a lot of different things.
We're talking about you. What did we cover? We covered
Oh my
unions,
God.
education,
Unions,
cows.
education. Cows?
Well, we were talking about how intelligent domesticated cows are from an evolution standpoint.
How far away do you have to go for it to no longer be called off-Broadway?
We determined that it's 20 feet.
20 feet.
20 feet
is-
off
Off-Broadway.
Broadway.
Well, have
Yeah.
you seen anything off Broadway?
Yeah, I've seen a couple of off-Broadway shows, but I can't remember any of the names.
I saw Newsies off Broadway. And that was an incredible, incredible thing. Because I grew up loving Newsies the movie with Christian Bale, which, by the way, was one of his first films. I mean, he was so young and sexy in that. You should leave me for him.
I should.
So we have passes. It's technically a day pass, right?
Uh-huh.
What's your day pass again?
Kelly Severide.
Some loser.
Chicago
He's some
Fire.
loser from Chicago Fire. I think he's a closet homosexual, but that's just me.
He's not. He's married.
Okay. But what,
not
you
a
think
closet
gay men
homosexual.
can't be married? This is what
No, they
what do you
can be
call the
married.
50s and the 60s? That's basically what it
Closeted.
was.
Yeah.
And me, it's Kate Winslet.
Uh-huh.
I don't care at any age. Even if she was 75, Kate Winslet. Now, I need to know.
Forever.
Forever. And I need to know who your day pass is.
See, this is where being so disconnected from like popular culture really hinders me. So I think the generic answer would be someone like Emma Watson because I watched Harry Potter once.
Okay.
So
it's basically the only actress that you know.
That I can name right now.
See,
yeah.
I'm kind of like you. I'm in the middle. I only know his name in the show. I don't know what his name is in real life.
Well, when I watch movies, I look at the characters and not the actors. So even though I watch a lot of movies, I do lose who the people are.
Me too.
Yeah.
I can't focus on a film and pay attention to the story at the same time. I can't do it. Because when I watch a movie, I'm already thinking about what it's trying to tell me, how deep it
who
is.
the actors are.
You know, I do this all the time.
He does.
We gotta stop because I gotta explain to you what this actually means. It makes it difficult for me to enjoy anything. That's why the movies like Marvel and Star Wars are easy because, you know, I can go ahead and enjoy it.
Yeah.
Salud.
Cheers.
So long. Gun pie.
I found this great whiskey at Costco. I went there to go.
Good.
I went there to go buy a 6-pack or something with a friend. And next to me on the shelf was this whiskey called Toki. It's from Japan, and it's a it's a combination of like 5 different whiskeys from across Japan, and it's really smooth.
This is not super expensive. It's Clyde Mays. It is bourbon, so it definitely comes from Kentucky.
I like Bullet bourbon.
Bullet is really
frontier
good.
That
stuff.
actually went down really nice.
Yeah, it's getting expensive though, bourbon now. My favorite bottle of scotch, which was originally 80, 60, 70, 80 bucks, is now, you can't find it, and it's well over $400 to $500 a bottle. 18 Macallan.
I told my parents that the whiskey I was just telling you about was $30, and she was like, "Whoa, that's a lot."
But because they don't drink, they don't drink expensive.
No.
I mean, what does your dad drink?
Well, he doesn't drink beer anymore. He drinks non-alcoholic beer from Total Wine called Penn's Best. And
Penn's Best.
my mom does a lot of wine. Like, I think the brand is called Low Hanging Fruit.
Have you had it?
Hanging fruit.
Yeah.
Wow, that's not sexual at all.
Yeah.
I think it, yeah.
Well, I don't know if it's sexual or it implies how cheap it is.
You would. Yeah.
What?
You would, of course.
I would what?
Make it something
Well,
sexual. You're thinking about testicles right
Yeah,
now.
absolutely.
Well, I've got a problem with that lately. What? I mean, it's perfectly natural when you're on supplemental testosterone to have small testicles. You just got to deal with it. You know, it's one of those
Just gotta
things.
deal with it.
Yeah. I don't think I was taking tests though when I hung out with you. Did I mention to you that?
Why? It's
When
not
did
like
you start
that-
doing it? Like
no,
last
when did you
week?
start
No,
showing him your testicles anyway?
That's none of your business. What goes on between Connor and me is our business, not your
Okay.
business.
Especially when it's on camera.
No,
it's our
not
business.
too, not too long after we had that party at your parents' house, I ended up going back onto testosterone. Because I
Okay.
did it pre-COVID for about a year.
Have you considered taking cold showers? Because I hear everyone on the internet say that starts testosterone production.
There are a lot of things actually that can naturally boost testosterone, but
What about Rocky Mountain oysters? Does eating
I've
those
heard this. I've
produce
heard
anything?
that oysters, but I don't know specifically.
Well, do you not know what Rocky Mountain oysters
I
are?
know what oysters are. I had my first oyster this summer.
Well, a Rocky Mountain oyster is a bull testicle.
Yeah, right.
You should have fucking prefaced it like that. Because if I had said yes, everybody would know that I'd eaten bull balls. No, I can honestly say I've never had anything testicle related. Have you?
No. I mean,
Well, you said that really adamantly. Wait, no.
No.
You don't get this until you tell me if you've had balls.
not bull balls.
Whose balls? Whose balls?
Bull balls? No.
Have you?
No, I'm not gay.
You don't have to, doesn't mean you're gay if you have bull testicles.
I don't think I've really eaten anything other than what is a typical cut of meat. I don't
Ribeye? Filet?
really-
Flank?
Yeah, all that kind of stuff. Those are typical cuts of meat, but testicles and ears and eyes aren't. But my uncle likes to eat those things.
Let's see, if I had anything that's kind of strange, even by today's, I mean, I've tried tongue.
I've eaten strange
Tongue
fruit.
is,
There was this bush that was growing these weird, like hard lime-looking things next to where I work, and I took one off the bush and ate it.
Oh my God,
Just to
you're
find out-
gonna get
That's so
poisoned.
dangerous.
Just to
I know.
find out it was a quince.
what the hell's a quince?
A
quince?
Okay, so in Greece they call them the fruit of the gods, and they're really sour.
Oh!
Is it yellow?
They're bitter.
Some are yellow, some are green.
Yeah.
Quince fruit, right?
Yeah.
What if it was poison?
That's
Well, I was really hungry.
then the next
I also
We're
generation.
found-
willing to take the chance.
I also found raspberries in the driveway, so I was eating those too.
So is
Or
this
wine
is the
berries.
story with quinces that you have to allow them to rot and ferment before you can eat them?
And, from what I understand, you have to boil them to make them
So there's a fruit that was
better to eat. It's not that they aren't edible; it's just they're really sour.
There was
And it was, but I like sour stuff, so I was having a good time.
from Greece. So there's a fruit from ancient times. It started to fall out of favor. I forgot the freaking name of it, but with the way that you're only supposed to eat this because it's toxic unless you let it ferment, and it ferments by rotting. And it fell out of favor because it's incredibly bitter. But I cannot remember what the name of it is. I'll have to find that. So I don't think I've had any really exotic fruits. I've never heard of a quince until now. What's the most exotic thing you've had? Side these nuts. You smirking at it.
I don't know. I've had quite a few different kinds of fruits. Like I like dragon fruit.
That's not exotic.
That's not
Yeah,
exotic.
it is. Doesn't come from
And
the Americas, I don't think.
star. There's like a
Star
Yeah, there's
fruit.
star fruit.
which is really good.
Leche nuts are pretty good.
What are
That
those?
I've never had.
They're okay. So they have a hard shell, but the interior is kind of like a grape.
Is it a nut?
So it's like a white fleshy grape. They're called leche nuts, but they're more like a fruit.
Oh.
They kind of have like a rind, they have a rind or a shell, but the inside is like a grape, like a peeled grape.
Is it
It's
sweet?
white. Yeah, they're sweet, but also pretty neutral tasting.
Interesting. Where do you get these?
I had those in Hawaii.
Oh, well.
Hawaii.
Is it something that they grow in Hawaii?
Yeah,
Oh, well, that's why. It's probably not economical to export it to the mainland.
I'm sure there are people who export them. Because if
Yeah.
someone has the money for it, they'll pay for it.
I wouldn't.
I mean,
We need to go to Hawaii.
there are people who buy
You've already said that several
Wagyu
times.
beef,
I know.
even though it's like $400 for a 5-ounce steak.
I've never had Wagyu beef before. It's very expensive.
Yeah,
It's because the marbling in it. First of all, those
it's
cows.
everything that goes into it. It's the entire life cycle of the cow.
Don't they massage those cows?
I don't know if that's Kobe or Wagyu, but
Might be Kobe.
they just come from a specific farm in Japan where they produce the cows that way.
But have you ever seen a raw cut of Wagyu?
Yeah, it's
one of the most
really
beautiful-
marbled.
It's one of the most
Really?
beautiful things to look
Yeah.
at. Have you ever seen a picture of Wagyu
No.
beef? Hold on. I've never seen more perfect fat marbling in a steak before.
Oh, that does look good.
Isn't that just the most incredible thing you've ever seen? Mm-hmm. Look at that.
I would never pay $230 though for a steak.
Apparently the taste is incredible. Melts in your mouth. Kind of like Rocky
Look at that
Mountain
square
oysters.
patty.
First, I need a raise.
That's insane.
Yeah, very angular. The Japanese like their square stuff.
What is it, $400 for a 6-ounce steak?
Mm-hmm.
Holy crap!
You can get it at any top tier Michelin star steakhouse, I imagine, right?
Yes, but you'd be paying exorbitantly more for the service, and for the chefs to cook it.
I'm sure
not
Chef
just for the cut.
Ramsay's restaurant serves Wagyu beef.
I know he makes beef Wellington. He's famous.
We were just talking about that last night about doing our own beef Wellington. It's typically done with some kind of nut, isn't it? But you
well,
can supplement
I
it
don't
for
know,
mushroom.
but I did see a video on YouTube of someone making Gordon Ramsay's beef Wellington from products you can only buy at Walmart.
And did it come out nice?
I don't know. I only saw the thumbnail for it.
Well, I saw Ramsay do a short episode on his beef Wellington. He used mushrooms instead of nuts in it.
Oh, well, that's turning me off. I don't like mushrooms.
You don't like mushrooms?
No.
Why?
I don't like the texture.
You know, like you gotta cook
They
it.
can be a little bit weird.
Yeah.
In what
I would
way?
eat like mushrooms in a salad raw, but if they're cooked, like in chicken marsala or something like that, then
Why?
I'll eat it.
What's your experience with the texture of it?
I don't
Mushy?
know how to. I guess the mushy
Yeah.
nature of it, I don't like.
That's what
The homogeneous feel of it. It's like one slab of decomposer I'm eating. Because that's
Yeah.
what they are. They're decomposers.
Yeah, they're fungi. They're
Yeah.
you know.
They're
that's
not
what
really
they-
fun
It is
guys,
gross.
but they are fungi.
They're not fun guys.
Yeah.
You mean fungi are fungi are most important like decomposers. I think the only decomposers in the
Look, I'm not going to
kingdom.
argue their importance, but I will argue is that I don't like the taste and the mouthfeel.
You just
and I
haven't
don't have
found-
to eat it
You
if
just
I don't
haven't
want
found
to.
the right mushroom, or you're probably doing the wrong mushrooms. Is what I mean. There's some people on those more popular podcasts that do like DMT.
Well, DMT is not LSD.
No, but well, it's not LSD. The mechanism is completely different, but it's a short-acting psychotropic.
All right. Well, I'm not doing DMT.
Well, why don't you try it? It's only
I don't
10
want to.
minutes
No,
long.
don't encourage that.
I don't want to try it.
He's our test subject for all
He's our test
drugs.
subject.
In fact, we're going to bring a new drug here every single time, and you're going to have to sample it for
No.
us.
No.
I mean, I don't want to say what the hardest thing that I've done is, but
Well, marijuana is already legal in Connecticut, so
Right.
my life is satisfied because I can go and have my bowl or hookah, and my dad can have his cigar, and my mom can have her glass of wine, and we can all hang out with each other.
There you go.
Most other families can't do that.
That's
At least
right.
I get to have that.
what's the active ingredient in LSD is lysergic acid. Have you had a lot of patients that come in on LSD?
Not really. It's
I mean,
mostly PCP.
PCP.
Yeah.
Which I mean,
Yeah.
I'll never do it just because of the
I
amount
know.
of patients that we've taken care of on PCP.
And they're all naked.
Well, you want to know
every
why that
single-
is?
Why?
They get hot.
So they get hot.
they get hot.
PCP affects the hypothalamus,
Yeah.
which is what is responsible for temperature regulation. So there's this interesting phenomena with PCP patients. They take their clothes off because
Yep,
their
all of
they're,
them.
they're,
They,
they're,
they
they're
also
Always naked.
they get paranoid that they're being chased, so they get naked.
They also
and
have a
then start
tendency to
running.
lash out at glass objects,
Oh,
which is another.
do you think it's because they
weird
get like a
one.
hint of their reflection in it?
That I'm not 100% sure of, but there have been patients that I've taken care of that are phenomenal PCP patients. Like they're just relaxed, fine, they're willing to comply, and then on a drop of a dime they just switch. And we usually treat them with benzodiazepines. I mean, I'll nail somebody with like 5-10 milligrams of Versed who's having a psychotic episode on PCP, and generally that works pretty
Yeah.
well. But you guys do more than that in the ER.
It depends. I mean,
Well, what do
sometimes
you-
if they come mellow by the time you guys bring them in,
Yeah, but if they're psychotic, you
Yeah,
do,
then if we- right,
do
then
your,
we'll
what's in a
do more.
B52? It's
Benadryl, Haldol,
and how
Ativan.
yeah, an Ativan.
Yeah.
Shit, I might need one of those. I haven't been able to sleep in a while.
You know-
so
One thing we use in the animal hospital, and I'm upset that emergency rooms don't use it anymore, is Ace Promazine. I feel like that should probably make a comeback.
Ace Promazine?
Yeah.
I don't know what that is.
PCP people.
Well, just in general. I think it's probably a better antipsychotic than other things. If you use the veterinary one, it'll destroy your kidneys because the dosing
Oh,
for
the dose.
the dosing for animals is very different for
Oh, it is
than
an
for people.
antipsychotic. I wonder if it's similar to clonidine.
But most of the articles I was able to find, I'm not sure about Wikipedia, but the articles I'd found in the
Oh,
past.
it's a phenothiazide.
What does that mean?
Thiazine, sorry. It's it's a class of antipsychotic drug. It's used in animals as both an antiemetic. Look, the azine on the end reminds me of other antiemetic drugs, like
Compazine.
compazine. Yeah, which I had a bad experience with once.
You did?
I did, because it has a tendency. If you push those medications, certain medications, really quickly, like compazine or into a
Reglan,
patient or Reglan,
Benadryl.
it can cause psychosis.
Yep.
It has a profound effect on the brain. I went into Newark Hospital for a major migraine. I was simultaneously having balance issues, so I just went in for a neuro exam. The scan came back fine, but I still had a massive headache, and without telling me, the doctor had ordered compazine and it got pushed. And out of nowhere, I got massively, massively anxious. I had to get up off the stretcher.
That does
I was
not sound
I
like
gotta
a way you
leave, I
treat
gotta
a
leave.
headache.
But the way you treat that usually is with Benadryl.
Yeah.
If you have these sort of, you
But
sort
you
of.
gotta mix it. You gotta mix it in a bag.
Yeah, you can give it
and
slow.
drip it, right.
It's the same thing with Benadryl. A lot of people push that shit really quickly, and it's
Yeah.
not good for patients.
No,
You're
it's
giving
not.
these drugs a lot slower than we're actually giving them. The only medications that you really need to push fast
Adenosine.
is adenosine.
Yeah.
That's it. Which
What
is
about
this
morphine? Can you push morphine fast?
I mean, you can. There's nothing stopping you from pushing a medication fast,
Right.
whether you should or you shouldn't. Morphine, a lot of those pain medications is something you should probably push slow. I always do, especially with fentanyl.
I always do too. On the slower side.
Right. The problem is you're always in a
morphine.
rush.
You're always,
So
right. On the slower
if you got to
side.
give an ml or 2 mLs
Yeah.
of morphine, it's like...
But you know what? I always dilute it in a little bit of saline. And then
Yeah,
I
you
push
pull it up in a 10 cc.
Yeah.
You know, you can actually do that with adenosine too. Because the problem is when you give 6 milligrams or 12 milligrams of adenosine straight, and then you open the flush, is that the idea is that you're flushing it towards the heart. But remember, you've got a short half-life on adenosine.
Right.
So if it's very, very, very distal, that there's a chance that by the time the drug gets to the heart, that it's not working. So what you do is you draw it up in a 6 milligrams up in a 10 cc syringe, and when you do the flush, now you've sort of pushed it towards the heart. That way
Yeah.
you get the maximum amount of drug. So You know how many times I've had adenosine? By the way, this drug sucks. If you ever go into SVT, like where your heart is beating really, really fast, getting adenosine is one of the worst feelings in the world. It makes you feel like you're dying for about 15 to 20 seconds. And then it's just over afterwards.
Well, you kind of do, because it, it flatlines you for a
Yeah,
second.
it causes what's known as transient asystole. So the way that it works is our hearts, just like every other, cell where things depolarizes, you have sodium outside the cell and potassium inside the cell. Yeah. And they swap really quickly. So when you have SVT, you have reentry at the AV node. Well, with AV nodal reentry circuit tachycardia, it's reentry at the AV node. And so what adenosine does is it causes a shutdown of this thing inside the cell called cyclical AMP, and it causes hyperpolarization. So what happens, it scares a lot of people the first time they do it, is you have this patient who's tacking away at 200. You're pushing 6 milligrams of adenosine, and then you just see flatline. And that's the time before the SA node kicks back on. That's the pucker. We used to call it the pucker. I had a patient once go like 12 seconds.
I know, because we're all like standing there watching.
And I'm like, I'm waiting for it to come back on. I'm waiting for the heart to pick back up the rhythm. Meanwhile, they're saying, I don't feel good, I don't feel good. It's like, well,
Yeah, well.
I'm going to tell you why.
Yeah.
So I've had adenosine in my life probably about 8 or 9 times.
8 or 9 times,
Yeah, I used
really?
to be having an SVT like 2-3 times a week.
Oh my
God.
God.
I could never break it with a vagal
break
maneuver.
it, yeah.
And now what they're doing now is instead of bearing down to like you're taking a shit to try to get it, to vagal out of the SVT, there's this new technique that has a much higher rate of success with converting tachydysrhythmias, where you have a patient bear down, and then as soon as they're finished with the bear down, you flip them onto their back and raise their legs. And the idea is that it increases.
Flushing things around.
The idea behind it is that it increases thoracic pressure enough to that the idea is that the heart starts to expand because of the rush of blood, and that it's able to kind of kick you out of the rhythm. 40% success rate.
Wow.
40% success rate. So you might give that a shot before you want to go to adenosine.
Adenosine.
I mean, there's nothing particularly dangerous about adenosine.
Except if your heart doesn't start again.
Right, but there are some people that say that you shouldn't take it with you shouldn't give it to people that have WPW. What is it? With something else, with underlying history of WPW, but it's hard to see WPW at a rate of 200.
Yes.
So the relative risk of giving somebody adenosine when they have WPW is low. You can still give adenosine to a suspected WPW patient and properly convert them. So yeah, this is all the shit you learn when you're in nursing or medical school, or But we were talking about the distinction between what you learn in a classroom and what you actually learn
in
on the
real
street.
life,
and like how much of a gap there is between what you learn during didactic elements of your academic career. And I found that for me, especially with medical school, is that while the academic part really prepared me to understand how things work, it wasn't until I started precepting, actually doing calls with people that had done them a lot, that I started learning about the application of that knowledge. And we were talking about how that pertains to any education.
Yeah.
Well, the thing about the medical field is you do need the education to even have an idea of what kind of medication you might need to give somebody. But when it comes to things outside of the medical field, a certification, let's say you're doing automotive repair, you might not actually need a certification to outperform someone who got one. It's really just experience and willingness to learn. But the medical field's different. I would never discount like a vet or a doctor with what they do.
Yeah, but do you really need to know the mechanism of action of adenosine or amiodarone to know when to push it? I mean, the nursing model stresses a lot about when you should do things, not necessarily why you should do things. I mean, you know it because of your years in nursing, but when it comes to a particular drug, like...
Well, that's for the doctors to know why you do it. For the nurses, it's more about applying and following through.
Well, no, you have to know the why, because I've had doctors order things that I didn't agree with, and so I wouldn't do it.
Is there you have an example?
No, I'm gonna have to think for a minute. Or I would ask them, like, why are you ordering this for this person? Doesn't make any sense to me.
It happens. I mean, physicians...
Even like physicians put in orders on the wrong, especially now that we've switched over to computer charting. Like just the other day, someone put in all kinds of orders on the wrong person, and none of it made sense to me. And so I went over and I was like, you know, it was actually like
Yeah.
a GC chlamydia test for one of my patients. And I was like, why are you putting a GC chlamydia in for this woman? Like, there's no reason for that.
It wasn't a sexual assault patient.
No.
was it?
And he was like, oh my God, I put it in on the wrong person. So you have to know. You have to know,
Well,
like, what the
I,
med
as a veterinary
is, what
assistant,
is it
ask
worth.
questions
Yeah.
so things don't get forgotten or
Yeah,
things can get
right.
You
elaborated.
don't realize
on.
how important that is
Yeah.
for all levels of healthcare.
Right.
We were just talking about this case. I
Even
mean,
as a patient yourself.
Yeah.
Like, why, you know, I was thinking about that on the way here. Like, for us, like, even for me with my autoimmune disease, or even my stupid finger today, I had a big conversation with Dr.
Yeah,
Richer
yeah.
about it. It's so frustrating, even for us, and we know what people are talking about. So I can't even imagine how frustrating it is for people that don't understand anything when they're going to the doctor.
Yeah, because there's a big jump.
Mm-hmm.
You know, sometimes physicians, PAs, nurses, even medics, we
Mm-hmm.
kind of have difficulty explaining things in simple terms to patients because it's complex at our level. We forget that we have to start thinking about how we're coming across to our patients and what they want and what they're thinking when we're interacting with them.
And how to simplify it for
So-
them to
Right.
understand.
One common, I don't know if it's a misconception or misunderstanding, but it seems a lot of patients at our hospital seem to have some sort of like mysticism over the powers of the ultrasound machine and what it can detect and what you can determine from it.
Really?
And even, I went to the doctor today, my general practitioner's office, and he was having a conversation with his assistant over a woman who was insisting on having an ultrasound done for her arthritis in her hip. And I'm not sure if you could really even determine the severity of arthritis in your hip with an ultrasound. So I think there
Probably
is
an
some sort of
X-ray.
mysticism
Yeah.
over the power of it.
Yeah.
Probably an X-ray is better for that, but the medical system is designed nowadays so that there's redundancy in a lot of things. That way, mistakes don't get made. But mistakes do get made.
Still.
There's a particular case that you and I are familiar with, where a nurse. So there's a class of drugs that are used for putting patients under in general anesthesia. You typically knock somebody out with a general anesthetic and then you paralyze them
Yeah.
with a paralytic, and then you give pain medications. And there's I'm sure that there's a whole, procedure, especially for different surgeries on this. But one thing that you absolutely never do is push a paralytic on a patient that's awake. You just don't do it because being paralyzed while you're fully conscious is incredibly, incredibly terrifying.
I'd
So
imagine.
there's this case of a nurse who pushed a medication called Vecuronium on a patient that just had to. Would she get an MRI?
Yeah, she was either CAT
Yeah.
scan or MRI.
She had to
I can't
get
remember
a
which one.
scan, and the nurse I guess she got confused between the distinction between Vecuronium and Valium.
Yeah.
Now, there's a big and she ended up paralyzing this patient, and it doesn't just cause paralysis of skeletal muscles; it causes paralysis of involuntary muscles in the body as well,
Right.
including your diaphragm. So, if you push a paralytic and you don't follow it up with either
Intubation.
intubation or manual ventilations, you're going to suffocate.
Yep.
Right? So she pushes Vec on this patient, puts her into the tube, and then they go away. And needless to say, she goes into cardiac arrest, and they don't realize this for a period of time. Now they got a dead patient on their hands. Vecuronium is one of those drugs that it requires reconstitution. You have to draw up saline, put it into the vial, swirl it up, and give it. I don't know how a mistake like that.
So I was thinking
happens.
about that. So with all of the drug shortages and things coming in different vials and different, like I had that happen to me, and not the mistake, but
Right.
you're going to pull things out of the Pyxis to give your patient, and it's normally in, a little vial with a red top, and now it's
Yeah.
a little vial with a green top, or, it's pre-mixed now because we can't get it.
Well,
in this
that's
little
where the
thing.
education of knowing
So-
the names for things is important because you better read those bottles.
Right.
Don't just rely on the packaging
But
that comes
that's
in.
the other thing is that, when you start pulling things, it does have all of these alerts. This is, highly concentrated, or this
Right.
is a dangerous medication, or,
That pulls up on
high
your
alert.
screen, right?
But I never read them. Like
'cause
I
it's-
type the thing in, and
you're complacent
you're
with
like,
the job.
do,
Yeah.
like I bypass all those things
Yeah.
so fast. I don't even look at the alerts that pop up on the screen anymore.
And there are some things
First,
that
you're
are
in
so
a rush
routine,
because you're
right,
so busy.
Well,
Second, it's routine.
It's not just the medical industry. If you look in factories, for example, the factory here in Georgetown,
Can you grab my bag while you're up?
It was famous for their workers
Thank you.
circumnavigating all the safety procedures.
Thank you.
So, like, if they needed to have a foot down on a pedal and they needed to move something on the other side of the machine, they would just get a brick and keep the pedal down.
Well,
And that's
people
how
are-
people
Oh,
would get
see?
caught in machines.
Yeah.
People are
and things
clever
like
like that, right?
Yeah.
If there's a
can
shortcut to
bypass.
be found, people
We'll
will find it.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Why you got to be out of here?
that. No, I was setting a timer for that.
Why? How does it work in the animal health industry?
Things just go. There's no machines with a bunch of safety things on it. You know, if we need to get an X-ray, we might do a blood work first to see. Well, we usually do a blood work
Right.
first to see if the animal is compliant with whatever medication.
we have on hand, and that's usually Telazol or Dexdormitor. Dexdormitor is short acting, and you have to use an antecedent afterwards. At least with Telazol, they can wake up on their own after a few hours.
Oh, but that's still a pretty large window.
Well, if we're just doing X-rays, yeah, you don't usually use Telazol unless the animal's particularly naughty.
If you're doing a longer procedure where it requires
Telazol and sevoflurane will be given through oxygen through the intubation. There's also isoflurane,
isoflurane,
but I'm not too sure why they use one or the other in those cases.
yeah, there's probably a really good reason for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So will you guys push pain medications in addition to those?
We do push pain medications pretty often.
What's the main pain med you guys use?
Carprofen.
What's it called?
Carprofen. The brand we usually buy is called Carprovet, but the medication I believe is called Carprofen.
Do you know how to
something
spell
like
it?
that. Well, CARPROFIN. Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Carprofen. I'm curious about this. Oh, that's an NSAID.
Oh, so maybe like a Toradol.
Right, so that wouldn't have any. I mean, that has indirect pain management.
That's usually what we give for
No,
the
like
pain management.
morphine or
No, we don't use morphine.
fentanyl.
We do have fentanyl patches in the building, but I've never seen us
Patches?
use them. Yeah,
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, that is
I think they're
interesting.
probably like 40 years old, so they're probably not
Because
good
you
anymore.
never use them.
Yeah.
They also have fentanyl.
I think
lollipops.
gabapentin is another pill we might give for pain management.
Which one, gabapentin?
Gabapentin.
Yeah, so those are all medications that they're not necessarily opiate analgesics, but they have
We usually don't give anything that would hint to me that it's an opiate.
during the procedure or after the procedure. Either
After.
one.
Yeah,
Do you
I
give
see.
them like to take home? Take it home?
Carprofen
Oh,
or gabapentin.
Okay.
That's usually what we give, and that usually works. But
For
for an
animals.
animal, that might actually be all you need. It might not work in the same sense for a
Yeah.
human, but for an animal, that's what we give, and
God,
it usually
I
works.
use that for my finger this
You did. They gave you tramadol.
I took one. I
Which
slept
is
till
one of
like
those-
2 o'clock the next
I know,
day.
but that's because it's one of those weird medication where it activates opiate. It interacts with opiate receptors in the brain, but it also has SSRI components to it as well. It acts like a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor at the same time.
Is that why it made me so sleepy?
Yeah,
Oh
I think.
my
Well, it's
God.
also. I mean, it's an opiate. Like, it's
And
gonna
I was
make-
half drugged
you know,
anyway.
the one pain medication that I hate, you know this, that I hate is ketamine.
Oh, because
I-
it caused like a disassociation effect
I
on you.
hate ketamine. I had a
Yeah.
bad experience with ketamine. I had surgery at Yale. They took out my distal ileum, about a foot of it. And I came to and I was in so much pain and it hurt, and I was asking them if they could just do something about it. They didn't want to give me pain medication. And so out of nowhere, I just remember falling off the face of the planet. Like, everything went orange. I disappeared from reality. And as I was fading into oblivion, I knew what had happened. The nurse had pushed ketamine. And I was like, I said to myself, as I'm like passing out of consciousness, like, this shit is going to be fucking, this is going to fucking suck.
So it's like you were tripping on LSD.
It sucks, man. Ketamine is.
But it works really good on kids. We use it all the time on kids.
Does for pain management.
I
We have
wonder
a
if they
protocol
feel
for
the same
ketamine.
way.
Well, I'll ask the next one that I give ketamine
Well, they're
to.
little. I don't know. Could they really explain like what they felt? I don't know. Maybe.
I'm sure that there's
It
some
depends.
issues with dissociation, even pediatric
Yeah.
populations.
The only thing I really know about ketamine are people who are addicted to it and use it recreationally, and they end up being pretty crazy people.
Well, I imagine that people that are using ketamine on the streets are using it for the dissociative properties as
Yeah.
well. But I can't imagine addiction to that.
Speaking of kids and the disassociated properties of it, there's one internet personality that people are greatly concerned is doing ketamine, and that's why he is the way that he is. There's this child named Desmond. Well, his username online is like Desmond is amazing, something like that.
Okay.
He's this. He's involved in the drag queen community as like an 8-year-old.
I've been thinking about.
8-year-old?
Yeah, he's probably like 8 or 10 years old.
I've been thinking about getting into the drag.
God.
And he's involved
should.
he's involved in the drag community, and one time like live on Instagram he was making a joke about doing ketamine and did the snorting motion. So how would a child even know about
Oh my
it
God. Where are his
unless he was
parents?
watching people? I think the parents support it. There was one time
That's
they had
terrible.
him there was
That's
one time
terrible.
they had him do
In a
mock
ped?
strip show
Shit,
in front of a room of gay men.
Oh, no, that's...
they
Why is that
they
not
changed it as a-
considered
You
being for
pornography?
real? Connor, you
Yeah,
being for
this
real?
is real.
Shit, dude.
They said it was actually a costume change and not a strip. So that's how they were able to get away with it, because he went from clothing to something that was skin tight. And people were throwing
my
money at him and
God.
everything.
I mean, I have no problem
If you wanna
with
look it
drag
up, look up Desmond
drag
is amazing.
queens,
I will.
but a 10-year-old, there's something's wrong with that.
I think he's at least under 12. And I'm going to say
But
8
still,
to 10 years
yeah,
old.
if you're not 18, no way should you be doing that.
Wait a minute. The story.
He's a child.
But he
He's
was
a
also
child.
what? Doing ketamine?
People who observe what's going on, including me and the things I've seen of him, highly suspect he's abusing ketamine.
Just because now it's bugging
At
me.
10.
Because I
At
can't
10
remember
years
what the
old.
MOA of ketamine is. It's a weird one.
It
But
doesn't
the
even
drag
matter.
commu-
He's
the
10
dra-
years old.
Right.
He shouldn't be dressing up in drag.
Well, you guys
and
worry
naked
about the
in front
fact
of
that he's
people.
10.
Well, I'm
I'm
worried
gonna
about,
worry about
how
the
people get their
ketamine.
kids involved with this. Up in Ridgefield
No.
at the Lantern Bar, which I go to sometimes because they have a great happy hour deal. $5 for a huge thing of nachos.
Oh.
Call me in because
What
I'm
day
gonna.
is that?
Like 4 or 5 days a week they do it. I go and get my $3 beers and my $5 plate of nacho.
Where is this place? Ridgefield?
Yeah, Main Street, Ridgefield. Anyways,
that's
they did
why.
a drag show there in the middle of the day, and people were bringing their kids to a bar to go watch all this stuff.
And again, I have no problem with that, but you shouldn't be encouraging your kid to do that at 10 years old.
Kids
It's-
don't know better at that age.
They don't know better, and that's why
You know,
that's
like,
why they try
you
to.
as a parent need to be responsible for your kid.
Yeah, you're preaching.
I mean,
every
you know,
parent should be responsible for a
and-
kid. That doesn't
yeah.
mean though they should.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean they are.
And if you
I
say,
know.
well, they're not responsible for their kid, and you get like CPS involved, CPS down in Texas got in trouble for telling multiple teenage girls to prostitute themselves for money because they weren't going to take care of them. So even CPS can't be trusted with other people's
With
kids.
it, right.
So this is
That's just so
interesting.
sad.
So, ketamine is unlike other pain medications. We know that, in that it doesn't directly interact with respiratory or cardiac function, but it's an NMDA receptor antagonist, which effectively blocks transmission of pain through the spinal cord. So it doesn't have.
That sounds terrifying.
Yeah, but it's effective, and it's also been shown to be effective, especially in the treatment of depression. Although they don't really fully understand why micro infusions of ketamine have been shown to be really effective in the treatment of PTSD and depression clinically. So they're using it. I have a friend that was going for trials.
Well, they still use fentanyl in a medical setting. They still do use it. It's not
Yeah,
safe.
but
Yeah, we do.
fentanyl
Yeah.
is not one of those drugs that we scoff at, right?
No.
People are incredibly scared of the word fentanyl
Well, because of the drug industry, the illegal drug
right,
industry.
because people, they turn on News 12 and this and this
Laced with
person
fentanyl.
died laced with fentanyl. There's a fentanyl epidemic, which there's an opiate epidemic, not a fentanyl epidemic. There's an
Fentanyl is
opiate-
just.
Fentanyl
It's
just
now
is
a
an opiate.
popular one because they're seeing just how many get caught. And when you see, drug bust with enough fentanyl to kill 4 billion people, that's just the surface of what's getting into the country.
Right.
That's not all of it.
No.
So
But at least from a medical standpoint, fentanyl is an effective pain management opiate. But it's a dose-dependent drug. We administer the medication based on a weight-based system. The issue that I've run into with fentanyl is that it's much less effective than morphine. I mean, our dosage for acute pain, I think, is 1 milligram per kilogram up to a max ceiling.
Mhm.
So I think at the most we're giving about 150 milligrams of fentanyl. But even with the heavier patients, where you're maxing your dose out at 150, they're really not getting as much relief from pain as I used to when I was giving morphine. I don't know why that is.
Really?
I mean,
I
that
think
was
it's
my
just a different
it's just,
experience.
it's just experience, but I treated a lot of patients with fentanyl and it didn't seem to have the same pain abating effect as morphine and Dilaudid. I don't know. It was just an experience. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
powerful
Yeah.
and potent analgesic. It's just
I feel like we use fentanyl a lot for trauma patients,
as opposed to what?
as opposed to morphine or Dilaudid.
You guys use more. Do you notice you're using morphine a lot more on MI patients?
Yep, we use morphine more.
Because I use that old
Mona.
mnemonic where it's morphine, oxygen, nitrates, and aspirin.
Mm-hmm.
We don't really use that much. Although aspirin,
Aspirin we still use,
oxygen's
yeah.
changed. We don't high flow MI patients anymore. So it's just, you only give enough oxygen to maintain a saturation
Right.
above 94%. The reason is because they were finding that with high flow oxygen, you're over oxygenating patients. Oxygen can cause free radical damage, to, especially to myocardial tissue, and it can actually induce, long-term can induce ventricular dysrhythmia. So we stopped giving high flow oxygen to patients, just started giving them nasal cannulas, like 2-3 liters. But if a patient is satting at 98% or 99%, given that you believe that there's no other reason for them having a false 98, 97, 99%, you know, they have enough oxygen in their system that giving them supplemental oxygen is not going to make a huge
Right.
difference. But the issue is that they're ischemic downriver.
Mm-hmm.
So you giving additional oxygen, you're not
Right,
going to
couple
load
liters.
additional oxygen
Yeah.
onto hemoglobin that's going to affect, you know, necrosis or ischemia that's distal to the clot. So, you know, oxygen is becoming a little bit less important when it comes to MI patients. But now, yo,
Can you move Linda's car? Mommy can't get in the driveway.
okay,
Like right behind you.
that's a good place to take a break. We'll be back on our next episode. You want me to move it for you?
Yes, please.
You guys continue without me.
Mm-hmm.
You gonna shit talk while I'm away?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
I'll be recorded.
Yeah, you'll get to hear it later. You'll have to watch like 3 hours worth of video to get to
I
it.
better edit out a bunch of the shit. Just put a lot of bleeps in there so that I don't have to think about.
No, I know what works in the YouTube algorithm, so I'll fix it.
What works in the YouTube algorithm?
So you can't say fuck in the first 15 seconds anymore. Otherwise your video is completely demonetized.
What?
Yes. And they're also getting really vague on all the, I guess, violence stuff. So, like,
Yeah.
video games, they get flagged falsely a lot.
I'll be back soon.
Naturally, because there's a lot of violent video
Thank
games.
you.
But when it comes to newsworthy stuff, like what's happening in the world with conflict,
Yeah.
they don't really know what they can report on anymore.
So it's kind of like a free
So they're
for-all?
actually, no,
Oh.
it's over censored. So people are actually taking attention off of YouTube into other sites. So I'm concerned that, you know, YouTube might not have the same kind of prominence it has now in like 5 years. I even had a video taken down off of YouTube. One of my podcast episodes, me and my friend were sitting on his front porch, and we talked
Yeah.
about the 2020 election for like 5 minutes
Uh-huh.
out of a 3-hour-long video,
Yeah.
and that still got the video removed and gave me a strike.
Because
Because we talked about the election. Yeah, we just talked about it.
So you're gonna edit this out?
A lot. There's going to be stuff that's edited out, but there's also going to be a lot that's still in there.
Right.
And for most people, when they watch a podcast, it is kind of just a stream of consciousness of however many people are on camera,
Yeah.
and that's what people will find interesting.
The more people, the better.
No, it's just
Oh.
they're just there to listen to other people have a conversation. I think with the pandemic, there's a lot of people who've developed like a parasocial relationship syndrome,
Uh-huh.
where they have to go online to get what would have been their regular interaction with people in real life.
Oh, true.
So
Because
yeah, let's
everybody was so isolated for so long.
forcefully by other people's
Right.
rules.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't because I was still working.
I was in school, so for part of it, I had to go home. And I was talking to Carter earlier about how much cheating I witnessed and how much cheating I could have even gotten
Like on
into.
school?
In schoolwork, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, so like my idea of a bachelor's degree is highly diluted. Now that before the pandemic, I saw how much people cheated,
Right.
and then during the pandemic, I knew how capable people were of cheating.
Right, right.
Yeah, a lot of people are actually getting their college essays written by a chatbot that'll just write it for you.
Wow.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah, you used to be able
And
to
that
pay
was
people
more,
to do them.
There was more prompt. Right, you could pay somebody to do it.
But now it can be done for free by an AI.
Wow, I had
Yeah.
no idea. Yeah, I didn't have any real social isolation because I worked through the pandemic in the ER. So I was around
Yeah, you're
the
around
same
people all the time.
that I would have been around.
But the way you had to
anyway.
go about it had to change.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%. 100%.
Well, before Carter gets back, let's shit talk him real quick. So,
Let's shit talk him real quick.
so
tell me,
him
tell
and
me
his
a
parents.
secret about him.
Yeah, this is a secret. Him and his parents were over at my house visiting my parents, and
Okay.
I was around for part of it. But usually when my parents have friends over, I go and do my own thing anyways because they're my parents' friends, right?
Right.
So I did hang out with Carter for a bit, and then I went to go get a drink or something. I went downstairs, and then he said to my mom, "What did he have enough of me or something?" He got self-conscious about it.
What? Oh, he's
Yeah.
back. No, you have to tell me something better.
Oh, that he got.
Tell me something that he wouldn't want me to know.
I don't know him that well,
something that
unfortunately.
he's done.
What's the problem, people?
I want to know something that you wouldn't want me to know.
You could write a book on things that you don't want to know about me.
I thought you told me all your secrets.
You've known me for 10 years. You probably know everything at this
And
point.
when you think I would know something that you
Yes.
wouldn't?
Connor and I have
Well,
only
because,
known each
like,
other collectively
boys-
for like 7 hours.
Yeah.
Boys do things, you know.
All right, well, if you ask me a direct question, I'll give you a direct answer.
Well, no, that makes it hard because it can be anything.
Okay, so ask me anything. We can do a Q&A. I don't care.
Q&A.
I'm an open book.
No, I wanted to know like a secret that you know, I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, you want me to tell you a secret? I don't know.
Yeah, tell us a secret on camera, Carter.
Uh-huh.
Put on
So
YouTube.
what?
I don't know,
I
anything.
don't have any secrets.
You don't have any secrets.
And even if I did,
You wouldn't tell me.
that's all I need anyway. You guys don't seem to grasp that information is power. The less people know about you, the more powerful you are.
Well, we're in your house, so we can go search your bedroom for your diary. I'm sure there's something in there.
And my diary's online.
Oh. It's on Google Drive, so everyone can have it.
I'm not going to tell you what I use, because you'll break into it, because my password is the same for everything, so.
I don't know how to break into stuff on the computer.
You just type the password in.
What do you mean?
You type the password into
Into the
Dalio.
computer.
I use Dalio.
Uh-huh.
And I type, a couple times a week, I just type how my week's going and what I did. And
I recently bought a
Oh,
bunch
it is
of,
like a diary.
Yeah.
of college-ruled notebooks, and I'm taking notes with pen and pencil again on pencil and paper.
I find that it's so cathartic just to write your stuff down at the end of a week. Getting into the habit of doing it every day, that's something that I haven't really, acquired a taste for.
Well, I tried to get into reading, but I didn't read every day.
See,
But I
that's-
did keep the book around so that I would have the ability to read whenever I wanted.
So that's my thing, is that, and you know this about me, I'm a voracious reader.
Mhm.
I have a library worth of books, and I've read through every single one of them. I love to read. Now, granted, I don't retain everything, but I'll tell you that reading for me, we've talked about this before in the past, where I don't think that it's the case that children and adults, really hate to read at the core of it. I think the issue is that somewhere along the line, we stopped learning how to read. And the big, we've talked a lot about this, you and me, where the big issue is that a lot of people will say, well, I like the book better or the movie better. When you read a book, you're supposed to actively be creating a mental landscape about what it is that you're reading, which is why the Harry Potter books, I'm sure, have you read them?
No.
Okay. Well, the Harry Potter books carry such a profound impact with so many people. They did with me. Because when I thought about how Harry looked and how Hogwarts looked and how the characters interacted with her, I had a very specific thing in mind when I constructed that mental, picture of how things are. And I think the issue for people that don't like the transition from book to film is that the way that they imagine things in the book varies greatly from the way that directors depict things. So imagine you read an incredible series of books and you picture a character a particular way.
Yeah.
And then you go to the film and it's completely different. There's only been one example where the book met the movie expectation.
To Kill a Mockingbird.
No. I mean, that was a great film, by the way.
When I read the book and then watched the movie, the actors looked exactly how I imagined the characters in the book. The only thing that was really different between the movie and the book is that the black man that they were having the trial for, he didn't literally have his arm torn down just to the bone.
Right.
It was an actor who just didn't use his arm. That was the
Right.
only thing that it wasn't even reality breaking.
But those little things, though, they might have an impact on you.
There
You know?
was one movie based on a book which did not fit the typical convention of what a movie is, and that was the movie for 1984. So I read the book, and it's a great book, but you watch the movie, and it has very little dialogue in it.
Is that Stephen King?
No, it's George Orwell.
Oh, Orwell's
Yeah.
1984.
Orwell's in 1984.
Oh,
So
oh.
the book is good, but the movie doesn't operate
I didn't watch the movie.
conventional like a conventional movie does. The people who wrote the screenplay for the movie had the goal of just giving a visualization to the, I guess, the abstract elements of the book, like what does the political party look like, what does the military and society look like, that at least they can give you an actual picture of it without you relying on the imagination you need in the book, because not everyone can imagine a completely authoritarian society if they've never lived in one, but it's a lot easier for them to understand it if you give them a picture. So it's a movie.
Because people think in picture. We don't
Right.
think in words. Steve Pinker pointed this out. We don't think in words. We think in pictures.
Right.
And so, to your point,
So the
go
book
ahead.
gives you the story and the concepts, but the movie actually gives you the image.
And
well,
that's
like
what
the
film,
Harry
but
Potter
that's what
movies are
films
its
do
own,
for you.
Own well, the Harry Potter movies are their own universe that are based on books.
Yeah, but don't you think that people, especially kids that read and young adults that read those books, have a very specific thing? I mean, if I watch a movie like Harry Potter or Dune, which is one of my favorite books by Frank Herbert, if I watch the film, I go to the book immediately and I can only imagine the characters that come from the film.
Well,
or
if you watch the
lands-
film
Right,
first,
I mean,
right.
it taints it because now I can no longer
You
create...
have to read the book first.
Exactly, you know, and this is one of the things I think, going back to what we were saying before, is that I think that it's not that people hate to read, they just haven't been taught how to read. That point was brought up in Marianne Wolf's book, Proust and the Squid, which is something that I think every person should read. It's about dyslexia and reading and how reading gets cross-wired in the brain. But she points that specific thing out, is that reading is about is about visualization, and we don't do that anymore. People just see words on a page and it becomes work.
Well,
you
no.
know?
They see words on the page and it becomes work, but that's because they have something in their pocket that gives them infinite dopamine release. They got their TikTok and their YouTube and their Instagram and their Snapchat, so the need to actually imagine now has been completely supplemented by the mass hysteria that is social media.
I agree. In fact, the Avengers movies, right?
Yeah, that's just roller coaster.
There
The
have
movie.
been some really, prolific critics of those films for it just being a wild roller coaster. A roller coaster of feed dopamine to the masses as quickly as possible. Is it time?
Yeah, it should be any moment.
Time for what?
Time to.
Oh no, we have like 5 minutes.
We have 5 minutes.
Yeah,
To do what?
to reset the camera.
For the
Oh,
for the stripper contest.
for the stripper, I'll win.
You'll always win, baby.
I know.
You'll always win.
I know.
Yeah. So, no, but that's my stance on reading. Tie it back into what we were talking about before. I've read so much, and one of the things that I'm thankful for is that I found a love for reading really, really early. And
Well, I found my love for reading after I quit social media.
you got off of everything for a while.
Just
didn't you?
I only have YouTube now.
Really?
So you got
Yeah.
rid of Facebook. What else?
Well, I
did you-
never. Okay, so I got rid of Facebook back in like 2016 because
Okay.
I got into controversy with all the people at my high school.
Mm-hmm.
But I had Instagram and Snapchat and all that stuff, which you would probably say is for like the networking, so I can actually keep in contact with some people.
That's what I use it for.
But then I said, well, I have a lot of these people's phone numbers in my phone saved already, so I don't need Snapchat to contact them.
Right.
And all I do is get subjected to like modern MK Ultra influence from the FBI on Instagram, so I might as well stop doing that because that'll help my mental well-being. So
I'm not familiar with the. I mean, I'm familiar with. Okay.
Well, I-
MK Ultra stuff.
well,
that through
MK
Harvard
Ultra is
University.
CIA, but
What was
I-
the whole premise of the MK Ultra? Is that it was mind control for?
the CIA was looking if they could actually control people's
They-
minds.
they were going
and they
That
for
were
was through
well.
Insta?
No. They do that now in a different way. The FBI has agents and bots that interact with people all the time. That's why they were really upset about Elon Musk buying Twitter.
Yeah.
Because like 2/3 of the accounts on Twitter are fake.
You've talked about this before.
Yeah.
Him and what is this theory
I don't
called the
have
dead
Twitter.
internet
Okay, so
theory?
the dead internet theory is that almost all of the interaction you see on the internet right now is either done by bots or people pretending to be other things. So instead of there being 300 million people on a website, there might actually only be 30.
Where do you fall with it?
I think that most of the internet is fake. Like, yeah, TikTok might have 1 billion users, but how much of that is just government psyop? And also social media influencers paying bot farms to get influence.
So what do you think? Like,
So if there's
comments on comment sections are all bot generated?
not all of them, some of them are genuine people commenting.
Right.
But like when I look at a comment section on Instagram, I'd be like, there's no way that person actually wrote that.
Yeah, but the
And
majority.
then I go on their account, and their account doesn't even look real. So it's like what I'm getting at is I lost the distinction between a real person and what is confirmed as a bot or a government psyop. I just lost control of reality in my own head, so
Yeah.
I got off. And I think a lot of people don't have the ability to even recognize that they may have lost that
That would
control.
be me.
I'm afraid to get off because I don't want to lose connection with other
Right.
people. That
Well,
I
I
know.
realized that the fear of missing out you have about social media is all within your own head, and your life is actually greater without it.
How
At least
can I
that was
keep
my
in-
own
How can I
That's
keep in
actually
touch with
true.
her?
How do you keep in touch with these people? Well, the
Text
people you
them or
care
call
about, you
them.
have text or call or even email. So you have ways of contacting and interacting with these people, and if they really were your friends,
Right.
they'd find a way to be with you
Right.
in person.
And you know what? Those are the people that you talk to all the time.
I don't even
You
talk to my
know,
friends all the
like,
time on my phone. I use it as just a way to organize seeing them in person. So I have a friend who lives in Virginia, and we're really good friends. But we might text maybe once a month at most,
Yeah.
and that's probably about organizing to meet in person. It's not even about what we're doing. So I noticed that at least my friendships became richer and more worthwhile because I got off of it.
So you're advocating
And my perception of how much socialization I actually had in my life
Yeah.
corrected to, well, I don't have much, but
Well,
that's
there-
because I'm a busy person.
There are people that advocate
That's true.
very, very vigorously for cutting cold turkey off of social media.
You should.
Very, smart people.
Well, I cut cold turkey and then I read 5 books because I realized I had that much time.
I remember you told me that.
Because I was wasting so much time on my phone. I would kill all my phones.
It's true.
I would-
After I quit smoking, I'm on my phone a lot less.
Really?
Yeah.
Why? Because you light up a cigarette. And you're on
Because
your
that's what I
phone?
would do. I'd light a cigarette, I'd go in the garage, and I'd scroll through Facebook. Do you know how much useless shit I bought off of Facebook?
I work with a woman who's like
No, I
61.
don't.
I bought so much stuff off of like Facebook advertisements that pop up on my
Honey.
feed. I mean,
Honey.
like, my spandex.
There's a website called This Is
But-
Why I'm Poor.
I'm not poor. I mean, I'm not rich, but I'm not poor. I pay my bills.
Yes, she does.
And there's some people who can't even
So
do
why
that.
am I so nervous to do it?
Because you're afraid. That's just
Well,
it. You don't have a legitimate reason to be afraid, but you
I
just
don't
are.
know if afraid is pushing it. I think I'm just reluctant because I view it as
Because you have
as
a fear of
means-
missing out.
Yeah, well, no, I don't even know if it's that. I mean, I use social media for a few things, right? Contacting people that, getting in touch with people that I know, or I use it as a way to watch content that I find particularly appealing.
Yeah, but
Like
can't
I'm-
you just use YouTube for that? Because they repost everything on YouTube.
Sure, yeah, sure. I mean, like, particularly when it comes to, like, chess videos, my main source of chess videos is Facebook.
Yeah, but they're on YouTube too.
They are, but I have to go actively search for it.
No, you don't. You just
What
type
do you
in
mean I don't?
chess.com and they repost videos all the time.
On YouTube?
Chess.com.
Oh, I know
has a
that.
YouTube
Like, some
account.
of my favorite content creators are on YouTube, like Gotham Chess.
And what, you watch them through Facebook? even
John
though they're on
Bartholomew,
YouTube?
who, by the way, I met his cousin at a bar in Newtown for weird. They look exactly alike, but
In
it's
Newtown.
yeah. I was at this bar in Newtown,
Uh-huh.
and I struck up a conversation with this kid that was there on a regular basis, and we started talking about chess. And he's like, "Oh, my cousin is John Bartholomew," and John Bartholomew is this international master. He puts out content on Chessable and on YouTube. He's fantastic. And I'm like, I'm thinking to myself initially, like, this guy's full of shit, right?
Yeah.
He pulled up a picture of his cousin, and it's fucking John Bartholomew. I took his
Wow.
course on Endgames, and it was phenomenal. It was really good. So, Yeah, you just never know who you're gonna meet. But yeah, it's for that reason. But you're right. I mean, I could.
YouTube also has an algorithm to recommend you videos. So once you start watching on YouTube,
Yeah.
it'll show you what you want to watch.
But
But
how
the
is
same
that
thing is true for
different?
Facebook.
Yeah, how is that different from Facebook?
Usually videos are longer form. So Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, they all focus on, at least if you're just talking about TikTok standard, videos under 3 minutes. 3 minutes can actually be a long time for those kind of people.
Especially if you watch
Yeah,
video
people who
after
scroll
video
on
after video.
people who scroll on TikTok might retain or might be there for 15 seconds at most, and then they go on to something else.
So
I don't
attention
go on,
span.
I don't go on TikTok.
I don't
don't
use
have
TikTok.
TikTok, but I do have Facebook and I do have Instagram.
I never use my
So if-
Instagram. I never
But
use
yeah,
If
I
I
never
was told the
post
average
anything.
viewer retention on TikTok
TikTok was 3 seconds, I'd believe it. But I know from my own analytics on YouTube that viewer retention can be as much as 2 hours.
on YouTube.
Yeah, that's such a waste of time.
You think about it, right? I mean, if you make your bed.
2 hours a day?
Yeah, I mean, if you tally how much time you spent every single day on average on social media, and then you make that into a year, and then you make that into a decade.
That's a lot of time.
But
It ends
people
up being
also
a
break
sim-
things up. So there's one YouTuber named Tick History. That's his channel. He's right now embarking on the longest documentary ever on Stalingrad, and he's maybe a quarter of the way through, and he's already produced 80 hours of content
Just on Stalingrad.
just on Stalingrad. So he had a video. I think it was on the Battle of El Alamein. It was 35 hours long.
What?
About half the viewers who watched it watched the entire thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
35
You're gonna think I'm crazy,
hours.
but you know how Ken Burns?
Yeah.
I find his documentaries amazing.
I like
Most
Werner
people find
Herzog's.
a lot of people that I talk to think that it's just like it's snooze material. I don't.
Yeah.
I think it's incredible, the content. Well, he doesn't put anything on traditional social media, but he does a lot with like, television. I remember watching Ken Burns when I was in high school, and incredible, man. Incredible if you can just sit and bear it and allow your imagination to run wild. You can learn so much from some people.
Right, but also think about the format people usually engage with YouTube. It's probably through a desktop or a games console more than their phone.
Or through an iPad.
Right, so the setting in which you watch it is differently. If you're going to be if you're going to sit down to watch an iPad, you're probably on a bus at the airport.
Yeah.
You're somewhere where you wouldn't be doing anything, but people distract themselves at work with TikTok. I was talking to I went to visit my uncle last week, and he has 2 sons that are like 8 and 11 years old. And he was complaining to me about how they walk around like while they brush their teeth, just like
Yeah.
mesmerized by the phone.
I see kids doing that
Yeah.
these days.
So-
All the time.
I think the influence of the type of social media that they're engaging with, which is TikTok, Instagram, infect into people's busy hours, infect into people's productive hours, while YouTube tends not to.
And they start getting it early.
They get on
I
it really
can't-
early.
I can't tell you how many patients that have been pediatrics that I've taken to the hospital where we secure them in the stretcher and mom pulls out an iPad and sticks it in front of them.
Well, what I'm worried about right now is the VR experience with kids. So my uncle bought VR headsets for both his boys.
What, the
virtual-
Oculus?
Oculus
Yeah,
headphones.
right.
Yeah, which is
Headsets.
now a Meta product, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
Meta bought Oculus.
That's right.
So he wanted me to play this game with him because they have 2 headsets. So I have one, he has one. And he's like, oh, you got to play this game called Gorilla Time or something like that. And he loads me into this multiplayer lobby, and I instantly leave because all I hear are people under the age of 13 playing it. I'm afraid of how many adults are interacting with very young children on VR.
Isn't that also...
Oh, very
okay,
true.
so getting off the VR thing real quickly. What would you say is the overall age range for people that are doing like Call of Duty and...
Oh, I'd
Modern
be
war-
real concerned about the average age of exposure to porn. So as early as 2015, the average age for exposure to porn was 11 years old.
11
Yeah,
through.
Because it's so easy
through the
to
internet.
access.
Because a lot of kids have unrestricted access to the internet.
Yeah.
It's really hard to really patrol what websites your kids are going to. So I think for young kids, in an academic setting strictly that has, a monitored website feed like public schools usually have is fine, but I don't think they should be using it at home. Because who knows what they're doing at home.
Or if they do, parents should be incredibly...
like sitting there watching them do it.
Yeah.
Well, or they should be active
Right.
on ways to limit, content that actually makes
Is
it
there
to their
actually a
kids'
way that you
eyes.
can do that?
Sure.
Well,
there are plenty of ways
you could
to do
block
it.
websites, and the first thing you should do is block the social media sites because they all have a disclaimer saying you should be over the age of 13. There's a lot of kids under the age of 13 who are on those sites, and that includes YouTube.
Yeah.
I mean, but those things weren't really relevant to us when we were kids.
Not
We
really.
didn't. I don't think
No.
I mean,
Well,
the first
Instagram didn't
iPhone.
exist when you were like
No.
13.
The first
Growing up,
iPhone
yeah.
came out when I was in high school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, and I don't think even access to the internet through your phone through LTE or 3G or 4G wasn't becoming a thing until I was in college.
Yeah.
So now
With
that
unlimited data.
yeah, so now that
Right.
kids have unfettered access to it,
And everybody has an iPhone
It's
or an
foreign.
Android.
It's
And everyone
foreign to
pays
me.
for unlimited data now because why wouldn't you?
right? They tried to nix that for a little while because it was costly, especially for the.
But not anymore. The
but not
infrastructure's
anymore.
caught up.
Now it's now
Yeah.
it's.
I will
Now it's
say,
super
when you
easy.
see 5G on your phone, like 70% of the time it's a lie. It's not actually 5G, it's just 4G.
It's
and,
not
and it's
5G.
labeled as 5G. So it's to just convince you that they have a nationwide network.
Well,
of
we don't
5G.
have the infrastructure for 5G.
No.
It would require a
But
massive.
when I'm in
overhaul
Main
of
Street,
our-
Ridgefield, it says 5G, but I know for sure I don't have 5G speeds. There's no way I have 5G speeds.
There are a few countries that are working incredibly hard right now to try to update their infrastructure to be able to handle 5G.
Well, from what I understand, 5G is an
Everywhere.
incredibly localized thing.
right.
Like if you wanted 5G throughout Main Street, Ridgefield, it would have to be in every lamppost. In a
Why is that?
Because it's an extremely shortwave band that doesn't penetrate objects very well, like 4G and 3G does.
But in terms of data transfer, it's.
But it's
how-
so much faster. It's
Than
like
4G.
it's like 5 times faster than 4G. Yeah,
Right. You could download.
So then why am I paying extra for that?
because you're dumb enough to pay extra
I
for
know.
it. But so are my
Good
parents.
thing you were here today because if Connor
Seriously.
hadn't told you that, like,
I wouldn't have known.
I was aware that it's not true 5G.
Yeah,
Because every now and then it pops up on my phone, but I also know that the download speeds haven't changed.
yeah. It feels the
So-
same to me as 4G did
Right.
5 years ago.
Right. Now, in theory, with 5G, you're able to download a movie really quickly.
Yeah,
Right now, as it is right now, I do fine on 4G.
Right.
I thought 4G was fine 5 years ago.
So did
I thought
I.
there was no need to surpass
Actually, I
it.
don't have a problem with it.
Yeah.
If I'm out in public and need to get onto email or watch something really quickly, I can do it. It just takes a little time to download. So the only difference now is because of how much data transfer you can do with 5G is that you can upload and download things substantially quicker than 4G with 5G. But the infrastructure
I don't
change would be
download
super
anything.
expensive.
Yeah. So they're doing it slowly. It's not that it won't catch up. It's just it's not here right now.
Right, and it's only after what, like 11 or 12 that are even capable of handling 5G.
Yeah.
So your phone limits you. If you have an older model, you don't have the capacity to do 5G.
Well, that's why I got a 13 T-Mobile, because we were on Sprint originally, and
Yeah.
T-Mobile bought Sprint. I had a Sprint phone, and it wasn't really compatible with the T-Mobile network, so they gave me a free upgrade to a 13. 13 Pro.
I've been.
Oh, I know,
I've
I
been.
did the
who
iPhone.
were you with?
I don't know. Verizon.
I've been with AT&T forever.
I was with Sprint for all my life, and I've never actually lost service. Ever.
That
From Hawaii to Connecticut, never had a problem
Wow.
with
in
service.
Connecticut,
Yeah.
in this
I've never
area,
lost
Never.
service
this is a
here.
dead zone.
Here's a dead zone for
Ridgefield
you.
and Wilton are
Yeah.
dead zones. As soon as I cross from Norwalk or Ridgefield into Wilton, I'm losing you constantly. I'm
Yeah.
losing my parents constantly, my brother, my friends.
Yeah,
they
the only time
drop
we get to talk is if we
instantaneously.
FaceTime.
Right, but I got to be in it.
Yeah.
The other thing is frustrating for me is text. Like I want to shoot you a text or shoot my brother
Well,
or
it'd
Amanda
probably
a
be
text
sending
message.
through iMessage, which is through data. You should do it through
Yeah,
the
I
SMS
always-
system.
But you have an iPhone, right?
Yeah, I've got
Yeah.
a 10.
You got to
So-
force it to send it through SMS and not iMessage. Because if you have data, it will send it through iMessage.
What's the difference? It shows up blue versus green.
iMessage is through data, and it gives you all of the fun features that Apple has, like iMessage games and stickers and their emojis. SMS is just the original texting
Text.
system.
Right. But most of your text messages come blue. I'm
No, they
pretty
should
sure.
come green. They come blue?
Yeah,
Oh, I didn't know that.
I think so.
Wait, let me see.
Yeah, see? Oh, well, what I send you is mostly blue.
Well, his
Why
will
are
all
mine?
be
Oh, so
gray
there's
unless it
one
says sent as text.
green.
Yeah. Yeah, see, yeah, it says
Yeah,
sent-
every
sent
once
as
in a
That's
while.
probably because I
I'll
had no
get one.
service.
Yeah.
Were you tired, Connor?
No.
I'm a little drunk.
No, you're not.
Yeah, shot and a beer, done.
Well, you also weigh like 109 pounds soaking wet.
127.
203. On my way to 210.
230.
Connor, I wish I could be at that weight.
No, you don't.
No, I do.
You want to feel my body? You'll see why you don't want to be this
He's
weight.
trying to
Only if you
gain
give me
weight.
some
I'm
Rocky
trying to
Mountain
lose weight.
oysters.
Well, I lost like 10 pounds over the last few months, so I'm proud of
for
myself for doing
you.
that. I got home from
Right.
college at 240, and then I rode my bicycle to work all summer.
Uh-huh.
And then once I got off my bicycle, then I lost 10 pounds. I don't know how that works, but
Weight loss is,
Yeah.
I don't think, weight
it's a
loss.
huge challenge.
It is.
I don't know
think
how to
I've
do it.
gained 10 pounds since I broke my finger and I couldn't.
So I've
go
been
to the
actively
gym.
trying to put weight on.
I know.
You can go to the gym and lift weights.
Well, I do.
Yeah.
5 days a week I've been in the gym ever since September. Actually, I started lifting again really, vigorously in the end of August. And since then, I started out at about 191. I'm up 10 pounds. And partly what's helped me get to that weight so quickly is TRT. But
you also
diet,
had like a gut problem.
right? But
You
the issue with people that want to gain healthy weight is that they, particularly when it comes to lifting and bodybuilding, is diet is such an important component of it. You have to be eating regularly in addition to lifting heavy.
Yeah, eat
And you
steak
have
and
to be-
eggs for breakfast.
Right, you have to be eating right.
Yeah.
And a lot of people will lift and they'll be, shoveling food, but they're like, I'm not gaining weight, or I'm gaining fat, or something like that. Well, it's because you're probably not eating right. Diet is so critical when it comes to weightlifting. So I've been fortunate in that area because even though my diet isn't, insanely strict right now, the benefit of supplemental testosterone is that you have increased weight loss and muscle synthesis without having necessarily to change anything with your diet, which is why I'm such a huge proponent of testosterone and TRT for patients. You're how old, Connor?
I'm 20. I'll be 23 this year.
Yeah, so I mean,
I don't need it. I hope I don't need
well,
it.
I mean, you never know until you get your labs. I mean, when I first started doing TRT, my blood plasma level of testosterone, bound testosterone, was 400, which is low.
Mm-hmm.
I stopped during COVID for obvious reasons. And
So what's the norm if 400 is low?
so it's age dependent. I don't know if there are definitive studies, but the average ranges for men should be anywhere between 500 and 1500. It's a wide range, but remember, being on testosterone is about how you feel. So low testosterone levels, obviously, you can have a lot of issues with depression, lethargy, ED, fat accumulation, general malaise. So supplementing, and there's a lot of reasons why you might be low. One of the major ones is environmental, but there are also dietary things that lead to low testosterone. So, as you start to round into your late 20s, early 30s, you're starting to notice that testosterone levels, especially in men, are declining rapidly. And so I went back in August, in the beginning of August, and had my labs redrawn and found out that my total test was 200.
Wow.
It was 200. It was insanely low. And so my doctor was like, we're going on to BioT right now. I'll put the pellets in you right now. And it's completely changed my life. Completely changed my life. So I'm a big proponent of it. I advocate for it. You don't have to do it, but I think that it's interesting to see where your test levels are at. And conversely,
Yeah.
if you're a girl, to see where as you get older, where your estrogen and testosterone levels are at too, because estrogen and testosterone are important for women as well. So, I'm trying to get my brother to do it. He's
Well, some
he's
men just don't
hesitant.
want to know.
Well, because the big thing that people are concerned about is infertility.
Yeah.
But remember, with TRT, is you're using testosterone in a relatively safe range, just normalizing.
Right, just normalizing. Yeah.
The problem is that the world of bodybuilding is kind of ruined it. Because these bodybuilders are going to total T's of around 3,000 to 5,000, and that's just an insane. That's an insane range for testosterone. But if you end up going to the 1,000 to 1,500 range,
Which is where you should be.
which is where you should be, you have everything to gain from it, and the relative risks are incredibly low, incredibly low. So I don't think it's something that I'm ever going to go off of. I've been trying to convince certain people in my life to let me go on to DECA. And to go on to GH, you know.
You keep trying. It ain't gonna
HGH.
happen. But
All right, well,
all right. Oh,
we'll talk about this tomorrow.
look, I'm drunk and I'm still saying
I'm an
no.
independent woman. I'll do what I want.
Oh, really?
Connor, can I get you on the TRT?
No,
Why?
because I feel like I'm comfortable with myself.
You know what?
I've done
That's
And
fair.
that's
I've
important.
done
That's fair.
I've done
Yeah.
powerlifting in the gym, and I've seen some pretty incredible results out of myself. Like I was squatting more than twice my body weight at one point.
That's
Which is a huge
amazing.
accomplishment.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So I think I have
Yeah.
the strength and the testosterone to do what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my goal in life right now is just to get rid of excess fat. And I think that'll... I had elevated liver function at one point.
Mm-hmm.
Why were, your LFTs were high?
Yeah, and one of the things that can cause it is a fatty liver. So I made a goal of mine to lose the excess fat. I've so far lost 10 pounds, and I have probably another 20 to go.
That's amazing.
Yeah, but you're 6'2".
I am 6'2". I probably should be around 190 to 210, and I'm
Yeah.
230 right now. So I
So you're
have...
not that far off.
Right, but losing weight
Is
is
hard.
hard.
No, I get it. I know.
So, look, I have
It'd be
pressures
a lot
on...
easier for you on testosterone. Just
Don't
saying.
listen to
Well,
him.
I'm not looking for shortcuts. I'm looking to do it
It's not
naturally.
a shortcut. You're putting something natural that's, you know, back in your body.
But if
Your
it was-
dad is a tall guy too. He's
He's
your dad.
6'4".
Your dad is 6'4". So
He's probably 6'3" now.
my father used to be 5'10".
Yeah.
Now he's lost 2 inches from compressed discs and shit like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't ever want to get that short.
I don't think you ever will.
So just keep stretching in the morning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Well, at
that's
the end
a
of the
big
day, I'm
part of
comfortable with
it.
myself, and that's really what's important.
And
Because there's a
that's
lot of
what's
people who
important.
aren't comfortable with themselves, no matter what they do.
No, it's true.
I've been feeling like
Me?
that lately.
Yeah.
You?
Yeah. I'm like, okay, I'm skinny, but I'm like fat skinny. Have you ever
What?
heard that term?
That's such a
like
paradox.
Fat skinny? Yeah, because you're thin, but you're not like fit.
So I've heard that before for
You
guys.
know, like you're fat
Yeah, I had
skinny.
I had a roommate in
That's how
college.
I
He ended
feel.
up joining the army. He dropped out and joined the army. So I don't know what his body looks like now, but I remember seeing him in college, and yeah, he's a tall, lanky guy, but his
Yeah.
body sagged because it was
Right.
fat. It's not like it was just lean muscle.
Yeah.
It was very little muscle and sagging fat.
And I think that the
But I'm sure
changes-
joining the army has turned him around a little bit.
But the changes that you can make that end up getting you to where you want to get to are sometimes they can be really small. Just diet modification and a few days a week in the gym doing either cardio or you know, moderate weightlifting. You can affect real changes. The problem is, especially with the New Year's, I hate the New Year's time because I'm a regular gym goer. I have been for.
Have you seen the Orange Theory gym on the Ethan Allen Highway?
I know what Orange Theory
They're
is.
packed in the morning, and I think it's people getting
So-
dropped off to go to the gym.
I've been a gym guy
Yeah.
for the last 5-6 years. I love going to the gym, and I hate New Year's time. Everybody
January,
signs up for
February.
it, and I'm all for that, but nobody sticks to it.
No. But it's hard,
So,
though.
well,
It's hard to stick to it.
Consistency is
Key.
consistency is key. Consistency turns into habit,
Yeah.
and the problem is that people go to the gym, and the expectation is that they're going to see changes really quickly. That's not the way that losing weight or bodybuilding works.
No, if you can follow
You know-
through with your routine, it doesn't
Right.
have to be every day, but what your routine is over the course of a month for like 90 days. If you could follow through for 90
Yeah.
days, you've solidified that in your life.
But it's hard because I started going to the gym again probably in September, right? And now I haven't been to the gym in a week.
And
Week and a half.
I haven't been in 3
My
days.
diet has changed.
It's killing me.
You know, it's very easy to fall out of that routine,
Mhm.
especially when you're getting out of work so late and then you're like, fuck, now I got to go to the gym.
Well, that's probably what helped me with riding my
And
bike
then-
to work. My exercise was actually how I got to work.
Right. It's hard. It's hard. And if you've got like young
I'm
kids
still-
at home
yeah.
where you need to run home and make dinner and get your kids all situated before you then go to
Right.
the gym, it becomes a challenge.
But I'm finally
It
back in the
becomes
place,
a challenge.
though. I don't know about
Yeah.
you, but I'm finally back in the place after about a solid 5 months of lifting
Mm-hmm.
5-6 days a week. Where if I miss 2 or 3 days in a row, I'm irked.
Me too.
Like
I
I'm
do
really
feel
like
that
right
way.
now I'm 2 or 3 days into not having a good lift session, and I'm irked right
yeah.
now.
Yeah.
I just have this
No, I feel the
compulsion to
same
get
way.
back into the gym. You have a different excuse. You had surgery on your hand.
I know, but
So,
still,
you know.
it's something so simple that can knock you off of your.
Routine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something so simple.
I said this to you on the first day that we met. Like, if you got into the gym hard for a year, you'd be a fucking walking vending machine.
Well, I did. I was in, well, not for a year straight, but I was in and out of the gym for 4 years. And in high school, I went crazy in the gym too. Like in the off season from wrestling, I would.
Oh, you wrestled?
I would work out. No, I would go run a 5K and then work out in the gym for an hour. And for most people, they wouldn't be willing to do that. But it didn't really. I guess at the time, I didn't think it got me anywhere physically where I wanted to. But looking at photos of myself from 2018, 2017, I probably was where I wanted to be, and I didn't realize it. But I gained a lot of weight in college because the food that was available to me. I was making a lot of bad.
That's also true for me.
I was making a lot of bad choices. Now that I'm home, yeah, if I could find the time to go to the gym, if I can find the ability to get to the gym, that's more important because I don't own a car.
You don't own a car?
No.
Because you don't want one?
No, I can't afford to get one.
Okay.
Cars are overrated, especially Mustangs.
But you can get some. Yeah.
It's the insurance that kills me.
I know, it's the insurance, right?
Yeah.
Because you're 23.
Yeah,
So,
so,
yeah,
it's gonna-
insurance
they're
is going
gonna-
to be crazy.
Yeah, they were quoting, Amica was quoting me $500 a month.
Oh my
For
God.
basic?
Yeah, for the cheapest liability insurance.
What about if you put it on your parents' insurance?
Then I'd have to register the car in their name, and I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
I want the car to be mine.
Yeah.
So I have to get my own insurance, which I'm fine with doing in principle,
Mm-hmm.
but financially I can't afford it.
Yeah.
And
They make everything unaffordable.
Right, and then you consider the student loans that I have. So I still got my tuition like half off, which most
Yeah.
people don't get that opportunity.
Right.
And I still probably owe almost $200,000.
What was the annual?
Oh
my
You went to
God,
Kings, right?
Yeah,
What was the annual on Kings?
48, and I got it about half off through
Yeah,
merit
that's
scholarship.
about what mine was going to Fairfield.
Wow.
But I only went to Fairfield for 2.5 years.
Well, I went through the whole 4 years.
See, I took what
At
I
48
did. Yeah.
or 24 a
It
year.
was like 27.
Still, $30,000 a year.
Yeah, and
Fairfield
so
now
I
is mid-
so I've got
Ridiculous.
a whole bunch of private loans and public loans through the federal government. So I haven't even started paying them all off yet. But from what I have started paying, I feel stretched thin on my minimum wage job.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that.
College is so unaffordable. I
Well, it
told
is,
you this
especially
a couple
private
times. Like, I don't
universities.
want to go back to school because I don't want to pay that bill.
Unless you have an employer that's willing to foot the bill
Right.
for you.
Exactly. You
But-
have to go back.
Or a parent. And I think people who
Uh-huh.
would have had to take loans
But
should
I'm
just not go.
But I'm already
Yeah.
looking. I mean, so I walked out of Fairfield with about $100,000 in debt. Because I
Mhm.
remember I only did 2
Yeah.
years there. I'm looking to incur another 300
I know.
soon.
I know.
All right, but you also have a different idea of your finances now than you did back then.
Well,
at least I'd assume.
So there's a couple different options for me. Given the fact that I end up getting good MCAT scores and all that stuff, if one of the schools that I really am interested in applying to is this military school in Virginia, where you choose a branch of service for. You end up going for 4 or 5 years, but the medical school is
Well,
paid
you
for.
want to serve the man?
I know, but then you're going to have to serve. That's
It's
a
a
lot
free.
of time.
It's a free medical school
I
education.
know, but it's not free. It's 4 years of your life
Yeah.
after.
Well, it's actually
You know what
8
I mean?
years of your
Oh,
life.
was it 8 years?
Well,
I thought it was 4.
well, you have your education. That's your
Right,
life.
4 years.
So 4 years
Right.
and 4 years. That's 8 years of your life.
Okay,
True.
so but again, so it's either that or I'm looking at a $300,000 bill that I have to be concerned about.
I know.
I mean, to me, that makes a lot of sense. I'd rather serve in the military for a period of time, and you get your choice of branch.
Yeah.
You choose Coast Guard, Navy, Army.
All right, but you got to ask yourself: do you want to get in at a time when World War III's been going on for a year?
As a physician,
Yeah.
sure, I'll do it. I have a very specific thing that I want to do with my life, and it doesn't make a difference.
Well, unfortunately, the Army tells you where to go. They do aptitude
Yeah.
tests that
I'm
no
aware-
matter what you feel like you want to do, if the aptitude test says you're not qualified to do it, they'll send you somewhere else.
I'd imagine, though, that a lot of people that go to medical school are at least intellectually capable of doing more than just firing mortars. There's nothing wrong with that, by the way. I'm
Yeah,
not saying there's
right.
anything wrong with being in the infantry. It's just You know, having a degree, even a bachelor's degree, makes a big difference on where you can go in the military.
Yeah, I'm sure my communications degree would be really important, but
I'm
I
sure
don't want to.
it would.
I don't want to aid in that system because I don't have any real respect for
You
it.
don't feel like you have an obligation to.
I have no obligation to other people. I'm a private individual in a nation of individuals. So, what reason do I have to?
Where do you fall?
Protect everyone
Where do you
else.
fall on the spectrum of sovereign citizenship?
I don't understand it.
Neither do I.
But what I do understand is
Neither do
that
I.
there is a Bill of Rights,
Mhm.
and I can exercise those rights. And I see on the local political stage that the government doesn't like to respect it. So up in Richfield, these two guys went in to go record a video inside the building, and one of the people in the financial office physically assaulted them inside the building for having cameras out. And
Is
that's
it
a
a pri-
First Amendment right.
Is it a private institution?
No, it was the City Hall of Richfield.
Oh, then they have no reason to stop.
Right. They have no ability to stop them.
Right.
Not reason, ability. But local governments like to call the police and get people arrested for exercising their First Amendment right.
Which, again, is something that I'm all.
But-
Yeah.
Fighting in the military doesn't prevent that from happening.
So that's another big thing, that it's another hot topic issue for me. It's that when we constantly saying things like "thank you for,"
Defending our
defending
rights.
these
Well,
things.
I see it as they're not
Um,
defending my rights, they're defending the authority of the government.
Which is true.
Same
but
thing with police officers.
That same authority allows us to have those rights in the first place.
Well, do you know the principle that defines a state's existence? It's a monopoly on violence.
So that's a sociological principle.
Yeah.
Right. A part of the definition of a government is the ability to enforce power.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Through means of military exercise.
Well, that was a fast 28 minutes.
God damn, guys. What do you like? I don't even remember that we're on video.
I know, me
I'm
either.
just like enjoying the conversation.
I know.
Well, that's the environment I like to create.
Yeah. So, yeah. So part of the definition of, at least sociologically, of what a government is a centralized body that's capable of using force, right? And we certainly meet that criteria. There are other places in the world that don't have they don't have the benefit of a Bill of Rights that's protected by the government. So.
My argument is that it's not, and joining the military or the police doesn't actually protect those rights.
An individual has to use their First Amendment right to protect all other rights.
In terms of amendments that are in the Bill of Rights, I think that the freedom of press, the freedom of speech,
And religion. Religion is a part of the First Amendment.
It is, but I take a very aggressive stance against religion. I understand that it's a protected right in our Constitution. I have no intention of trying to change that anytime soon.
I don't think
Could I?
religious buildings should be
Tax exempt.
Tax exempt.
You're not the first person that I've talked
Because
to that believes
if
this.
there's a separation of church and state, then why do they get an exemption to pay taxes?
Because there's a separation between church and state, and state is what dictates what taxes get paid. It's for the very reason that there's a separation between church and state that they don't have to pay taxes. The problem for me is that when you go seeking tax exemption, you're familiar with the Niebuhr church sect theory.
No.
So all religions start out as a cult. They have to by definition. And they
Yeah.
transition into a church eventually, and then churches transition to sects, which become denominations, which transition back into churches. And so, I forgot completely where I was going with that. Sorry, I said Niebuhr church sect theory, and I completely lost myself. Where were we?
Well, I don't have you were saying you take an aggressive stance against religion. In terms
Right.
of like sociology, I don't have a problem with religion because they can install a lot of morals and good morals in people who don't have any.
Well, religion is a macro institution in the sociological perspective.
So,
Right.
depending on the part of the world you're talking about, here in the United States, Jews, Muslims, and Christians can genuinely live alongside each other in peace.
Right.
I have great friends that are Israeli, and I have great friends that are Muslim.
Yeah, that's called religious pluralism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But in places like Africa, studies show that Christian villages outperform Muslim villages in terms of food production and stability.
Right.
So it depends on the type of society you're in and where you are in the world. But
well, there's two different types of religious states. You have religious ecclesias, which are states that have a good example of religious ecclesias are Iran.
Yeah, that was in the late 70s that they became a religious dictatorship.
Well, it's an ecclesia just basically means that it's one religion in a state. We don't have an ecclesia here in the United States. We're religiously plural, meaning that there are lots of different religions that are protected by law that can coexist within it. So whether you want to make an argument that an ecclesia is more socially stable and more effective than a religiously plural country, I don't really know how I can probably even remotely make an intelligent comment on that. But again, it's not that I don't think that there should be separation. There shouldn't be separation of church and state. I do. I think that the reasons that our founding fathers put that into our Constitution is because they came from a place where religious ideology dominated and persecuted and suppressed people, so they didn't want religion being involved at all. But I think that religion is an outdated form of trying to understand the world that we live in, and science has ultimately completely replaced it. It's irrelevant. Mm-hmm. It's irrelevant. It's irrelevant. There doesn't need to be a supernatural explanation for the way that the world works. The world works just fine under the scientific method.
Well, unfortunately, there's a lot of Christian and Catholic institutions that push science forward, not just like in the astrological field. Like there are Christians who are looking for God in space with telescopes, and inadvertently they discover a lot of planets and solar systems and things like that.
I would say,
but there's also a lot of medical ones too. There's a lot of priests that are involved in the medical field and save lives every day.
Yeah, but I'd argue that the majority of scientific discovery is not something that's been done by the Catholic Church. It seems to me that the Catholic Church is constantly having to catch up with scientific discoveries that are being made.
Because throughout the Middle Ages, they would persecute priests who were making scientific discoveries.
Well, the most notable,
because it would break the framework of what the religion was at the time.
Well, the most notable
now
one
things
is
are
Galileo,
different.
Right?
So like CERN, the particle accelerator in Switzerland and France and whatever, they have priests who are involved in it from the Vatican because they're looking for the God particle. So they're pushing science forward by pushing their own religion forward.
I feel like they have to be there out of necessity, though.
Now, more than it was in the past. But
I didn't know that there were any religious clerics involved in CERN.
Yes.
I mean, I'm sure there are religious people, but people that are directly from the Catholic Church.
Who are in their priest uniform and everything.
I think that's because the Catholic Church is terrified that science is going to make a discovery that pushes our understanding about the world even further, and they have to jump on that and say, well, there's God.
Well, a lot of people I've met who do science-related things, like biologists or physicists and whatnot, they say that their understanding of the world through science may have reinforced their belief in God because of how organized they find things tend to be.
You see, I think that that's problematic because I don't think that there's any. I think there are tons of good explanations for how life. It's one thing to look at the complexity of the world and be overwhelmed and say there must be a creator because it's so complex. It's a completely different thing to make an assertion that there are normal processes that occur at the biological level that can be explained. Like
they can be explained, but
sure.
At the end of the day, how do you explain that order of operations came into even being? A lot of like atheist nihilists will say, well, that's just the chances of human beings coming into existence, of eyes evolving into a functional organism or a functional organ that organisms have. I'm not saying that God directed evolution, but I am saying that God may have created the universe and the rules that it exists within.
That's very different than the monotheistic gods that exist now. That are now. Well, a lot of our founding fathers were deists. They believed that there was a God, but that had no intervention in our lives at all. Right? I mean,
well, that God left. God no longer has influence over
one
the world.
thing. God sets the laws and everything, sets it off, and then what happens.
Yeah.
In which case, why bother worshiping him or her?
Well, because if you're Christian, Catholic, Muslim, and Jewish, you believe that you'll go on to the world next where God does reign over you.
That's such a shitty prospect.
Well, it's to give
To
you an
me-
explanation of what happens after death, because even now we still struggle to explain what happens to your consciousness when your body
Yeah, but the
begins to die.
requirement, though, is that in order to get into heaven, you have to abide by a certain set of rules.
And that rule is that you are born into the world and that you die.
No, the rule is that you behave in accordance with how God
Well,
wants you to behave.
then
and
what's
you
the
get
punishment? Because traditional Catholic belief is that you sit in
So
purgatory for
all of life has to
however
be.
long you have to, and then you still get there. It's like if you're talking about hell, hell is it comes from like a political document that someone wrote.
Right, but even the
1,000
Pope
years ago.
is recently got on whatever and said that there is no such thing as hell.
Well, I know that there's no such thing as hell, but there
So-
are Catholics who falsely believe in hell.
So why not take the extra step and just say there's no such thing as heaven? I mean, think about it like this. The universe is about, so for, as best we can tell, it's about 14 to 15 billion years old. You've been dead for most of that.
Yeah.
You've
Well,
been
no,
dead
you
for-
didn't exist.
You didn't
yet.
exist. You're
Yeah.
just heading back to the prenatal abyss whence you came. And I can't believe I got to use that in a sentence, whence you came. Why is that so scary? Because we have consciousness doesn't mean that, we have to come up with this convoluted system for what happens after we die. To me, when you die, you just go back to that prenatal abyss that you came from. There's nothing to fear. It's not to be scary. I mean, for the better part of 14 and a half billion years, I was fine.
Well,
So
what I think I was trying to get at is the explanation as to why the universe exists. A lot of atheists and nihilists will say it just happened that way for no particular reason. It just is.
why can't things become about by chance?
My problem with it is that seems to me just as viable as saying that JFK's head just did that and that it had no intervention from another human being.
Causality is more complicated than that.
Yeah.
Causality is much more complicated than that. I'm a strong advocate for determinism. Ever since I read David Hume, I've advocated for strong determinism. Now, Dan Dennett, who's a philosopher, I don't think from what I understand about him, he ascribes to pure determinism, particularly with consciousness. But for me, I don't think about consciousness and what we do in the sense that we have full autonomy and free will. I think everything that we do has a causal explanation. Just like Hume's billiard balls on a table, is that when you strike one, it's determined by the laws of physics what happens. Our brains operate the same way. There's no separate system. This sentence that I'm saying right now was 14.7 billion years in the making. It was always going to happen based on the initial conditions of the universe. That one will fuck you up for a little while.
Wow, this podcast was 14 billion years in the making.
No,
man.
dead ass, right?
Yeah.
Was it not?
I guess it
Where do you land on all this?
Yeah, I was going to ask you,
Where do
how
I
often
land
do you
on
think
all
about
this?
this in the ER?
What have you been thinking as we've been having this conversation? Like, what the fuck have these two been smoking for the last hour? It's like,
I think that if a faith or a religion makes you feel better personally in your life, then it's okay to
Hear,
believe
hear.
that.
Why not?
You know,
I think
right?
that that's
if
fair.
if it helps you to strive for better things or help you cope with a bad diagnosis or gets you through a rough time in your life, that's fine. I just don't agree with people trying to press their opinions or beliefs on me.
Right.
Or look down on me for not believing what they believe.
Mormons.
And Muslims, and Jews,
Right.
and Catholics. They all do that.
Right. They all do that. And I don't believe in any of it. I'm a non-religious person.
Is that
Do you
just because
have-
you're from New England?
No.
'Cause I feel like there's a lot of
I grew up very
atheists in New England.
Catholic.
You
I
noticed
grew
that.
up in a...
Yeah. It's because we had the Roman Catholic Church
Yeah.
here pretty dominantly. I was raised Roman Catholic.
You-
And then I said, you know what? Done with that nonsense. And then I
Yeah.
got to college and started hanging out with Jews and Muslims, and I had a good time.
But you don't think that the fact that there are more agnostics and atheists in our part of the country has anything to do with the fact that we have some of the most prestigious universities in New England?
I would not doubt that there's a link between education and atheism, because I believe my draw towards atheism originally when I was younger was because of the public school's influence on me. And I can't really describe how they were doing it other than maybe social pressure, because there were a lot of young Jews or people who were born into Jewish families who decided to be atheists instead and then would conflict with me over my beliefs.
I didn't know I could be anything other than religious until I read a book. And the book completely changed my position on atheism, and it was God Delusion by Richard Dawkins. Because up until that point, I didn't know being an atheist was an option. I knew I had a lot of questions about what God was and whether or not there was an afterlife or not. But it wasn't until I read that book and he put it in such a concise way about, A, the history of religion and why there's a good argument to be made for why the monotheistic and polytheistic explanations of the universe and what's going on now are just not tenable, that I came to be able to make the assertion that I'm an atheist. And I'm fucking proud of that, man. You know?
See, but I didn't read a book that did that for me.
You just
you
had-
know what I mean?
Right.
And I don't even label myself as an atheist. I just say I don't have a religion. Like,
So
I
you're
don't
more
even
agnostic,
give
right?
myself a label. I grew up a Catholic, and I don't go to church anymore, and I don't believe in any of it. And so I just live my life the way I want to live it. That's it.
So you don't have a belief in whether or not there's an afterlife or not?
No, I'll find out when I get there. I'm not concerned about it.
I wish I could be that simple about
And I've
it.
told you that before. Like, you think of things very deeply,
Okay.
where I see things, I just look at it more superficially. When I die, I'll figure it out.
So I feel like you're a much happier person than I
like,
am.
you know, you think so?
I think
I
by
just
that
don't think
standard,
about it.
I think that by that
Yeah.
standard.
When I die, I'll find out whether
Atheism-
I go to, if
atheism
there's a
has a-
heaven,
yeah.
if there's a hell, if
Would you
I
be
just-
comfortable with a Beetlejuice version of Afterlife, where you get like stuck in your
That
house
would
and
be
there's
so much
sandworms going around?
fun.
Get out! That movie terrified me.
Could you imagine being Beetlejuice
Going
and like
going
freaking
waiting
the
online.
shit
That's
out of
what you
people?
imagine heaven is.
Yeah,
that
well,
sounds
I
like
think
more like
purgatory is you're
hell.
just waiting online with a ticket.
Well, that's
Yeah,
what
well,
the, that's what
whatever.
the Jew-
We
don't-
stand in line
don't
for
the
a new
Jews-
iPhone.
Don't the Jews believe that this is purgatory?
No, the Jews believe that this is the real world and that you go on to heaven afterwards. The Catholics believe that you live here and now, which is deist, separate from God, but based on how you lived your life and the sins you've committed, you'll wait in purgatory
Right.
for your turn to get into heaven.
Or go
Not-
into heaven.
You're not in a line where
Yeah.
people have an express pass ahead of you. It's just you have like a set time to wait for
Yeah.
based on the sins you've committed. And the church got in trouble, and
I
the
sinned
reason
a
why
lot.
the reason why the Protestants broke off is the church was selling indulgences, which is you could pay off
Martin
your
Luther.
time in
Right. The
purgatory.
99 Thesis.
Yeah, or 95, something like that.
Yeah.
So the Catholics are the ones that believe in purgatory. I'm not entirely sure what the Muslims believe, but I do know that they believe in glory in death and combat for the religion.
I'm not too familiar with the.
It's called jihad, and I know some things about it, but what I do know is that there's a lot of Muslims who came to the United States and de-radicalized and de-religiousized themselves. Yeah, they might go to the mosque every once in a while, but it's more like what Catholics go to the church for now, which is a community, rather than
And that's what I
religion.
was saying. Like, if it makes you feel good and
Yeah.
it makes you deal with your life in a better way, then that's great. And I like to learn about other people's beliefs and religions. Like, I have Jewish friends and
the
Muslim
Jews.
friends.
I find are much
but-
more religious,
I'm not going to follow any of it.
but that's because that's how they've been doing it, and that's how they've survived for thousands of years.
Yep.
So I'm not going to take that away from them. Christianity and Islam are newer religions compared to Judaism.
And you know what? I don't want to take that away from you guys. I mean, I think that's a perfectly valid argument. Live and let live. I don't know why. I mean, I probably could rip into it more. I just
Well,
think
you'd
that
probably benefit from the culture shock of experiencing something different.
Sure,
So,
I mean, from the
I
cul-
helped my Muslim friend marry an American woman, and to experience a somewhat traditional Middle Eastern wedding was very strange to me because all the women were behind a curtain in the back, and he was sitting with an imam holding his hand. You know,
But that's great, though. Like, I'm all for, like, if I walk into your house, I'm
Yeah.
going to follow your beliefs, your traditions,
Right.
your whatever. I'm not going to,
oh, you want me to take the shoes off at the door? That's fine. I'll do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Could you imagine
Absolutely.
being one of those women behind the curtain?
Hell no.
So don't you think there's a component of, misogyny and oppression that goes
Not-
with that?
In that building, not in that mosque at that time, I did not feel it.
you
They
think it-
genuinely loved each other, so she was willing to do the procedure that his religion
Right.
had prescribed
Do you
should
think
be
women
done.
given a choice would choose that?
I'm led
they
to
might.
believe by how women act on the internet that they choose Islam, but I'm not really
Or they're
sure.
just saying that because they don't want their husbands to beat them.
They light beatings are legal in Iraq. That is true.
In a lot of Muslim countries.
Yeah.
See, and this is my thing, and okay, you can chastise me for it. I think religion is venomous. It's anti-intellectual. It spews absolute nonsense about the way that the world is and about
Well,
what customs you
This
have
is
to
why you
follow.
should probably look into the Gnostics, which were like the original, I guess, like splinter cells of Christianity, where they just went out into the wilderness and just talked about God and religion, and that's
Right.
all it was. They weren't trying to organize a ritual or anything. They just got together in groups of like 5 to 20 people and just had a chat about it, and then went home and did what they had to do.
That sounds like a religion at its beginning, right there.
Well, that's how it was until they were shut down by the Romans and the later Muslims.
And I mean, the other thing too is you can't sit. I mean, I don't know how any reasonable person could sit here and tell me that religious institutions like Scientology are a force for good in the world.
They're not.
Okay,
But I haven't been talking about Scientology, unfortunately,
that's a
because
religion.
I'm quite
according
aware.
to them, that's a religion.
According to them, they're a religion,
Right.
but from an outsider, I look at them and see some sort of corporate thievery, and I don't like it.
Yeah, that's the other thing about the Catholic Church is they're
Well,
mass-
the
they're
Roman
massively
Catholic Church,
wealthy.
everything goes up
But-
to the top and then comes back down. At least in Judaism, the money that gets donated to the shul or the temple stays within that shul or
Sure.
temple. It doesn't go anywhere higher than that. So if you see a particularly nice temple, it's just that the people within that community are particularly generous towards the temple.
yeah.
But in Roman Catholicism, everything that the diocese collects, which is all the various churches in a community, goes up to the diocese, and then the diocese up to the regional
Right.
authority of the country, and then from there to the Vatican. And then it
Seems
goes
like a
back
very-
down.
And that's why I don't practice my
So it's a
religion
pyramid
anymore.
scheme where the money goes up and then redistributed back down, and not as much as they collected goes back down.
No, the Vatican and the bank that's in Vatican is
And they're also
exceedingly wealthy.
susceptible to political influence. Like one of the photos that always shocks me is the photo of our current Pope receiving a golden and jewel-encrusted hammer and sickle from Xi Jinping. Like, you're just going to accept a communist gift like that? But they also do good things. So, like the Falklands crisis that happened where Argentina attacked the Anglicans, the UK.
Britain got involved in that during it was
Well, no,
Theresa.
Argentina attacked the UK. The Falkland Islands are owned by the UK. So the reason
Right.
why Argentina attacked them is the Pope said, "No, Argentina, you can't attack Chile. I don't want one load of good Catholics attacking another load of good Catholics." So the Argentinians said, "Well, the people of the UK aren't Catholic, so we'll go and do that." So at least
this happened during Thatcher, didn't it?
yeah, this is like the 80s. So at least at least the Pope was able to intervene, and instead of hundreds of thousands of people dying, just a few thousand died. I'll accept wins like that. At least it was two militaries duking it out, and not two societies.
Was it Thatcher?
Yeah, Thatcher.
It was Thatcher.
So,
yeah.
one of the big controversies about the Falklands crisis is that Chile actually was involved in the war. They were giving a bunch of military access and Air Force access to the UK to do recon missions over Argentina. And when Pinochet, the leader of Chile, got arrested in the UK for his crimes against humanity, he was probably a trafficker, a weapons trafficker. Thatcher said, well, no, you can't arrest this man. You need to let him go because he's been a great friend to Britain. And no one knew what she meant by that because at the time, all the documents related to the Falklands crisis were still under lock and key. It wasn't until another 15 years after that that people found out why she said what she said.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Yeah, that was a whole debacle. Especially for the government of the UK, because it's still the Falkland Islands are still part of the United Kingdom. Yeah, yeah. But,
They have like 40 soldiers who hang out down there and train.
That's right. I think there was something going on regarding Argentinian soldiers landing on the islands or not permitting UK individuals to come to the island in the first place, which got this whole thing.
Well, not many people live there in the first place. Like
No, it's
a
very
few
remote,
hundred
yeah.
households, and most of them are subsistence. Well, they subsistence farm for the community, and there's no higher education. There's like an elementary school for kids up to like, I don't know, maybe 10 years old, and they send them to the UK to
Sounds
go
like
to
the place I want to be.
private school.
Me too. On an island.
I don't think that.
Well,
I
it's
would
not that
mind.
pleasant. It's constantly windy down there.
Oh, is it? No, I want to
At
be on
all
a Caribbean
hours of the
island.
day, it's ridiculously windy.
Where it's always warm. And
I
never
imagine
cold.
you-
Try Hawaii because there's no bugs. Well, there are bugs. There's just no flying bugs.
I know.
Because there's a light breeze at all times
I
of the
need to be
day.
in Hawaii.
So what? It blows the.
It blows all the mosquitoes and whatnot away. So unless you're in the jungle, which there is jungle in the Hawaiian Islands, unless you're out there, you're not going to be bothered by the bugs at all.
And they have the best coffee.
Oh, I think chock full of nuts has the best coffee, especially when you put it through a Mr. Coffee machine.
Just had a cup this morning.
I know. Was it good?
It was good. I had what's that? Cafe Bucello.
Uh-huh.
What is it?
No.
Cafe.
At my house?
No, I had it for the first time this summer. Cafe Bucello or Cafe Bustelo.
Yeah.
This shit is fucking high octane,
Uh-huh.
man. I was wired for the rest of the day
That
after
you
having
make like
it.
espresso with.
It's very finely ground
Yeah.
coffee.
Right. And you make a little like shot of coffee.
Jesus
It's
Christ.
not
Half
like
a cup of that, I'd
coffee.
be just wired for the
Yeah.
rest of the day.
I know.
You know. Now I'm just perfectly happy with my Dunkin' K-Cups.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't like the K-Cups or Keurig or anything like that because they're so wasteful
For
and
the
expensive.
And also
Uh-huh.
environmentally problematic.
Yeah.
Those K-Cups don't degrade.
Well, because
They
it's
don't?
plastic, but you know what we should be worried about? Those disposable vapes. Because the
Stop it.
amount of lithium that goes into creating the batteries for those
Really?
vapes, every hour, the same amount of lithium that is required to make an electric car is discarded in disposable vapes.
Wow. So I'm going to have to stop buying these things.
Yeah, but the mining process for,
Let's go back.
for standard lithium-ion
It's
batteries that are in
so
cars,
destructive to the environment because they make these giant leach fields. Imagine like cranberry bogs,
Mm-hmm.
except it's like this like sci-fi movie looking
So I
destructive
can't buy these
bog.
disposable vapes anymore. If it's
Well, I don't
that
use
bad.
disposable.
I
I
know.
use a
I do
Juul.
though once in a while. I always have a backup for when I don't have my Juul charged, or when I forget it at home.
That's a big battery.
I know. I didn't know.
There's no way you actually use all the juice in there because I bought those a few times
Yeah.
and it says like 4,000 puffs or something. I guarantee I did not get 4,000 out of it.
This one was 5,000. But the
Wah,
one that
wah.
the other one that I had lasted me like a week and a half.
Some of the disposable vapes actually let you recharge them, so you can
Oh.
vape all the juice that's in them.
Ultimately, these
All right, I'm not
pods,
buying these
'cause these
anymore.
pods are problematic too in
Yeah.
terms of plastic
Well, the Weston Middle School, their septic exploded and flooded down to Weston Center
because
it
the
was full
kids
of
were
Juul pods
dumping Juul pods down
What?
in the
yeah.
middle school. Yeah,
Yeah, the kids
Oh
were dumping
my
Juul
God.
pods. Yeah,
they would jump. They would probably
In
dump
the
like
toilet?
handfuls of pods because they would vape a bunch at home and couldn't get rid of them, so they'd go to school and flush them down the
throw
toilet.
away.
So that's a big
And it's
No,
a,
not
it's
throw 'em
a
away.
middle school?
Yeah, the middle school.
The other issue for me is that
Middle school, they shouldn't be vaping.
Well, they do because
I
it's so easy
know.
to hide.
there
I
were
know.
there were like 6 or 7 places that the state visited in Norwalk that ended up getting whacked for huge fines for selling to minors. They were sending minors in,
Wow.
and there were like 5 or 6 places in Norwalk that got caught for selling vapes to minors, just in Norwalk.
Yeah.
I mean, the vaping issue is very problematic in the country in general.
But it
nicotine
starts with
salts-
the people who sell them.
Yeah, but nicotine salts are highly, highly addictive.
Well, yeah, because the amount of nicotine that's in a Juul pod is equivalent to that of a pack of cigarettes.
I
And I
know.
knew people in high school who would smoke an entire pack of 4 pods in a day.
What?
So imagine
it's like 4 packs of cigarettes a day.
just at school.
So
In
it's
terms of nicotine
better, and it's
content.
better
But-
to smoke a cigarette.
but that's just at school, though.
Yeah, that's a great argument. Yeah.
Just within 8 hours at school, they
At
would do
school?
4 packs of cigarettes worth of nicotine.
Wow.
So you're advocating
That's a
for
lot.
starting cigarette smoking?
No, they shouldn't do either.
So a
honestly.
vape within moderation is safer than a cigarette, but it's so easy to not moderate your use of a vape.
So
It's
I
true.
heard a physician make this argument, and I actually have to agree with it. For the longest time, it was thought that cigarettes were entirely safe. Physicians encouraged their patients to smoke cigarettes. That lasted for about 30 or 40 years before people finally figured out that tobacco causes cancer, high blood pressure, all of these problems. Modern vape systems are literally 15 to 20 years in the making.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know how it's going to be, how it's going to affect health.
Well, I
down the
remember a
line.
lot of the immediate health effects people
As
were
I
having
puff on my
was
Juul.
the
Yep.
influence of vitamin E acetate in the vape liquids, but
Yep.
that was typically from black market vapes.
So the vitamin E acetate issue was what was causing popcorn lung in a lot of patients. And the reason is because vitamin E acetate destroys surfactant in the lungs, which is what's the surfactant in the lungs is what's responsible for maintaining elasticity and lung compliance when you take a breath in. You destroy that, it ends up causing major problems in the lungs. So that's what kids were doing, is they were smoking pods with juices in them that had massive amounts of
Yeah, they were buying
vitamin
like
E acetate
THC
in it.
pods
That's
that
right.
had them.
Yeah.
Because if they're going to get nicotine, they do just buy legitimate nicotine salts.
Like we do.
Yeah.
Like we do.
But
This
when
is
it-
something that I got to kick. I got to kick it ASAP. We have to swap?
Yeah, I got to start the recording again. That was another 28 minutes.
Well,
I mean, I did
was
2
my best.
hours.
I know. I can't believe it.
I know.
I fell asleep when I got home.
Oh, I should replace this battery.
Oh no, it's okay. I set my alarm for 5:15, but you know, you're always like 7:30, 7:45
Show up at
kind of
8:30.
thing. Yeah. So I was expecting this to start like 7:30.
You did great, by the way.
With what?
But assuming that it'd be a later thing.
I know,
You did
that's
really,
what I
really good
assumed.
at that.
So when
Yeah.
I woke up at 5:15 and I saw your text, I was like, oh,
I told you you can get here whenever you want to.
I know.
You do what you want to do.
I know.
Do you?
I always do.
Yeah. No, you don't.
No.
I always do you.
Thank you. So true.
So I envision this being a lot of fun, especially for multiple medical people.
Yeah.
Because Connor is a medical person. He's a vet tech.
Yeah.
You know.
Just not educated.
Well, you're not educated. You sound very educated.
Well,
Yes.
not educated in the medical field. I did get a bachelor's degree, just not for anything medical.
Yeah, but you can
Well,
hang.
you're working medical, right? You're working at.
Yeah, I work veterinary.
Yeah. So that's. I mean, experiences.
That's medical. And it's worth listening
Yeah,
to. I think what
uh-huh.
vets do and vet techs do is incredibly
Yeah.
important.
Well, I honestly, I think the most I learned from my job is the emotional aspect of it.
Mhm.
Because, yeah, once in a while you're going to get someone in the ER you may lose, or someone who's being taken care of in the hospital may die. And you'll see the family be emotional about it. But in the vet hospital, it's high volume.
Of death.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. And, well, sometimes it's traumatic for me because I'm not as, I've only been doing it for like less than a year.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all still like new experiences.
Mm-hmm.
But the guy who got me in there, my friend Mike, he's been doing it for 10 years. So his emotional experience with it is a little different. But I'll have instances where, someone will bring their cat in and we go to take its temperature and that freaks it out and then it dies in my arms.
That's
That-
happened?
Yeah, that happened last week.
Just by taking a temperature?
taken?
Well, it was probably suffering from a lot of neglect.
That's a
So
shitty way to go.
It was a 7-year-old cat, so the age wouldn't throw you off, but it was really emaciated, probably because it was in a very
Aw.
stressful environment at
Yeah.
home and it wasn't really digesting anything properly.
Well, there was a cat that an ex and my had rescued.
Hmm.
Cat seemed healthy, seemed fine, and then was not eating, was resting a lot, took her to the vet. And that very day, the vet said we have to put her down. Her blood count was in the toilet.
Yeah.
I didn't really know why, whether it was leukemia or whether the cat just had underlying health issues. So,
I did have something positive happen yesterday. There was a dog we were treating for a type of leukemia, and he had lost a lot of weight. He went from like 60 pounds to like 42 pounds, and he looked like a skeleton. But he recently just gained back 8 pounds.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yes, so he looks a lot
why'd you
better.
drop all the weight?
He wasn't digesting his food properly,
Oh,
I
I
guess.
see. I see.
Well, or something was happening and he was losing the weight. I don't know why.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the medical reason why he wasn't retaining any of the nutrition. Or maybe he was burning through it really quickly. But I think he's starting to respond to the chemo now in a positive way. And he's gained.
Well, if
gained.
he's on chemotherapy, it's likely that he has cancer.
Well, yeah, that's why we're giving him chemotherapy.
Leukemia,
Because he
you
has
said, right?
leukemia. He has a type of leukemia.
Oh, I thought you said he had a digestive problem.
No, he has a type of leukemia, and probably in combination with the leukemia and us giving chemotherapy, he lost a bunch of weight. But
Oh,
now
yeah.
he's started to respond to it positively, and he's gaining his weight back.
Good for him.
So I was really happy to see him, come in feeling like $1 million because he had just gained 8 pounds back.
Oh,
Poor doggy.
poor
I know.
puppy. I'm gonna be crushed when Chance dies.
Oh, I was crushed when we had to put our dog down. And it's this year it'll be 2 years in July, and it was terrible. We had a vet come to the house and put her down.
Our family, it'll be 2 years in August. We had a Cavalier King Charles Spaniel that had a bad heart murmur and heart failure that finally caught up to her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's awful, so traumatic.
If
I don't
only
want to
human
get another
beings could
dog
do
again. I'm afraid.
Oh, you haven't moved on yet?
No.
Oh, you poor thing.
It's true. I don't want, well, some of it is I just don't want another dog because I'm not ready to replace her. And then the other part of it is it's kind of nice not to have a dog sometimes. Like you don't have to worry, you know.
You're not a true dog lover then.
I am a true dog lover.
No,
I loved my dog.
My house is gonna be filled with
And what
dogs.
if I get an asshole dog? Like my dog was
That's
so
not how dogs work.
good. My
It's-
dog was like the best dog.
It's
She
hard
was
for dogs
such
to
a good
continue to be
dog.
set in their way. It is really hard for a dog to continue to be a bad dog. Now, the bad things they'll do and continue to do is if they like to eat things they're not supposed to, they're repeat offenders, and that's hard to breed out of them. But they're not going to have bad personalities because they link their personalities to their
I know,
owners.
but when you have the best dog ever, it's really hard.
Well, that's
to,
probably because it felt comfortable being
I
around
know.
you, and
Our
it
dog
wanted
was
to
so awesome.
wanted to make
I
you
just
happy.
Loved her.
Yeah, no.
She was
except
such
that
a good
It's not
dog.
your dog. It's the best dog. It's my dog. It's the best
No,
dog.
my dog was the best dog ever.
Except it's not.
It was.
Well,
she was.
we were both wrong because my friend Yakov's dog is the best dog ever.
Okay.
Bailey's
Yeah.
You can all go fuck
She
yourself.
was such a good
Yeah.
dog.
I know.
I don't know. So I don't know. I'm
Every
just
dog's-
not ready.
every
I'm
dog
just not
owner
ready.
thinks they have the
But you know,
best
I
dog in
had
the
my dog
world.
for 18 years.
Your dog was 18?
Yeah. 17.
Connor, how old was that cat?
17 and a half.
How old was that cat that lived? What was it? What was the dog? Some cream pie?
Oh, yeah, we saw
cat.
something that said a cat lived to 38.
38.
38
Really?
years old.
Wow.
That's terrifying.
Is that true?
I don't know.
Well,
It's
my
from the
dog was
internet.
really
It's gotta be
17.
true.
She
The
was
oldest cat
I had her for
I've
17
ever seen
years.
in person. We have a cat that comes in named Jesse, and he's a 3 years and a month younger than me, so he's 19 right now, and he'll turn 20 this year.
Wow.
And he looks in pretty good shape, but I think his kidneys are starting to fail on him.
That's a big issue with cats, isn't it?
Their kidneys and hyperthyroidism.
Their kidneys tend to fail quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They have really efficient
know.
kidneys, so when something starts to go wrong, it goes wrong really fast.
Oh.
Poor kitty.
But again, cats are useless.
No, they're not.
not
I told
useless.
I
I
told
like
you earlier
cats,
that the
except I'm
pheromones off a
allergic.
cat repel mice and
I
rats.
tell you this because I take a very Ron Swanson attitude towards cats. Anything, again, and I'm quoting Ron Swanson, anything under 30 pounds is a cat, and cats are useless.
Oh, so if I get one of those little teacup puppies, that's not going to be good for you?
That's a cat, that's not a dog.
I know. That's the kind of dog I want next.
Okay, that's not
Little
don't
tiny
stop calling
dog.
it a dog because it's not a dog.
It
it's
is a
cat.
dog. It's a
not.
teacup
Is
dog.
It under 30 pounds.
Yeah,
Then
it's
a
like
cat.
4 pounds.
Then it's
That's
a
the
cat.
dog I want.
No.
Next.
That is such a sissy. It's a puntable. It's not even like.
It's a puntable,
It's
but
a
it would
punt-
be my dog. Why can't I have the dog that I want?
I'm not taking care of it.
You don't have
I'll
to.
drown the thing.
Don't draw my dog.
Useless little rat. That's what it is. It's basically just a rat.
It'll sit on my lap. and
Get a
I
pit
can
bull.
pet
Pit
it.
bulls are the ultimate dog.
There are a lot of good pit bulls out there. Most of my positive experiences with dogs are pit bulls, but I also know how violent they can be because of
Oh
their,
my God!
'cause of their body.
That could be your dog.
Well,
Chance is not.
they
First
ha-
of all, he's a mixed pit.
Well, they have the physical ability to be violent.
So does a golden retriever. The #1 bite in the U.S. is a Chihuahua.
Well,
Those
okay,
little
yeah,
dogs.
Chihuahuas are pretty neurotic dogs, so
Okay.
they bite people a lot.
So they're technically the most dangerous breed out
Dangerous
there. Okay, pit bulls are very low on,
The
very low on
problem
the
is
totem
if you
pole.
get bit by a chihuahua, you're not going to die. If you get bit by a bigger animal, there's more damage. That's the problem.
It's people will train pit bulls to be violent. Not all of them, but there are pit bulls who are trained to be violent. That's what gives them a bad name.
There are a lot of animals that are trained to be violent. It has nothing to do with the breed, in my opinion. It's just that the breed has gotten a bad rap because there have been people that do shitty things with
Mm-hmm.
pit bulls. I think there's nothing inherent about pit bulls that is violent.
Well, there are plenty of good pit bulls. We have one that comes in named Buttercup, and she's got like
What a cute name.
her body's like the size of a bulldog. So she's a
Mm-hmm.
really tiny and chubby and stout pit
So it's
bull.
like a Staffordshire Terrier almost.
Yeah.
Right.
She's got a really cute face,
Staffy.
but whatever organization she was with before these people got him, they ended up cutting off her ears and cauterizing them because she had chronic ear infections.
You mean they cropped her?
Yeah, I guess.
Well, they do that thing where they crop them so they're pointed upwards, right?
No.
Oh, they just cut her ears off?
They cut the ears off and cauterized the hole shut.
That's fucked up.
That is so mean.
That's really fucked
She's
up.
a happy and fun dog to be around,
Yeah.
so whatever reason they did that, that was before the people who own her did anything, so
What's the dog's name?
Buttercup.
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 That's so cute. Buttercup.
I think I have a photo of her.
Buttercup. That's a cute name.
I'm trying to make some connection to being earless in Buttercups, but I can't just do it. What happens when you get 2 beers deep
Oh,
and 2 shots?
yeah, this is what the dog with the leukemia looked like before he started gaining the weight back.
Oh, wow.
That's us giving him
Damn.
chemo.
The dog's got to be less than what?
Yeah, he eats like 42 pounds right there
Wow.
when he should be like 60.
God, look at his ribs.
Yeah, that was
Poor
before he
thing.
gained the weight back.
Poor baby. That's all I know.
That's sad.
Oh, wait, hold on.
Cool.
So
little bit, I'm getting
so this photo was December 19th. This was December 12th. Like
Oh,
you
wow.
can see
What a
how
difference.
yeah.
Connor, you cold?
No.
All right, I'm going to get her the electric blanket real quick.
Ooh, careful, careful. Are
Sorry,
you
I
all right?
tripped. No, I'm good.
Oh, this is Vito. He likes to poop all over himself,
Oh,
so we
that's
give him a lot of
Vito.
baths.
Vito is adorable.
Yeah, well, he likes to bite at you, unfortunately. He's a neurotic and crazy dog. He poops all over himself.
What are you looking for?
Oh, come on, I have to have a photo of Buttercup in here. Oh, here's Buttercup.
Oh my God, Buttercup is adorable too.
Yeah, but look at her ears.
Oh, poor
Yeah.
Buttercup has no ears. I wonder
But
if
she's got a
that
super
affects-
expressive face,
If
though.
that affects her hearing at all.
It probably just makes everything sound muffled.
Yeah. Poor thing. That's terrible that they did that to her.
And look how tiny and disproportionate her body is. But yeah, what I was trying to say earlier about Carter is he was at my parents' house for a party that him and his parents were invited to.
Yeah.
And I went off to go do my own thing, and he went and talked to my mom saying, well, was Connor done with me? Did he not want to see me anymore?
Uh-huh.
Well, I don't think so. I think I just wanted to go play video games.
Right.
I just didn't realize how emotionally sensitive he was.
He is.
Well, you would know more than me. You've known him apparently for 10 years.
Yeah, we worked together in Bridgeport for 10 years.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Bridgeport sucks.
Yeah, Bridgeport did suck. But, you know, like you were saying before about how, you know, we see death every once in a while. You know, like there's a lot of traumatic stuff that happens in the ER. Even if people live,
What are we on now?
how we worked in Bridgeport together.
Yeah. Here, when you get freezing in the basement, there's always just a great opportunity for a heating blanket.
Yes,
So-
thank you so much for this. I'm
Well,
so
actually, that
happy.
brings up an interesting topic that I was wanting to get in with you.
What?
Codes.
Codes.
Codes are the bread and butter of what we do.
Okay, what's a 319?
It's a number.
Oh, is that not what you mean by code?
No, that's not the code we're talking about.
Oh, okay.
Code we're talking about is
Code
when
of
you go into
ethics?
Like
cardiac
a cardiac
arrest.
arrest, yeah.
Yeah, cardiac arrests are fascinating to do. In fact, there's one notable case right now. Hold on, let me get everybody warm real quick. Where that football player collapsed on the field.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, guy hit his chest, gave him the judo death punch and
Right.
took him
So
out.
it's actually, I think it's called commodio cordis.
Yeah.
It's a very rare instance where if you hit the heart right in the T wave at the end of the QRS, right in the right spot, it can actually throw you into either it's VTAC or VFib. And it's very treatable as long as you get early CPR, early defibrillation.
Well, the problem is, how do you predict it? How do you predict that that's going to happen and be able to
You
respond?
can't. I mean,
Yeah.
those
Well,
kind of
that's why
things
the
are
AED
free,
is there.
right?
Yeah.
I think annually about 20 people. I'm sorry, maybe monthly about 20. No, it's annually about 20 people. Sports athletes experience this phenomena.
20 a year.
So then why?
I think so. Yeah.
If it's 20 a year, then why were we suddenly all made aware of it?
Well, okay, because I was just pulling this up today in Medicine News. 6 million people globally die from sudden cardiac arrest every single year.
Mm-hmm.
Out
Is
of
that
hospital.
competitive with cigarettes?
Well, I don't know. I think that cigarettes in the U.S. is about 300,000 a year, something to that effect. Cardiac arrest is the survival rate on cardiac arrests are very low, out of hospital, like less than 2%.
Even in hospital, I
In
feel
hospital,
like
it goes
low.
up a little,
little bit,
I think
but
it goes
not
up to
much.
like 10
Yeah.
or 11%. It's insanely low. People in cardiac arrest don't tend to survive. The key difference with cardiac arrests is that the reason that out-of-hospital survival is so much lower than in-hospital survival is because early CPR and early defibrillation are so absolutely vital. And when we get the call, especially from the EMS perspective, to go to a potential code, we're getting onto the scene in best case circumstances about 5 to 6 minutes, which, you know, most people know that when you go into cardiac arrest, the brain begins to be irreversibly damaged after about 6 to 8 minutes of no cardiac activity. So, if, you know, the advent of things like drones and stuff like that, the idea that you can get AEDs to people quicker, and, you know, with dispatch being able to give directions over the phone regarding CPR, that survival rates would generally be trending towards being better. But in my experience and all my time, I can count on one hand the amount of people that have been able to successfully revive in the field from cardiac arrest. So, yeah, we got to get better at it. You know, it's one of those things where it's sad, but it's, you know, it's a fact.
Well, that's where having a Neuralink and wires throughout your body will help, because they can just shock your heart when something goes wrong.
Well, that's what the purpose of ICDs are,
Yep.
right? ICDs are incredibly effective, and I'd be willing to bet, and I don't know the case inwards and outwards, but the gentleman, the football player that collapsed on the field, he might very well have an ICD in place because either he had an underlying condition that predisposed him to cardiac arrest, or it was in fact the case that he just got hit at the right time during repolarization of his ventricle, of his heart, where it threw him into a ventricular tachydysrhythmia. So maybe he did. I mean, the installation of ICDs is a routine thing now, and it makes cardiac arrest that much more survivable for people when they can get immediate defibrillation on scene. When it goes wrong, when ICDs go haywire in the field, that's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
You know,
These poor
all of a
people
sudden these
get
poor people are
shocked.
getting whacked every 2 minutes. You know?
For no reason.
I shouldn't be laughing. It's not funny. I've done a few of those cases where they keep, my chest hurts.
I know.
Why is that? What's going on? I don't
Keep
know. I
getting
just keep getting zapped. So, you sure you're not cold?
Yeah.
Okay.
We can pass the blanket over.
You're a lot stronger of a human being than I am. So, how many code saves have you actually done?
Code saves?
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
Before we
One
get
notable
pulses back,
one.
I mean, I
one
don't know.
notable one that I did was at Ralph and Richie's. It was one of my first, where this guy John was having dinner with his family. He started to have chest pain and collapsed onto the table, and the AEMT that I was with at the time, his name was PJ. We were right around the corner when we got the call, and we got there, and one of my students, my EMT students, was working there and started CPR on him. So when I walked in, there's this kid that I'd been teaching who had been doing CPR, and we shocked him probably within about 2 to 3 minutes.
Wow.
When we put the pads and the 4-lead on him, he was in VTAC, fast, monomorphic VTAC. Whacked him with 200 joules through the biphasic life pack, and he ended up converting immediately.
And by the time we loaded him onto the stretcher and got into the ambulance, he was looking at me like, what the hell happened? What's going on? Why? And I'm like, you're in an ambulance.
Yeah.
I tried not to scare him by
Yeah.
saying your heart stopped.
Yeah.
So I modified, just like, your heart was doing something funny, and we just had to, we just had to give you some medication to make it feel. The news fucked the entire story up, because they did a story on me and PJ, and they said that we inserted breathing tubes and gave him cardiac meds and all this shit. We just shocked him.
Yeah.
And once we got IVs installed and gave him some fluids and ran a 12 lead on him, we realized that he had an MI or was having an MI. And we were able to activate the cath lab. But that's just News 12 just embellished that story.
So big.
They embellished that story.
It's funny because I don't remember the people that survive. I always remember the people that we didn't save.
I remember
Isn't
a
that
lot.
crazy?
I remember
Because it's
most.
probably
I don't remember
Some
like the code save.
light sense of guilt.
I remember all the ones that we tried and
Yep.
didn't survive. Like the young guy who died literally in front of me in triage.
What was that
When we
case?
started CPR. He was like a 30-year-old guy that came in, and it was his birthday. They had gone out. He thought he was hungover and dehydrated, had been vomiting all day.
DK.
We don't really know. We think it might have been just a fatal arrhythmia. I mean, we found out later that there's a probability he was doing steroids, and that might have thrown him into this weird cardiac arrhythmia. But I asked him to come sit down because he looked a little
Yeah. Not right.
off. Yeah. And so as he walked around the corner, this was at V's, so you remember how the desk was like a curve,
Yeah.
so he was registering here. I said, come sit down. And as he was walking, he face planted.
You just
And
syncopized?
so I jumped. No, he went into cardiac arrest. I jumped over the desk.
Isn't
I
that the
flipped
same
him
thing as
over.
syncopizing?
No, because you can faint and still have a pulse.
Of course. I knew that. I knew
Right?
that. I just use syncopize as just a
Yeah.
general term for people
Flipped
that...
him over. He had no pulse.
Oh.
Freaking died
So you
right
started
there.
thumping on him immediately?
Yeah. I started CPR. They came out to help me. We coded him for an hour, and the kid
You
died.
coded him for an hour?
For an hour because I didn't want to stop. I felt so bad.
So you overrided the physicians when they wanted to stop it. You're like, no, we're still, I have an objection.
Yeah, we went through 2 crash carts.
If the code wasn't going to kill him, the amount of epi that you guys
I know, but I just felt so bad. I couldn't. He was 30.
did. An hour?
He was 30. We coded him for an hour.
That's a long time to code somebody.
Oh, but I felt
Sorry.
so bad. I mean, not that I could have done anything differently, but I still felt so bad. will never forget that.
Have you ever thumped somebody before?
No.
Never gave somebody a precordial thump?
No.
I did it a few times.
Did it work?
Nope.
Nope.
Because it only equates to something like 10 to 15 joules of energy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thumped a guy that kept going in and out of VFib. For some reason, he just didn't want to stay in asystole. He just kept jumping back into VFib. Shock, asystole, VFib again. I don't know. So I whacked him in the chest. It did nothing. It was fun. It was a fun experience. Is that watermelon?
Yeah.
That smells really good.
I know. I love it.
Yeah. So you should get into EMS or become an RN because you get to do all this fun stuff.
But I could continue to do this and have fun with my cameras.
I know. See? He's smarter.
Yeah, he's much smarter.
Because being in the ER sucks.
Being in a vet hospital sucks.
I know. It really does. I did save somebody a couple weeks ago, though. Came into triage at Danbury.
Well, that's a story that needs to be told.
Again, he came in through triage, and he just was not looking right. So I took him right to the trauma room, and we put pads on him. And the second we put pads on him, he went out. We lost a pulse, and we shocked him, and he woke up just like your guy. What the hell just happened? He woke up, and he was like, "Ow!"
Oh, he felt it. Oh shit! What was the rhythm?
He was just in VFib.
Oh, it was just a VFib.
Yeah.
Would you shock him through the Life Pack 10?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or the Life Pack, what is it? You guys...
We have the
Zoll.
The Zoll.
Zoll.
Yeah.
Isn't that a monophasic machine?
Yeah.
So the Joule...
And then I was like, all right, he's got a pulse. Peace out. I'm going back to triage.
Can somebody do
Have
the
fun
charting
with that.
for me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The best cardiac arrests are the ones where you're working in a fly car and the main transport people are the one that have to take care of all the rhythm analysis and the drugs. You just show up and do what you got to do, and you get in the report and say 7115 took the call. Like, I don't have to worry about any of that. So I had a guy with a GI bleed at Bridgeport Hospital.
Oh, GI bleeds are the worst.
He was in and out of VT, and they had started him on amio drip, and he boxed right in front of me. Because watching VT, 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 couple sinus, some sinus tack, VT, 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 VT. And he literally right there as I'm looking at him, his head rolled back. And the docs and everybody just rushed in, and while they started working him, he started spewing digested blood up. His potassium levels and his sodium levels must have been so off from the GI bleed. Or he was just so severely anemic. Surprisingly, despite the mess of him vomiting up so much black shit and him not having a patent airway, we did manage to shock him back into a perfusing rhythm, and he did survive.
Yeah.
He did survive.
He's lucky.
That smelled so
varices
bad.
bleed.
Yeah, varices will
Gross.
kill you. Alcoholics have a tendency to develop these things called esophageal varices, which are it's a consequence of portal hypertension in the liver, and so you get these bulges in the esophagus that are veins, and if they pop or explode, it's just relentless bleeding into the esophagus and into the stomach, and it can kill you very, very quickly without surgical intervention. It smells really bad. Yeah, digested blood doesn't smell very good. So
Nope.
well, this is why we are traumatized for the rest of our lives.
Seriously, honestly,
Wow.
yeah. I tell you that all the time. We all have PTSD.
I don't like to admit it though.
I know you don't like to admit it, but we have it.
'Cause I come from a place where it's a weakness. It feels like weakness to express
But it's the truth.
feelings.
All of us,
over this
everybody
shit.
who works in EMS or the ER, you all have some sort of we all do.
But sort of, he must.
And
I
you
see it
must
a lot
too.
with creatures that can't express themselves or tell you what's wrong.
So that would be like an equivalent to a kid coding,
A very young child,
Right,
yeah.
yeah. So
Imagine
that I can't talk to them. Yeah.
I'm working on a bunch of 2-year-olds.
Yeah, all the time. Yeah.
I've been profoundly unlucky with pediatrics, especially in my last few years. I think I've done something like maybe 10 or 15 pediatric arrests, and they always come in these batches. And there was you and I did one.
We did a
together.
drowning.
That was a drowning of a 2-year-old. Weird case. I never forget it. This 2-year-old apparently
Are
was.
we allowed to talk about that kind of stuff?
We're
Like,
not
is that
saying
like a
names.
HIPAA
It's not a
thing?
HIPAA
Oh.
violation. If it is, he'll just bleed
not
everything
sure.
out. All right, I'll find out.
Or
if
just cut it out of the video.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I don't think it's a
I'm not
HIPAA
sure.
violation.
Because I don't mind having a jump cut in the middle of the podcast, because
It'd sound probably better that way. At any rate. Yeah. No. So it's not. It's not a HIPAA violation. But this 2-year-old was called for a drowning. And for some reason, I just can't forget this call. I get up on scene. It's this raised ranch, and fire and us go rushing to the backyard where this family in the front was like pointing to. And we get in the backyard, and there's this 2-year-old girl just laying down on the ground with nobody around her, soaking wet. Somebody had to have pulled her out of the pool, and they just left her there.
because they're traumatized. They didn't know what to do.
I don't know. There were like 7 or 8 people there. You couldn't just stay with the 2-year-old baby. I mean, anyway, I picked the kid up, rushed over to the truck. My partner was setting everything up. And I suctioned something like about 150 to 200 cc's of water out of her, out of her lungs, intubated her, managed to get good solid CPR and a couple rounds of epi on board. And surprisingly, we were able to get pulses back really quickly, but she just wasn't neurologically intact. And I think, if I recall, she donated?
I don't know. I don't remember that
I think she
part.
donated some of her organs went, because they flew her out to Yale.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, they flew her out to Yale. So,
I'm actually
weird
considering
case.
taking my organ donor status off my driver's license. Because I heard stories out of like Texas hospitals where they were letting like motorcycle accident victims die that they could have saved so they could get their organs.
So they can't really do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, that's not
Well-
that's not ethically.
No, they ethically cannot do it, but they were caught doing it.
They got caught doing
Yeah,
this?
they were sued under malpractice suits.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, because even though it's on your driver's license, it's still not. We still have to get next of kin's permission
Oh, okay.
to donate organs.
I don't think it's
I don't
that.
think
Yeah,
it's
I don't
that
think there's
simple.
some conspiracy
Yeah.
going on with.
I think it's like that's your wishes, so it kind of helps your family make the decision to go ahead and donate.
Because that's what they did when my grandfather died.
Yeah, and you also have to be. We have to go through like I think you have to have 3 tests or something in ICU, like 3 specific things to declare you brain dead in order to.
No pupillary response. What else is there? They're testing things in the brainstem.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's not that simple of a process.
Keep your organ donator card on there.
Well, what if I want my left kidney? I don't want to give it to anybody.
What are you going to use it for? If you're dead,
It's
what are you-
mine.
What are you going to use it
I mean,
for?
I don't have it on my license, but I would hope that my family knows that.
Oh, don't worry. I'll tell the staff at Danbury that.
Take everything.
Take everything.
Thanks.
Yeah, everything that isn't nailed down.
Right. Sorry, but I'd want you to do the same thing for me.
Yeah, I would definitely be an organ donor, for sure.
I'd want my body to go to medical science.
No, because then you might end up in that museum. Did
No,
you
Oh,
go?
the
Did you go
Bodies
see
Museum?
that Bodies Alive museum?
My parents took me to see it when I was a kid.
Oh my
and
god.
I loved it.
I'm not sure what that's
I
done
loved
to
it.
me.
I got a little bit like nauseous in there. All I could picture was like, and again, probably from horror movies that I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like a crazy guy in a plastic apron and like
Oh,
rain
God.
boots,
Yeah.
ripping
Well, you have to be
people
a real
apart.
artist to do that kind of stuff
Seriously,
to a body.
something's
Yeah.
got to be wrong with you for you to put that thing together.
You notice
So
that most
I was
of
in
those.
there and I was like,
You ever notice how most of those bodies are Asian?
yes.
I didn't notice at the time.
All of them are Asian people.
Uh-huh.
Oh. Well, there's a lot of them.
I know why.
There's a lot of Indians too. There's a lot of people on the planet. I don't know what that has to do with it. No, they're all Asian. All the
what
bodies.
what do you mean by Asian? Because
They're of
do you mean,
Asian Oriental descent.
Okay, well, Indians are Oriental too.
They're okay.
Do you mean Chinese?
Yes, that side of the world. Yes. They're all Oriental. That's a very interesting phenomenon. I loved going to the bodies exhibit. I went with
Oh.
Daniel
It
Silva.
made me a little bit sick.
I
I
still
got a
have all the
little
photos on my
nauseous.
phone.
I remember holding a
I
brain
didn't take any pictures.
So I got to hold a brain. Where did you hold a brain?
at the bodies exhibit in New York.
They let you hold a brain?
It wasn't like moist and fleshy. It was like hard and
Oh.
sticky.
No, I got to. Oh my God!
God, I didn't touch none of it.
The doctor that allowed me to. When I did my first autopsy, I got to tell you, it was such an incredible experience. I was gung ho, and she just let me go crazy. Like you cut the skull around the temporal region up to the occipital region to the frontal, and it comes off, And then she was like, "Okay, I'm gonna need you to put your fingers into this cranial cavity and lift his head so I can cut the spinal cord." And I'm like, "I'm in." So it's sad and it's disgusting, but I put my fingers into where the frontal cortex meets the frontal lobe and lifted his head up, and she pulled the brain up and cut. I gotta tell you, I was like a pig in shit. I loved it.
You loved it.
I loved every second of my autopsy. It was incredible. We got to look at the red nucleus and the thalamus. Looked at the spinal cord. We looked at the hemispheres of the brain.
It's a good learning experience.
Oh my God, it's such a great
but-
learning experience. We got to take his liver. We suspect that he died from fatty liver. His liver was marbled orange, which, if anybody knows anything about livers, they should be, dark purple. And it was so enlarged and from fatty liver. It was marbled orange, and it was an incredible. The heart was also an incredible organ to take a look at and examine. So were the lung. I mean, everything everything in the chest cavity and in the cranial cavity is remarkable to look at. And I'm coming across right now like a complete psychopath.
No.
Yeah.
See, I think I have too much PTSD.
I think he's looking at
With
me and how I'm reacting to it
all
because
of
I
that.
think it's weird.
Because, you know,
But
You wouldn't want to get a chance to do an
like all
autopsy on a
those
human
No.
being?
PSWs
No,
where you see
I-
like brain matter everywhere.
sometimes when my brain has time to like imagine things, I'll look at people and I'll see all the working parts, and I don't like it. So I don't want to actually engage with a cadaver's working parts. Well, they're not working anymore.
But they're dead. I mean, it doesn't matter.
I just
anymore.
don't want to actually see it. I'm fine with letting my imagination go as far as it goes sometimes, but I
Right.
don't want to actualize it.
The profound moment for me was when I held this gentleman's brain in my hand, and I realized in that instance that all of his memories, all of his pain, all of his love, all of his joy, all of his hate, all of his thoughts are contained in this 3.5 pound organ.
At that point, they were gone.
Right, at that
Nothing
organ.
was
But
going.
it's right. No, nothing was going on at
Yeah.
that moment. But everything that this person thought, experienced,
Was in there.
was there in this incredible white and gray 3 pound organ that's connected to everything through this long cord, and I realized in that moment that I was no different,
Mhm.
right? You and I are no different. There's going to come a point when we're on the slab and there's some medical student saying the same thing about us, and that circuity to life to me is more beautiful than morose. I mean, that's just me.
Well, the
But-
human body is amazing.
I think so.
Mm-hmm.
The complexity.
mhm.
Yeah. I think complex biological organisms are fascinating in general.
But I think in our field, we also see how fragile it is, and I think that's where my
Right.
PTSD comes in.
Yeah.
Is that
There's a fragility
it's such a
to- yeah.
it's such a fragile thing that, you know.
Well, humans are a pretty unique species because we walk upright with all of our vital and vulnerable organs exposed, while most animals walk around hunched over with their back to protect them.
And I never thought of it like that.
Yeah.
So we're vulnerable by choice, actually.
Even
not
great
just by
apes
nature.
largely walk on fours,
Yep.
right?
Yeah, the hunch over.
They hunch over to walk.
Mhm.
Yeah. So what was our transition species? Homo erectus?
It has an acronym, but it's something like last known common ancestor between humans and chimps.
Which was about, what, 250,000 years ago?
No, it was like 3 million years ago.
I think modern human beings
Modern
have been
human
around for
beings-
250,000.
Our 250,000,
Right.
but the lineage that diverted from chimps is about 3 million years old.
That's a mistake, Connor, that a lot of people make, is that they make the mistake of saying that human beings are descended from
No,
chimpanzees.
we diverted from chimps.
We're cousins of chimpanzees.
Yeah, we-
but we don't come from. Chimps are modern animals.
Right,
So
no,
are
I'm
gorillas
saying
and bonobos. They're
we
all
diverted from the lineage that created chimps. It's
Right.
two different lineages that had a common ancestor, and that common
Right.
ancestor divided. And the theory is that the chimps stayed in the trees and the humans went and ventured into the savannah.
I even think that's a misconception. Chimps are modern animals, just like human beings and elephants and all that. It's that their ancestors diverged, and then
Is that not what I just said?
Well, you said that the chimps
The last-
are.
Well, I said the last common ancestor between humans and chimps was like 3 million years
Oh,
ago.
then
and the
yes,
two lineages diverted.
then that is what you said. And I
Yeah.
was just trying to reiterate. No, I mean I love looking at that. That's another issue. That's another thing that Dawkins brought up in his book, is that there's that misconception that we come from something else. It's like we don't. That common ancestor died a very, very long time ago, and
Well, there are also other versions of humans on Earth, and we outcompeted the rest of them. Neanderthals were a type of human.
yeah.
There was a Southeast Asian one that was like short and stumpy, like hobbits.
Ooh, that would have been interesting to be around.
Well, we coexisted with them. We showed up while they were there, and then outcompeted them or integrated with them.
Wasn't there some evidence to suggest that that modern human beings had interbred with Neanderthals?
Yeah, we have DNA that descends directly from DNA evidence found in Neanderthal skeletons.
See, I find that really interesting. I don't know much about Neanderthals.
Well, the idea is not that we fought them out of Europe, is that while they probably had their own sects and communities that were separate, there were some that integrated with us and we integrated with them, and that ultimately humans out-reproduced them. If you want to see something that's very close to like what a natural human is outside of the rest of society.
Yeah.
While they are integrated now, they weren't very long ago, and that's the Aboriginals of Australia. They're some of the most, like, removed DNA from human, from the traditional human. Then there's also the North Sentinelese, which are an island
I haven't heard of any of
out
these.
in the middle of the Indian Ocean, which are, to this day remain completely uncontacted officially.
So their gene pool remains relatively stable.
To that one island, yeah.
Right. Well, that's a component of Hardy-Weinberg equilibriums, is that species will tend to stay unchanged if they meet certain criteria, and one of them is that there's really no migration in or out of a population.
Well, with Australia, the British forced their way in.
The British.
So I'm sure there are families of English and Aboriginal descent together, but the Aboriginals were probably the most, like, actively studied, not proto-human, but, like, I guess another species of human
Sure.
that we can interbreed with.
Can't,
Can.
Well, then it's not technically a different species.
I guess subspecies.
Yeah, because
Because zebras are another subspecies of the
Horse.
equine family.
right. Well, I mean, the technical definition
I'm
for
sure
speciation.
if I tried to go reproduce with a North Sentinelese woman, it would produce a child, but
Well, then we're the same. We would be generally the same species.
yes, but society-wise, they're as evolved as Europeans were 10,000 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, again, the general definition of a species are animals that are capable of successfully interbreeding. The exceptions to that are plants.
What about like mules and ligers? Is that a successful
I don't think
interbreed?
ligers and mules interbreed.
No, it's just it's lions and tigers can.
When did a
can-
liger and a mule get together?
No, I'm saying that
I was
tigers
waiting
and
for you to
lions
let me-
can create a liger, but
Right, so they're
sterile.
isolated example. They're isolated examples of well, viable offspring being the key component of
Right, but
what
those
defines a
offspring
species.
are sterile.
Right,
Mules
ligers
sterile.
are sterile.
Ligers and mules are sterile.
Right.
Yeah.
So they are. Lions are obviously a distinct species from tigers,
Mhm.
even though they're in the feline.
Yeah.
Even though they're very, very close.
And they
So-
can produce an offspring, but that offspring is sterile.
But again, viable offspring is the key component to that definition. So I watch a debate between. Have you seen that guy, Professor Dave?
No.
He's a chemist, and he does these interesting debates with people. Like he debates flat earthers.
I know a guy named Simon Dan who debates flat earthers.
I think I know who that is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Professor Dave debates these people that push these really fringe ideas like flat Earth, and there's this guy Kent Hovind.
Mm-hmm.
He's a fucking con artist, and he debates evolution with him, and he brings up all these incredible points that Kent is just not able to. Like, he talks about like polyploidy within plant as being an interesting exception to what a species is, and he's incredibly insightful, and so I learn a lot from watching these interesting debates that he has with these people, these creationist people, and yeah, I mean,
What do you think about when they graft like apple trees together, like a Granny Smith branch onto a red apple tree?
I don't think I know enough about it, but I mean, if that's a thing, I think that's awesome. The more apples, the better, right? I
Yeah,
had
they-
my first apple this time over in October or September.
Your first apple?
Yeah,
Ever?
off a tree.
Oh.
Yeah, it was profound. I like the Cortlands the most.
My neighbor used to have a peach tree, and those were the only peaches I found like enjoyable to eat. The ones from the store I don't
A
like.
peach
You don't
tree?
like
Yeah.
them?
Have you ever gone to an orchard, like at a fair or something like that, and picked apples off of a tree?
No.
I did it for the first time with Danny and Amanda.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Oh,
it was
yeah.
such a
Apple
great because
picking
they
is so
line
much
it up
fun.
so that you know which ones are which,
Yeah.
and so you can literally go, orchard,
apple you
to
like.
try
Yeah.
it, and then
Uh-huh.
everybody just tosses theirs on the ground. They must lose so much money.
Yeah.
At the time they cut it down, the tree was probably like 80 years old.
Oh,
like the
wow.
people who
Why did they
moved,
cut it down?
new people moved into the house.
And you just didn't want the tree.
Yeah. But it was probably planted by his parents back in like the 30s or something.
Wow.
Yeah.
Just cut it down.
Hmm.
Wow.
It would produce some of the juiciest apples.
That's incredible.
Yeah. Not apples, peaches. Sorry.
Peaches.
Some of the juiciest peaches that I found genuinely enjoyable to eat.
I don't particularly like peaches.
It ruined my taste for the
Oh, I like
peaches in the
peaches.
store.
Well, what's your favorite fruit?
Mine?
Yeah.
Watermelon.
Watermelon's pretty good, but I like apples.
I'm a pear guy. I
I
love
like
pears.
Granny Smith apples.
Aren't those a
Oh,
little
the
bit more?
sour.
They're
Those are
sour,
tart,
tart.
I don't
Yeah.
like anything like that.
You like the sweeter ones. That's why the Cortlands
Yeah.
are really nice.
The Portlands, the Red Delicious.
I think what I actually like the most are those wine berries. Those wild raspberries that are around here.
You know, it's funny because I know somebody that forages and does that.
They're so good, man.
And it scares the shit out of me.
Well, no, the plant is really identifiable, and I've grown up
Apparently
around
it
them.
is, yeah. I don't know.
I've grown up around them, so I feel comfortable walking up to a bush I see in another state that I've never been to before, because I know what the plant looks like.
I'll
And
take a
picking the
hard pass
berries.
on
Yeah,
that.
Yeah, me too.
They come from Asia, like China and Korea.
All right.
So they're an invasive plant here, but they produce a berry that is so tart and excessively sweet that I can't help but just to eat them. As soon as I see the bush, I pull over and start picking
So
them.
what is it, like a Sour Patch Kid? It's sweet and bitter and sour at the same time?
It depends on how ripe it is
Right.
or what's around the plant. I've tried to create a connection between heavy metals present in the ground and their taste, but I have so far found no evidence to substantiate it. I just
Probably
have a
it's
feeling
worth
there's something to do
studying.
with
I'm
it.
going to tell you that right now.
But I'll eat them to the point where like my face starts to tingle. It's an incredible addiction.
That's
And
probably
I'm-
the toxins in it.
and I'm glad
Yeah.
and I'm glad they only come
Probably eating the
around
wrong
in like
berry.
August. That's the only time they really bloom. We have bushes that grow in the parking lot of the building I work in. So when August came around, I was out there harvesting them every single day, and I probably got like 10 harvests out of one bush,
Wow.
which I had never been able to do before.
What's the name of the berry?
Wineberry.
Wineberry.
And you can make wine out of it, and it's called wine.
There's a lot of wild berry places you can go grab stuff off the
I
tree.
love berries.
There's a place in Easton where you can go pick blueberries.
Apparently, a lot of stuff on the New York-Connecticut border north.
Yeah.
There's a lot of shit up there that you can find on like nature trails and stuff like that. You just go picking.
I would be afraid to eat it though, unless I knew for sure.
This was the point of Dan Pollan's book, Omnivore's Dilemma, was that our ancestors did all the heavy lifting regarding poisonous shit and bad shit that would kill you, so we don't have to worry about
I
that
know.
anymore.
Until we get to another planet that has vegetation. Then
Right.
we get to try that
Well, it
experiment
ain't
all
going to be
over again.
anything in this solar system. So far as it stands, it's hard enough to colonize Mars. So, and that probably won't happen for. Well, colonization is one thing. Visiting the planet is a different thing. I think there's a good likelihood.
We'll see us visit it.
I think there's a good
Yeah.
likelihood
Yeah.
that we'll see somebody go to
But
Mars.
to have a total recall like civilization on Mars.
Say something. If it ends up being anything like the Schwarzenegger movie, I'm all down for that.
Yeah, right?
I'm ready to go there and yell at some guy named Copenhagen to like give me the fucking air.
Yep.
In fact,
Turn the sky blue.
In fact, if I was the first person to ever step foot onto Mars, I think my words would probably, because Neil Armstrong echoed, it's one what was it? It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. My first word stepping onto the Martian soil would be Copenhagen, give them their air. And that's what would be transmitted to the entire population. And I'd be happy with that. I'd be entirely happy with that. In fact, I suspect Arnold Schwarzenegger would be too.
Yes, he would be.
Yeah. They remade Total Recall.
In like 2012, and it was a different movie.
I didn't enjoy it.
No.
You know
It's
what
bad?
movie had a remake that was really offensive? It
What?
was the Red Dawn remake in like 2013.
Red Dawn.
Yeah.
What was that?
Red Dawn is a 1984 movie about the Soviet Union and Nicaragua and Cuba invading the United States. And it's the perspective of several small town kids in like, I don't know, Idaho or something like that.
I didn't see that.
It's an incredible movie. But the remake they did in 2012 was so offensive to me that I actually did my senior thesis paper about it.
How bad it was.
No, well, about Chinese economics in Hollywood.
Really?
And I used that as like one of the cornerstones of evidence that as the trade deficit with China rose, we became more afraid of creating films that would antagonize totalitarian regimes. At least when we had...
Why,
you
for
know,
fear of reprisal?
Yeah, because we actually were economically linked with China. We weren't economically linked with the Soviet Union. So it was okay for us to make a movie about us killing Soviet soldiers. And it was not okay for us to make a movie in 2013 about us killing Chinese soldiers.
We're still making films nowadays about killing Germans during World
Well,
War
that's
II.
fine, because the Germans aren't real. They're comic book evil characters. They never existed. We all know that.
Particularly, okay, I got you.
They're not real.
Yeah, they're not real.
They're so evil, they can't be real.
They can't be possibly
Well,
real.
what I like about... Well, okay, let me rephrase that. What I find fascinating about how the Nazis are portrayed is most of the footage you see of the Nazi military or the Wehrmacht and their actions around Europe all come from Nazi propaganda films. So as far as the Nazis are concerned, we remember them the way they want us to remember them.
I don't think Germany nowadays has any particular affinity.
No, not
for-
Germany. I'm saying the Nazis. The Nazis are a political ideology. Nazis aren't Germany.
Also, you think of modern Nazism, like especially in the U.S.
Right, and also the legacy of Hitler and Goebbels, that we're stroking their legacy by depicting them the way they wanted to be depicted by using their propaganda
But
films.
they also believe in their ideology.
Yeah.
To a huge
but
extent.
we don't. But we're forced to use all of their propaganda to glorify their ideology, to depict their
Oh, I
ideology.
see. Yeah. No, I think
The only materials that exist that convey their ideology are materials they created to convey their own ideology.
Right, but we also have
would be-
historical records of Nazism.
Yes, that's what
Right.
I'm saying. Is
Yeah.
like, well, at least I'm saying for the video evidence of it that was created with film cameras. It's stuff that was created by the Nazis to promote the Nazis.
Right, for the Nazis and
Yes.
for the rest of the world, right? Wasn't that the point? Because Goebbels was
He was the propaganda.
he was the
minister.
propaganda
Yeah.
guy, and he did a lot in the way of promoting fascism. And
Unfortunately,
not-
bad
Nazi-
ideologies pushed forward a lot of modern film technique. A lot of what
A lot did in Germany, right?
a lot of what constitutes how a modern movie is structured comes from the movie Birth of a Nation, which is a pro KKK and Confederate movie.
W.D. Griffith.
Yeah.
1904.
That-
1902.
That's what helped define like the actual way you create a movie and how you convey a story.
I watched it. It was
And also, like, the Nazis did things like the first POV shot of a pilot in a plane, that kind of thing. Like, they pushed the technical boundaries of how you record a movie forward as well.
they didn't just push the boundaries on film. They pushed the boundaries on lots of things.
Well, one
Drugs,
thing they didn't
surgery.
have is they didn't have a good music industry. The Soviets did.
The Soviets did.
The Soviets did. So part of how you perpetuate an extremist ideology is you have to have good art. So while the Nazis had movies, the Soviets had music. The Chinese have, I guess, the Little Red Book, which is writing.
I didn't think of it like that.
Hmm.
That's pretty interesting. How did you come by that?
I spent like 8 years just studying what is fascism because I got called all the time in high school a fascist and a Nazi and a KKK
So
member. And I
summarize
was like,
it
well,
for me.
hold on. My
In
best
high
friend's...
school?
Yeah, I was like, well, hold on. My best friend's a black Puerto Rican kid, and he's the only guy who hangs out with me, so I don't think I'm particularly racist or anything. So let me figure out what actually is these extremist ideologies I'm accused of being, and I'm going to lay the groundwork for something that's going to be really confusing, but you'll have to just accept it because this is the way I've understood it, which is Nazism is a racial socialism, while Mussolini's Italy was a national socialism. And then Francisco Franco's Spain, which was an offshoot of Italian fascism, was a cultural fascism.
Why did Hitler espouse
The
Yeah.
German race, because he believed that there was an Aryan people, and that Aryan people later immigrated into Germany.
But didn't he wasn't he always preaching about the benefits of National Socialism? I mean,
Yes, he was a socialist. He actually says in all of his works that he is a socialist. It's just that the tenet to perpetuate the socialism was race.
I got you.
While in Italy, the tenet that perpetuated the socialism, which was really syndicalism, was the nation. So that's why they were able to integrate at least some Ethiopians after they conquered them, and,
Right.
and the Libyans.
Well, part
It
of
was
the
okay to be different as long as you were there for the nation and for the culture.
part of the reason that Hitler believed in huge expansion of the Third Reich was because he believed that a lot of the countries that had been divided up, especially after World War One, were so culturally similar to Germany that they belonged back with.
Well, he believed Austria belonged to Germany, but that goes back to the original wars between Prussia and Austria-Hungary over dominance of the German race, which happened in the 1800s. So the Austrians are a German people, so that's why he Anschluss them.
But we're seeing the same. We're seeing the same thing.
Well, that's what's happening with Russia. So
Right,
Russia's using the Russian race to, but they don't have a socialist government per se. They come from one, but they're shifting into more of what Mussolini's nationalism was, which was syndicalism.
Well, I would describe the Russian government now as being an oligarch.
Right, but so is pretty much every government. That's why I never really agree with calling it oligarchs, because we have oligarchs within the United States too.
Sure.
So
Sure. Right.
it's socialism is the idea that the state needs power. Well, so left wing is socialism, right wing is anarchy.
Right.
And people like to say that Nazism is a far right wing ideology when you couldn't get more pro state than Nazism. And the more state you have, the further left you are.
I think that by today's standards, that's probably correct. I mean, especially from modern neoliberalism, more government is what they advocate for.
Right.
Whereas modern conservatism is limitations of government.
Right. Now, they aren't advocating for anarchy because that really isn't a society at that point. And anarchy doesn't necessarily mean violence. It just means no organization of society into a state or government. Mm-hmm. So the reason why the Germans were moving east is they were trying to follow the historical path of the Aryans, which falls in Ukraine, actually. So that's why
What we notice is going on now
is that there are Nazi groups rising in Ukraine, which, first of all, they are socialists. They're promoting the state, and they're promoting less dissidence and discussion of how the state should be politically organized in Ukraine.
Well, Vladimir Putin has on multiple occasions said that part of the reason that he's invaded Ukraine is to end Nazism and
right.
But
the thing is, George Orwell, who wrote 1984, wrote an article in 1942 about the current state of the word fascism and Nazism, and that back then, while the Nazis were technically like still in existence and winning the war, that the word had been applied to everything from farmers to states. So
it gets diluted.
Even in 1942, the word Nazism, while the Nazis still existed, was diluted. So you have to take when someone says Nazism with a huge grain of salt, but you can also look at who are they talking about and why are they saying it.
And that's another interesting point, particularly from the Orwellian perspective, is that if a state controls the language of a particular people, they control the consciousness of those people.
Well, that's prime example is North Korea.
Yes.
The people within North Korea genuinely don't understand the world outside of it. They think Czechoslovakia still exists.
Well, that's because our language is so intricately tied to how we conceptualize the world. The North Korean people can't imagine a world any different than the language that they've been using in the world.
All right. Well, yeah, I was just about to say that myself. It's been like 5 hours of us doing this.
Is it really?
So